story of resilience and hope. Please take care of yourself and each other. So far, no calls in any of the battleground races. As you see Rockefeller Plaza here on this election night. The big prize, of course, the presidency, but also the balance.
And I don't even remember any Senate. But am I tripping when I voted? That I didn't notice anything with the Senate?
Based on
So,
how this, it would be a shocker, right? That's a huge storyline of the night. I mean, it's a big storyline
so they're
either way
saying
because
that
control of the Senate
Donald
matters
Trump
for a lot of the reasons
doesn't
that we've
need
talked
too
about. But
many
that's
seats
how
to
the map
control the
has been
Senate.
looking, and so we're waiting on these two outstanding states.
And they're already part of the way there. They already have this pickup in West Virginia. We cannot stress enough, if Vice President Harris were to win the White House, it would be incredibly challenging for her to get judicial nominees confirmed, to get her cabinet confirmed with the Republican Senate.
So here we are. We're nearing the top of the hour, but we're still no calls in any of the battleground states. Are you surprised we are where we are right now?
No, because as Claire McCaskill has said so accurately, what we are seeing has been reflected in the polls.
No,
The polls
because
maybe
As
we're
we were
right.
leading up to this evening, it looks like the polls were right. This is a 50-50 race, and so this is going to go down to the wire in all of these battlegrounds.
Close
so
race means a
all
long
these
time. We can
battleground
put it
states
that
are going to
way,
go
right? I think
down
that's generally the vibe.
to the wire.
We'll see how it goes. I think everybody's
Is that
looking
what they're
towards
saying?
Pennsylvania, just in chatting with
All right, well, let's check back into the presidential race, and we'll take a look at the road to 270.
So Trump is up 210 to see. They got 91 on
It is
NBC.
10:51 in the East, and here is where we stand right now on the road to 270 electoral votes. Those will be the keys to get into the White House in the next year. Right now, we want to go to Peter Alexander at Harris headquarters to really gauge the temperature in the room. Peter?
What you got? What happened over there?
Well, we're outside and it's a
Babe,
loud
this
one
is the
here, but I can
election
tell you, if you get into
stream
the
where you're
crowd
talking
here,
about
it's
votes.
particularly quiet in terms of their sense of optimism right now. That's how one Harris ally just described it to me a short time
Don't come
ago.
for
I
you?
ran into a longtime Democratic source, a
Oh, it
person who
was
was
funny.
close
I hear
to
you.
the Harris campaign, and I asked them what they make of the results they've seen so far. They said, honestly, this is not looking so good for us, but then they quickly put on a smile and said, but you know what? We just got to keep smiling for the night. That may give you a better understanding of where they feel like things may be going right now. It remains early. A lot of votes still to count. But I'll tell you what I just heard from a Democratic lawmaker right now who just wrote me in part, quote, "It's pretty concerning. I just keep reminding myself that 8 years ago, all the trends in the first few hours showed Hillary winning, and then she didn't. But obviously, this is not the return we were looking for." It gives you a little sense of the way that some of those people supporting Kamala Harris are feeling.
So soon
This
polls
evening
close
right
in
now. Again,
California.
numbers, a lot of data still to be counted right now. But
Is that
as,
Indiana,
Claire McCaskill said a short
Oregon,
time ago,
and
some of the
Washington?
early results we're seeing in some of those places, North Carolina,
So they're saying
Georgia,
Trump
not looking
is
as
going to win
positive as
Arkansas.
the Harris campaign had been hoping. It doesn't mean that they still don't have a path, But it
Kamala's
does
going to
certainly
win
increasingly
Colorado.
mean that
That's
they
10
have to succeed
electoral
in holding
votes.
onto that blue wall. Pennsylvania, Michigan,
Projected
and
winner.
Wisconsin. And frankly, speaking to some people,
And people
some of
want to
those
get
states,
into this whole
that are involved with a Harris
electoral
campaign, they
votes
said
thing,
that's
and they
where
want to say
are
our
seeing
votes
some
don't count
concern.
1 for 1.
And
And the
that's
votes
gonna
don't
be a
count
tough
1
vote that
for
they have to
1.
still try to walk
It is the
back.
electoral college.
And Peter, we were just
So
talking here, there's a sense that
that's a good and
voters
bad
here,
thing
in
if we're
fact,
going
are
to talk
getting that
about,
sense that the
you know, the
polls are
electoral
really
college
reflecting
and
what we're watching.
in the voting, right? It's a good and bad thing.
Well, I mean, nationally, this
Because the electoral college is going to say, okay, when this state wins, and I'm going to move this out the way because I want you guys to see
overall
the possible
vote, that may be
electoral
pretty close to
votes,
where this
right?
thing
Let's move
ends
this
up.
out the
But
way.
Remember, for the Democrats to win the electoral college, they generally have to have a better advantage as it relates to the popular vote.
So here it is. This right here shows what each state, the electoral vote for each state, right? That's what this screen is showing here, right here too, for you guys. And so in Florida, and this is a big one, Florida is 30 electoral votes, right? 30 electoral votes if you win Florida. Now, say you win Florida by a great margin. Yeah, say you won Florida by, let's say, 3,000, 4,000 votes. You won by 4,000 votes, but you're only going to get 30 votes, right, from the electoral college from Florida. Some people want to get rid of the electoral college. Some people don't. You know, I understand both arguments for both. Me, I don't really too much have a viewpoint on that. But that's why people want to get rid of the electoral college, because it's not a 1-for-1 vote, right? So you won Florida, but you're only going to get 30 votes, you know, from the electoral college.
In this warehouse, and this update is despite the fact that there was a little
Put this
hiccup
back.
that we saw earlier today. I'll show you what happened. It was on these tabulators that we see, and if you look closely at that red sticker there, they say that that flap was not locked. The tabulator was sealed, but the actual flap there that opens up, it was not completely locked. So what they did is they got a bipartisan group together. They went through to all of the 13 tabulators, high-speed tabulators in this entire facility, and they went through and emptied them out and restarted the count of some 30,000 ballots. Now, despite that, they say that they're moving along fairly well. When you look around here, you see at each of these stations, the election workers, the election clerks are counting those ballots. And, you know, when you talk to operatives
270
in the
votes.
state, one
The
thing
president
that they're
needs
focused on is
270
what will
electoral
come
votes
from
to win the
vote
White House.
here in Milwaukee.
Trump
And I
has
talked to a
210 right now to
Republican
Harris's
operative who said he's
113.
feeling very good
And
about
we're seeing
what they're
that with
seeing on
this
the
screen here.
Republican side. They say when you look at Dane County, that Vice President Harris is not meeting her marks there, and pointing to Milwaukee, he's saying that the turnout is not meeting what the Democrats should be getting in this area of the
And
state.
that's with
But
this
when you look
screen
at the amount
here,
of vote
this
that's
one
here, we
here,
know there's about
210 to 113.
107,000
Now,
ballots that have yet to be counted, and we are still hours away from that being sent
This is
over
in
to
Milwaukee,
the county for the public
which
to
is a
see. So
battleground
it's
state.
expected to be a long night of counting here in Milwaukee.
All right, Shaq, thanks very much.
Let's go over to Tom Yamas, who's over at the big board. Couple of things. Let's look at North Carolina.
You got it.
Still too early to call. And how about Virginia?
Yeah.
It's a blue state. Haven't called it yet.
We'll talk about both those because both states have interesting things happening. So first off, 85% of the voting, if you're asking yourself, why is it too early to call? Why hasn't NBC News projected this race just yet? Because listen, there are still 875,000 votes that are out.
See?
So we're going to wait till we can make a clear
And
projection
the
there.
winner is
I do
not
wanna
going to get
highlight some
800
things. I've been talking about
and something
Charlotte,
thousand
Mecklenburg
votes.
County all
The
night
winner
long.
is only
This
going to
where
get
Democrats had to turn out the vote.
the
This
amount
is
of votes
where
that
races are won and lost in the
North
state of
Carolina
North Carolina
has
is in
for the
Charlotte.
electoral
Clinton
college.
at 62,
I want to bring
Biden
that
at
up because I want
66.7.
to see
Harris
that
is at 65.
as this
Remember,
is going
she has
on.
to win this state because
Right?
they lost it 4 years ago. She has to be doing better than Biden. And now I want to take you to the Black Belt. Again, these are the counties that there's not a ton of people, but they're largely African-American counties. And I'm going to go to compare this to 2020. And I want you guys to watch these numbers. Remember, the number on the left, it has to be higher. The number on the left has to be higher. So we're going to lock this in. Let's go through here and just watch. Every county, she's underperforming. With a lot of the vote, there's still some vote out.
So they
but
can call
in
that for
almost
Trump, but
every
they're
county,
not.
she's
They're not going to call
underperforming.
it for
Again, this is
Trump.
the Black
They're not
Belt
going to call it right now.
proportion of
Which I get it.
African-American voters
I
here.
understand why
and
they're
she's
not gonna call it right
underperforming.
now.
Not a population center, but if she wants to win North Carolina, she has to be doing better there. I know you were asking about Virginia. Savannah, let's take a look at Virginia. We haven't called Virginia yet, you know, and if we, just to give you context,
77%,
the last two elections, it came kind of close in 2016, about 4 percentage points, 4 or 5 percentage points. In
So
2020,
Trump
Biden
may
grew that
lose
lead much more. It was
Virginia.
about 10 points there tonight. Here's where it's at. 77% of the votes in. There's about a 2% spread. I'm being told by our politics desk, a lot of the vote that is out is still in the Northern Virginia suburbs. This is the Democrats' sort of their sweet spot where they're going to drive up the votes. Also, Richmond County, a lot of African-American voters there, too, that could possibly vote Democratic. But listen, Republicans have been making inroads in there as well. We can take a quick gander. How much time we have? About a minute?
And that's why they're
2
not
minutes.
call
Now
it.
we're going to say goodbye. We'll come back. We'll dig into those northern suburbs in just a minute, Savannah.
Let's do, because
So they're not
going
gonna
to
call it.
suburb resident Chuck Todd says you can't.
I want to bring that up so you all can see
on that vote, but I want to go
the
to Mark
electoral
Lauer
college
on
side
this.
of things.
Also, I think of Washington, D.C.
I want to see that
area
because
resident, so you
the
get to
number
weigh
of
in on
votes
this too, you
that
two
they
senators.
get,
I mean,
it doesn't really
would you
matter
have
about the states. It
expected that
matters
Virginia
what.
would take this long to call? I mean, is there
How
is
many
this,
states that
is this concerning?
you know,
Does it give you any other trend lines?
How many electoral votes
I saw a lot
that
of
state
energy, and I live in
has
Northern
to
Virginia
give.
as well. I've seen a lot more.
And all this
Trump
is red,
signs
man.
in people's yards.
All this is
where
red.
4 years ago, 8
So
years
Trump
ago,
won-
you would have never dared put
Trump
one
won
up
all
there.
these states.
So I think there was a little more.
He
of an
won
emboldened
Texas. Texas
activity, but
is
you know you're not going to win that
most.
area. But I think this
you know,
does point to what we were talking about. We see going on in Philadelphia,
mostly,
which we see going on in some of the other
a red
Charlotte
state. He's going to get that.
areas.
He's going to win Florida.
underperforming
We
in the
all knew
metro
Trump was going to
areas,
win
which is
Florida.
where
I
she
knew Trump was
needs
going to win
to
Florida. I didn't think he's going to have
overperform.
any problem in Florida.
I think when it's all counted, when
I didn't think he's
everything
gonna have a
comes
problem
in
in-
Northern Virginia,
in Texas
Chuck's
either.
not here, so I'm a little nervous.
Georgia, they were saying they were having
I think
issues
she'll
in
end
Georgia.
up
I don't know if
winning
you guys heard
Virginia by
about
a
that.
comfortable margin.
What was happening
And I
in
think when you
Georgia?
actually
The
analyze
reason
the
why
data,
Georgia
what you're
hasn't
gonna
come in yet
see
with all their
is
votes.
there was more
reason why it hasn't
enthusiasm
gotten
in the
counted yet.
rural areas of Virginia than there was for Biden.
So
I mean, I think
California
we need
and
to,
Idaho,
start saying
oh,
out
those
loud
polls are closing
that, you know,
in about a
what
minute
is
at
different
11
between Joe
p.m.
Biden
What time is
and
it now?
Kamala Harris?
It's 10:59.
Everybody
So they'll
thinks they're
close in a
exactly
minute.
the same on policies, but one
And then we'll be able to
is
get
a woman
those
of
votes. So
color
we'll
and
see
the
what
other
happens in
is a
California.
white
California may
man that
go.
everybody was
I don't know
really
how
comfortable with,
California is
that
going
were
to go.
moderates
I'm
and
curious to
knew
see
him
what
well
happens in
and had known him for
California.
decades. So I think
I don't know
you're
how
seeing
California's
more
gonna go.
Trump support in some of the areas where Biden could cut in, and you're not. But Virginia's going to be fine. She's going to win Virginia.
But you might see that maybe in like a Lackawanna
I think
County or
she'll win
something in
Virginia, too.
Pennsylvania.
I think
that's
she's
the
gonna
dynamic that
win
you're talking about.
California.
We shall
And how
see.
many
Okay.
electoral votes is
We wanna
California?
pause just a
I need to
moment.
bring
We've
that
got
up because
a
I
lot more
want
get
to be able. I want us
top
to
of
be
the
able
hour.
to
We're gonna have the
see.
big poll closings in California. Got an election alert. Poll closing
here we go.
in about 20 seconds or now. So there'll be some biggies out there to talk about.
We got some polls closing, and we're gonna get it right here. We got 11 seconds before these polls close, and we're gonna see what happens in California, Idaho, Oregon, and
We're
Washington.
going to pause for a moment while some of our East Coast stations go to their local news now.
And this is live. You guys are getting it live because I got it live.
And welcome back. At the top of the hour, 11 o'clock hour here in the East, NBC News can project that Kamala Harris will win in the state of California.
I knew she was going to win in California, so we know she's going to win in California.
In the state of Idaho,
Idaho.
NBC News projects Donald
So Trump is
will win and take
projected
those
to win in
4
Idaho.
Electoral votes in Idaho. Here's the map.
That 4
where it
electoral
goes,
votes in Idaho?
In the road to 270, Donald Trump with 214, Harris now with 145. So things certainly becoming
Yeah.
a little more
So she
interesting
got
as the evening
California.
progresses.
Okay, for the 11 o'clock poll closings, we have a couple of uncalled races, Oregon and Wisconsin. We just called
So
California.
Oregon and Wisconsin
Now let's go
are
to our
uncalled.
battlegrounds. Pennsylvania, too close to
Let me
call.
see. Did New
11
York
o'clock
get a
Eastern, 8
tally?
o'clock in the West.
No, I don't
Same
think New York
story
got a
in
tally yet.
Michigan, too close to call at
She's
this
probably
hour,
gonna.
with
Kamala's
about
probably
a
gonna
third
win.
of the vote counted there.
So she won in
Wisconsin,
Michigan.
it is too
That's
close to
15
call. You
electoral
knew it would
votes.
be a tight election. The
Wisconsin
polls
is
all showed
10
it, and that's
electoral
certainly
votes.
being borne out tonight. 60% of the vote in there. In Georgia, it is too close to call. Getting closer to that final number.
Georgia.
Still, the margin
Georgia is
just too
16,
close
so
to
they're gonna
call.
finally get
That's
Georgia
the
together.
same thing in North Carolina. In fact, it's
North Carolina is
too early
16.
to call.
Okay,
We're
that's how
still
much is in North
awaiting
Carolina.
vote
16
there.
electoral votes.
In Arizona, let's go out west. We've got 2 battlegrounds out west. We've got Arizona and Nevada. Polls closed there about a couple of hours ago. Well, 2 hours for Arizona.
Arizona is
Last
11.
hour for Nevada.
Shout out to my
Both
mom.
of
That's
these
her.
Too early
It's
to
her
call.
state.
And Tom Young,
Too early to
Oregon,
call.
we talked about
Nevada
Arizona,
is
given it's
6.
due tonight in Maricopa County, and don't
So
forget,
you want those
Great
battleground
Plains,
states, you
County,
want those swing states. So when it comes to the presidential election, there are certain states that Democrats and Republicans know they're going to win. When presidents are on the campaign trail, they're only concerned about getting those battleground or swing states, right? There's a few states that are swing states or battleground states where they can swing the way of the election or
Kamala Harris
you know,
is on
they
top right now.
in elections
Phoenix,
when it comes to
one of
presidential
the
elections,
fifth largest
these
city in the
states
country, one of the fastest
they're
growing
not
areas
trended
in the
to vote
country.
one way. They
Something
vote
that's interesting
either
about
way,
Maricopa, it's not so much
right?
people from other states moving there for the jobs. It's people from all over Arizona moving to this area. You have Mesa, Tempe, Scottsdale, a lot of growth there. We're going to go to this other county here, Pima County. Savannah, you've heard of this county? Maybe, maybe not. 50% of it is in. This is Tucson. This is a Democratic stronghold, but it's not like Cambridge, Massachusetts.
So she's gonna
right?
win
It's not
Arizona.
60-40 split.
Oh, wait.
Sometimes is,
Yeah,
but not
yeah.
really. Tonight,
Kamala's
she's
gonna
doing
get
well.
Arizona. She's
turning
up
out the vote there, about
62.5%, and they're
30%
50% in.
Pima
So
County
unless
as well. It's
something,
on the border,
and that's what he's
just
talking
next
about,
door
unless
to
something
North
crazy
Carolina. Now,
happens,
this is
Trump's not
majority
gonna win
Hispanic, an
Arizona.
interesting county, but this is a place where Republicans can run up the score. Trump overperforming right now. Only 35% of the vote is in. Arizona, still very, very early. 11 electoral votes. As we get information, we'll sort of dissect it and figure it out. But it's going to be a while before we call Arizona, Savannah, as you know.
All right. Thank you, Tom. We got our panel here. We got Chuck. We got Savannah Sellers over here. Chuck, what are you making of what we're seeing, what the trend lines are?
There's a reason why there's anxiety in the Harris camp and growing enthusiasm and optimism. I mean, all the trend lines, this looks a lot more like 2016 to me than it does 2020. And you're seeing
So they're saying it looks
rural turnout surging up, but we've had to up our projection of total turnout in Georgia than what we saw. And as we'd been saying, and we'd seen this, higher turnout was always going to be better for Trump. Not, you know, there's always been this pre-Trump era conventional wisdom used to be Democrats would perform better, but he has the sort of the occasional voter. And it looks like, and we're actually even seeing evidence of what I call these shotgun Trump voters. They come in, they vote Trump, and they leave. Because there's about 100,000 vote gap. I mean, the Democratic Senate candidates in the blue wall are all in better shape right now than Harris.
So they're saying that people would just come in, vote Trump, and leave. They're not voting on anything else. They just come, vote Trump, and then go. They don't care about anything else. They just want Trump in there. Now, when it comes to voting, right, and this is what my advice to anyone out there watching this, vote for everything. Try to vote for everything. Don't even try. Vote for everything. Don't just focus on the presidential race, right? Vote on everything. You know, try to educate yourself as much as possible. But at the end of the day, if you don't educate on everything, right, because it's a lot, read what they have there. They tell you what you're voting on. So just read it and then vote on it. Vote on everything. I filled both of my ballots front and back. I filled them. Vote on everything.
Do it again? Yeah. It also works for Lambeau Field. The last four, literally, the election.
A better stadium to pick. You don't want a losing team.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The losing record.
Here we go. No, just that our last election was decided by 80,000 voters in 4 states that would fill.
But can we also remember one other thing here? Because she was trying to do something as a sitting vice president that had never been done before. Succeed an unpopular president. Okay? Hubert Humphrey tried to do this, and he came 1 percentage point short. It was a very close election. The electoral vote wasn't close, but it was a very close election. But it came up short. Al Gore tried to do this. While Bill Clinton's presidency was popular, Bill Clinton, the individual, was not. We all know he came up 537 votes short, as Lester will tell you over and over again. So the last sitting vice president to win was George H.W. Bush with an outgoing president that had a 60-plus approval rating. He was at 41%. I mean, that is, you are asking somebody to overperform in a way that we may find out was politically impossible.
This sounds a little bit like a postmortem, so I want to make sure we
No, and I don't think we're there.
We have not called.
And let me give you the view from the Harris campaign.
And by the way, they know if they win, it's going to be like this. Like their path is razor thin.
That's exactly what they're saying. There's this new memo that is out now from the chair of the Harris campaign that was sent to staffers, obtained by our Monica Alba and our team that covers the Harris camp. And this is exactly the point, right? Which is why I wanted to jump in here on this. They say that the closeness of this race is what we prepared for all along. They still see data trickling in from Sunbelt, but all along they knew it was going to be blue wall. I mean, listen, to a degree, of course, this is what they're going to say, but they say they think they're still feeling good about Pennsylvania, overperforming turnout in Philadelphia and some of these areas. In Michigan, they say there's still a lot of vote to come in. In Wisconsin, there's still a lot of vote remaining.
They're saying that they know they had a tough
We've been saying
election.
for weeks this race may not be called tonight.
Go ahead, we do have an NBC News
That they knew they wasn't going to win.
Of Oregon.
I'm not understanding what she said there. Are they saying that she knew that they wasn't going to win that?
Oregon when the votes are counted.
Or are they saying that they knew it was going to have a hard race? Of course, she was going to have a hard race against Trump.
difference, 45% of the vote in. But again, Kamala Harris, the projected winner there. In our road to 270, you see it there on the screen, 214 for Donald Trump, Harris with 153. The big prizes, still no calls. We continue to wait.
Interesting that that memo is focusing on the blue wall. That's all but saying they're not expecting a North Carolina victory or a Georgia or...
Those are two states. I'm just looking at this on my computer. I don't see either of those two states mentioned here. They do talk about Nevada and Arizona. It's going to be a bit, but the bottom line is they feel like this race is not going to come into focus until the early morning hours.
The fascinating thing about
Into the early
Hallie
morning
just
hours, so
read,
we're going to be
Trump says
live
this feels
streaming
like
for that long because I'm
2016.
doing it.
That's almost verbatim.
We're gonna live
A
stream
memo
this
that we got in
thing, so get
2016
comfortable. We're
saying
here
we're
until the
focused on
election
blue
is over.
wall. Everyone's focused
All
on
right,
the blue wall.
this
No
is
one
an
panic.
election stream, and we're
this,
going to
we
be
have a
streaming
lot
the
more vote to
entire
count,
election.
So I want to be very cautious in saying this, but tonally, it is fascinating that that is the message that they're
Well,
sending.
not for nothing. They did their last rally, Kamala Harris, in Philadelphia on the
The whole
eve
last
of
day.
the election.
All she did was focus on
Which is
PA.
exactly what
They had their eye on the
in
ball. I mean, you
2016.
can't say, right, they didn't do that in 2016, right? She was doing Arizona, she was doing
So
Texas,
Trump-
and she sort
The
of-
night before was in Philly.
So he's
Sure,
up
but they
2.8%
sort of didn't do the blue wall.
in
To their
Georgia.
credit, I mean, she lived in
2.8%.
Pennsylvania, but I'll tell you this.
I missed it.
We'll see. There's probably a lot of people wondering who should be the running mate? Who should be on this Democratic
We
ticket?
had that discussion.
Yeah.
Because some people will, if
It'll
she
be-
loses Pennsylvania, there'll be a lot
And
of...
if that's the only state, right? that'll
So
be
if
the
she
hammer.
loses Pennsylvania, then they're going to be wondering who should have been on the ticket. So New Mexico is 5 electoral votes, and I want to get up here so we can see what each state has on the electoral side of everything.
What stands out?
88 gang, and we on Twitch as well.
Information.
88.
First, let's talk about first-time voters.
Danny
This is not
Sorafe
just
on
young voters,
Twitch.
but that's 57% of these first-time voters are under the age of 30.
Boom.
They are breaking for Trump. That is a major reversal from 2020. 53% for Trump right now, 46% for Harris. Back in 2020, 64% went for Biden. Something that I've been tracking, and I've been even watching it tonight on apps like TikTok, on apps like Instagram, when you just talk about like who's popular, who do people like. The Harris campaign had such a robust internal social media play. They had this team of 20-somethings. They had very little oversight. They were allowed to kind of post what they wanted, react in real time to trends, to the news cycle.
We
The Trump
remember Brat
campaign-
Summer and the whole Brat
They
theme from the
co-opted
Harris
that
campaign,
immediately,
right?
exactly, which, by the way, is a compliment to say Brat now. But for the former president, there wasn't so much going on internally. It was not as robust. He had this sort of grassroots organic catch-on TikTok. I heard so many young people say to me, in a positive way also, he is a meme. His things travel far. It's objectively funny when you see this information. So many young people, therefore, on these apps were served content straight from and straight about the former president. And we are hearing so much right now. I'm hearing that in lines in Arizona. Gotti was mentioning that
Bro,
earlier. It's so
Kamala
much- it
was
because I didn't want a
everywhere on
podcast.
social
It was
media.
because of this thing
And
I
this
saw on
kind of
TikTok.
makes sense.
I also
What
heard
she's
from a
saying.
voter in
Kamala
almost
was
every single swing
everywhere on
state
social
and
media. Like, I'm not
multiple
gonna lie.
in several
I
of
could
them,
not
including
open
Pennsylvania.
Instagram
Voters
without
were
seeing somebody
eligible
posting
in this
Kamala,
age group
without
to vote
seeing
in
her. I
2020
couldn't.
Who did not, and they came out tonight to vote for the former
I'd be
president.
so interested. He's winning the youth vote in these exit polls. I'd be fascinated to see what the gender breakdown is there too, because this poll with young men, and that was a concerted effort by the Trump
I'm not gonna lie.
campaign, and
Whoever they had
Joe
over their
Rogan
social
and
media
the
campaign
bro wave
did an
it
amazing
has
job.
to be real.
Those
Okay,
20-somethings
I
that
wonder
she's
who
talking
votes
about did an
who's gonna
amazing
be
job.
voting
She was
this year.
everywhere on social media. I'm not gonna lie. She was everywhere.
one in
Now,
each
did
gender.
it work?
And I
How
see
did
it with
that
their friends.
translate
You see it.
and
It's real.
how that's
This-
going to translate
this
into the
gap,
election
this
as
is
far
not
of a
about
marketing
Trump and Harris.
strategy?
There
And
is
if
a
you watch Beyond the Hustle
cultural gap,
pod,
if
we
you
were just
will,
talking about that branding and
between
marketing.
young men
How
and
that
young
worked from a
women.
marketing
That happened
standpoint,
too.
I don't
You
know.
wanted
We're
the
going to see if
gender
she's
gap
going
on
to get the
this
result that
first-time
she
men.
was
Trump
looking for,
62%,
which is the White
Harris
House.
36%
But we
first-time
do
women.
know is
The gap
that
is less
she was
than
everywhere.
Trump,
Like,
46%,
she was.
Harris,
She was
50%.
everywhere.
Yeah,
So
I
that
mean-
young men
So-
turnout is real.
Well, people who thought that young women would be voting in droves for Kamala Harris, especially because of reproductive rights, I mean, that exit poll does not suggest that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't, and this goes back
So
to
it,
what
it did.
Trump has
She didn't
been
get
saying,
the
which
result
is
that she wanted from
the
that.
person who ultimately
Not from
winds
social
up
media,
winning
but
this
they
war
thought
of the
they thought they was
sexes
going to
is
get the female,
candidate
the
who
woman
does a
vote,
better job appealing
and it's not looking
to
that way.
the
She's
weaker
not
gender
getting it.
for them, whoever is weaker for them. And so we've seen Trump not only clearly energize, drive up young men of various different racial backdrops, but also chip away at Vice President Harris's lead. I mean, her lead among women continues to be, based on what we're seeing so far, less than his lead with men.
The gender gap is interesting, but also as we've alluded
So
to
she's not
here
getting a
on
lot
the
of the
table,
woman vote.
the education
This is
gap
interesting
also becoming such
because
an
people
interesting
thought that
storyline
women
here.
was
As
going to
Trump
vote
talks
for
about kind of
Kamala because she
realignment
was a
in this
woman.
moment and where we
And
are.
that's
another
not
thing to be
what
watching
we're
for
seeing
tonight.
here.
Again, it is 11:11 Eastern time, but there's still plenty of vote to come in.
I want to go to Tom right now. Tom, I'm looking at Wisconsin. Looks like 62% of the vote in there. You're picking up some things. Share them with us.
Yeah, too close to call right now. Trump on top 50%. The difference is 39,000. Remember,
I want to bring
the
in
last two
this
elections
other
in
screen
Wisconsin,
for you
presidential
all
elections,
because I
20,000
want to
votes
see
was the difference
the
between both
electoral.
candidates here. We want to go back to Madison, the capital of
We
Wisconsin.
want to see the
Dane
electoral.
County. This is also the site of the University of Wisconsin as well. 92% of the vote in. Harris doing a little better than when we last checked in with her, but again, she's slightly underperforming Biden. She still has time to catch up. There's still 8% of the vote that's out. We actually know exactly how much of the vote is out. About 30,000 votes remain there. So maybe she picks up the margins there. We also want to talk about Milwaukee. This is the biggest population center in the entire state of Wisconsin. Right now, 54% of the vote is in. So a lot of that vote is still out. It's probably going to be a little bit later till we can call Milwaukee by itself. Biden was at 69. She's down about 2 to 3 points. Again, this would be concerning for Democrats. But look, there's still a lot of vote out in Milwaukee. Door County, if you've been following the presidential race at all, everyone's been talking about Door County in Wisconsin. It's this peninsula that shoots out into Lake Michigan. The last 6 statewide elections, presidential elections, I should say, they've picked the winner. This is a good sign for Kamala Harris. She's on top there, overperforming Biden just slightly. 95% of the vote is in. Again, Door, if we bring it out to past elections, it almost always picks the winner in the state of Wisconsin. So that's a good sign for her because it's a bellwether. I do want to check in some of these Democratic strongholds. Eau Claire, 92% in, kind of performing at the same level as Biden. That's good news for her. She wants to keep it there. We don't have any data there. What else we have? I think here in La Crosse, this is another Democratic stronghold, 92% in. Biden was at 53. She's 55, I should say. She's slightly underperforming. So listen, still a lot of vote.
So she's underperforming in Wisconsin,
or
just a county side in Wisconsin. Oh no!
Battleground states.
So she's underperforming in Wisconsin.
Is different, but of all the
and this is a
battleground
state.
Wisconsin is the widest, so they can drive up the margins with at least African American voters and some Latino voters.
And this is why I want to get the electoral votes up here. I'm trying to get that up here so you guys can see that because
and they usually fare better.
There's a reason why they're too close to call, or this state can swing it in this direction or not. Why it's a battleground state, why it's a key state, because you want them electoral votes. And that's the thing. You don't have to win by much. You can win by 1 vote. And then you got the whole entire electoral vote. You have the whole entire state just because you won that state by 1 vote. That's why it's so close.
It appears that Republicans with that victory will
I like to pay attention a lot to these elections because for me, political science was what I went to school for. When I was in college, I went to school for political science. I wanted to get into politics. So I've always had a passion. I've always been drawn to politics. So I pay attention. I like to pay attention.
A few times, but not here tonight.
3 times, Savannah, and he has been someone who's been very adept at straddling that line, reaching out to working class voters throughout his state. His father was a doctor, grew up in Mansfield, really had that working class appeal. And yet,
I don't know who this is. So Senate. I
I
don't know. I didn't pay attention to the Senate as much as I would have liked to when I was voting. I did vote for the Senate. For me, it was changing with everything this election. It was I was focusing on I wanted to change a lot of what was there when it came to the Senate or Congress.
Democrats knew
when it came to the Senate, when it came to the Supreme Court circuit judges. I wanted a change, so I was focusing on changing things that were there. That's what my focus was.
To pick up in the 2026 midterms, but if it gets to 53 or 54, right, which is very possible tonight. I mean, they've got Montana, which Republicans are favored. They've already held their 2 vulnerable seats. Nebraska's sitting out there. And
now,
it really is a coin flip race right now. That's a unique situation. But they could get to 53 or 54, which could put the Senate out of reach for Democrats for 4 years. So at this point tonight, it's about whether Democrats can hold enough of their seats this cycle so they actually have a shot at winning back the Senate can be competitive in 2026.
Sherrod Brown
And the reason
way
why that's
outspent
important
Bernie
is
Bernard, Ohio, too,
because
just dumped a ton of
if
money
there's a
in
law
pro
that wants to get
Democratic
passed, if
allies in the
Trump
state of
wants to do
Ohio. But
something
remember why the
or
Senate
Kamala wants to do
matters, not to
something,
give a civics
it
lesson here, right? But
is
the Senate
beneficial
counts in
for
some
them
ways
to
as the
control the
brakes or
Senate, which is
accelerator
if
for
it's going to be
whoever
Republican or
ends up in the White
Democrat.
House.
Now,
They
does that
can
mean
either
that a
get
Republican Senate will
president's
always
policies
be on the
moving
side
to
of a
degree
Republican
if the
president,
House,
or
is
vice
the
versa?
same
A
party
Democratic
or
Senate
not, right? And
be on
that's
the
what-
side
that's
of
what
a
this comes
Democratic
down to
president?
here, is how
No,
much if
it
is
just gives you a
Donald
better
Trump in the White
chance.
House and a Republican Senate.
So there
what
we
could
go.
they do for his policies if it is Kamala Harris in the White House
See?
and a Republican Senate? How does that interplay work when it comes to some of the issues?
Here we
I
go.
have to say
They're going
the
to talk
House is
about it.
much more important, though, at this point, if the Democrats are not going to win the White House, they have to have that. I mean, if you win the White House, you want your party to have that. If you're going to not have a chamber, don't have the Senate. It's the House you really worry about because the House has subpoena power. Yeah. And so if the House is at
I
the
didn't
same
know
party,
that.
you can navigate
I didn't
Washington
know.
a lot easier. The Senate's not easy, but you can find bipartisan coalitions in the Senate.
And this is what the House looks like, right?
The House, at this point, whoever wins the presidency, you want your party to have, because if you don't, then it's subpoena, and then you can be tied up. Your entire agenda can get tied up.
But unlike the Senate,
So they're
we're not
saying they
talking
want
about
the House,
tonight.
depending on
No doubt, we
whichever
might not be talking about the House
president
until we
wins,
go
you
to
want to
Savannah's
control the
for
House.
Thanksgiving.
And I was saying you want to control the Senate. I wasn't thinking about the House. I didn't think about that. So you want the House. Well, I mean, you want both, right? But if you're not going to have the
Correct.
Senate,
Because of New York and California.
you want the
Exactly,
House.
and we'll be waiting New York and California.
Yeah.
Some of these tight races, it could be weeks. It was weeks in 2020, but I mean, the prospect is there. If are we going to have divided government?
right.
As Americans have so often chosen divided government, they seem to like it. Will
Chosen
we
or
have it?
stumbled into it.
Yes.
Well,
Who knows?
and remember, Democrats only need 4 seats to take back control of the House. And so they like their chances there. What's so interesting is that we're covering all of these various battleground states, Pennsylvania, and all of the blue wall states. The House is really going to be won and fought in New York, in California. So it's a very different terrain. And again, could be over a week, if not longer, before we know
Let's turn to NBC's Garrett Haake. He's at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Garrett, what's the former president doing now? And I'm wondering if there's been any reaction to what appears could be a change of power in the Senate.
I don't know. They may be just.
Not to that specifically, Lester, but let me set the scene for you here just to get the lay of the land down here in South Florida, because some of this will matter later on.
He in South Florida?
We're in
Of
West
course he's
Palm
in
Beach right
Florida.
now at the Convention Center, which is the giant party headquarters media center for the Trump campaign tonight. Donald Trump is across the Intercoastal Waterway at this hour at Mar-a-Lago, his home and private club, where for a portion of the night he was doing, I think, what many people sort of imagine candidates do on election night, meeting with advisors, watching the returns come in, checking the numbers. At some point this evening, according to multiple sources who are there and have laid eyes on him, he has transitioned into essentially party mode already, down in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago, shaking hands, thanking supporters.
That's why I said
participating in the
there was no
celebration
doubt in my
that
mind
has
Trump was going to
begun
win
among
Florida.
his closest supporters, his
This was
family
his
and
headquarters.
friends,
Florida's his
despite a
headquarters.
race
I'm in
that
Florida.
remains
Florida was his
uncalled.
headquarters.
I'm also told NBC
Florida
News
has
can also
always been a
report
red
that
state.
he's in
I don't know when the
discussions
last
with
time we
his
voted
aides and
blue. I
advisors
can't
about
remember.
when he might
Maybe
make the trip across
when,
the bridge here to West Palm Beach to give some form
Obama
of speech
was running?
tonight. Now, we have been asking him about this day after day. Would he declare victory early? Would he rule out the possibility of declaring victory early? We all remember him doing exactly that in 2020 when so much of the vote remained to be counted. He has refused to take an early declaration of victory off the table, and it's our understanding now that conversations are underway for him to make some kind of address here tonight,
He would have
regardless
to.
of where we are on the
I
path
would
to
think so.
270 votes.
If he
All right, Garrett,
is
thank you
winning
so
this
much. And we're joined now
I
by
would think so.
podcast host John Lovett and Dan Pfeiffer, both White House veterans. I believe we have them right now. Oh, not yet. We're going to go to, that they're coming up.
We're
Now
going
we had a
to
tease. We'll
go to Peter Alexander.
Peter
first.
Alexander, for get the view from the Harris headquarters.
Y'all get it
sounds like
together
Donald
now.
Trump is talking about
Y'all
coming
need me to
out
come
and
run
saying
that? Y'all
something.
need me to come run
What are you
this?
hearing from the Harris campaign?
The switch to the live broadcast.
Yeah, well, I always
So
defer to the
Kamala's
Vox
at
America guys. If they
153.
wanna
Well,
let me know when they
our
want, but we are waiting to hear, of course, from Kamala Harris at some point over the
screen
course
back
of
here
this evening. No indication
is
when that
telling
would
us
happen. Some
Kamala's
early
at
indications of what happened in the
179,
course of
Trump
this
is at
hour. No
214.
confirmation on that
So I
at
mean that
this time. We'll keep you
270,
posted as
we
go.
might
I
not
will
even
tell
need
you,
everything to
though,
be
in the course of
counted.
the last
Let's
15
look.
minutes, NBC News did
Let's
obtain
look and see.
a memo that was
That's
sent
why we're
out
trying to
by
pull up.
the chair of the Harris campaign, Jen
It's electoral.
O'Malley Dillon, the woman
We're trying
who
to pull up the
orchestrated Joe
electoral
Biden's
because we
victory
want to
in
see
2020. This was sent to staff, and it gives you a sense of where
what
they
we
are
need.
heading into this evening. They expect
We want to
nothing will
see
be
what these
determined
electoral
until
votes
late
are
into the
looking
night,
like.
and certainly they say they're going to be at this again tomorrow. But
here,
as she
babe.
notes in this
Get back
memo
here.
again,
They said
she
they might not
says
even have
that
everything
they have
counted until,
always
like,
said that the
early
clearest
morning.
path to 270 electoral votes lies through the blue wall states. And here's what she says specifically about Pennsylvania. She says that we overperformed turnout expectations in Philadelphia and overperformed in our early vote expectations in
Twitch
Bucks
on
County,
here?
one of those key collar counties, those key
Thought you had a Twitch
suburbs
account.
of Philadelphia. She says we don't have election day results from
thought you had a Twitch
Philadelphia, but we do know that we overperformed turnout expectations there and have seen especially high turnout in places with non-white and student populations. One thing they're keeping a close
So
eye on
Kamala
right
didn't
now
do well
about
with
Michigan
women voters.
particularly. They
Trump
say
is
the
still
city of
outperforming
Detroit
her.
won't be reporting out until roughly midnight, but that they have seen strong turnout from early vote and election day voting in other parts of the state. And finally, in Wisconsin, where they're keeping a
So she
close
won
eye on that blue
California.
wall, that they do not expect complete results from Wisconsin until tomorrow morning
Trump won
between
Florida,
3
of
a.m.
course,
and
that's
5
I
a.m.
knew
But the
Trump was
biggest
gonna win
takeaway,
Florida. I
perhaps,
think
from
it's
this memo is the sense that
Yeah,
as
he won Florida.
as the chips
he's here
start
in Florida.
falling,
He's in-
it appears that they are
his
leaning
island.
heavily into the
Yeah,
blue wall, which
Mar-
started and may be
Mar-a-Lago.
ending as their best path to
Mm-hmm.
victory here. In spite of some numbers that show they still have some ground to make up, there's still a lot of data out there, and that's where, at least according to her memo, which effectively said goodbye to the staff
private
for the
island?
night, said we'll do it
You want a
again
private
later in the
island
night and
now?
start again strong.
I'm
in
gonna
the
be live
morning.
streaming
That's where they
forever to
are
get her
as this
private
night heads toward midnight.
All right, Peter, thank you.
y'all
Now,
has
without
to-
further
well,
ado, let's go to the
naturally,
host
if you have a
of Pod Save
private island, you
America.
have to have it.
Democrats John Lovett and Dan
Gotta
Pfeiffer,
have it,
both
y'all.
White House veterans. And Dan,
Got
I
to.
know you to be a
And I'm
number
with you on
cruncher,
that.
and I wonder what you're thinking about the numbers that you're seeing.
Uh-huh.
You just heard what the Harris campaign is saying, but the vibe check
Gotta
is
have it.
that
There are
this
certain
path
things
is
that you
narrowing
just
significantly,
need to
and that it's blue wall or bust at this point for
If
Kamala
you
Harris.
have an island.
Yeah, that seems right. And you look at the numbers, it's very clear that Trump is overperforming in rural counties,
I'm
and
with
Harris
you,
is
baby.
overperforming in suburban counties. And what is going to maybe the deciding factor here is primarily going to
See
be
you now.
what is the turnout and the vote margins coming out of Milwaukee, Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and Detroit. And if they are what we think they are, then she has a very clear, albeit
Here we
narrow,
go.
but clear path to be the next president of the United States.
All right.
John, let me ask you about what we've been
Here's the
observing
electoral
young
votes.
voters,
Here's
particularly
the electoral
male
votes right
voters,
here.
who seem to be breaking for Trump and him, in fact, winning the youth vote according to our exit polls. Does that surprise you? What's your take on that dynamic?
That would be surprising. I think that's another reason to drink. But
He
I
said
do
no
think
reason to
that-
drink.
I think it's
So here's the electoral votes. I want
think
this
that's
to
fine,
stay
and
up.
that's fine. I think it's pretty early to be drawing conclusions based on the exits and trying to figure out what happened with specific demographics. I think where we're at is this was always going to be close. It is close right now. I think there was some hope based on vibes that perhaps this wouldn't be as close based on some late polling and some late momentum and a terrible event at Madison Square Garden. Could we hope that maybe this night wouldn't be as long? And the answer is no. The polls largely were showing a very tight race, and that's what we're kind of living through.
Dan, do you think it will ultimately come down to Pennsylvania? I mean, that certainly has been what's been telegraphed.
Trump's at
for all these
230?
months.
I mean, it's the
They don't
essential
have Trump
state
at
because
230.
If Georgia and North Carolina,
But here,
she does not
my
win, and there's still
ticker
a lot of
is saying
outstanding vote in
Trump
Georgia.
is at
It's
230,
once again a narrow
Kamala's at
path. But if
179.
those do not end up in our
Now
column,
all the
there is no math
all
without
the votes,
Pennsylvania. You can
all
replace
these states haven't come in.
Wisconsin with Arizona. You can replace Michigan with Arizona and Wisconsin, but you need Pennsylvania, and so it will come down to Pennsylvania.
All right.
So
Dan
they're saying it's
Pfeiffer,
going to
John
come down to
Lovett, thanks for your
Pennsylvania.
time.
That's why
We'll talk to
all
you
of
soon.
this
Thank
red,
you.
you
And we
can't
have
really.
another call to make. I believe we're going to get a Washington, state of Washington president.
Oh, so okay, so they're going to call Washington State.
Let's see where we are. NBC News now projecting that.
Oh, they're projecting.
Kamala
They're projecting
Harris will
Washington
win
for
the 12 electoral
Kamala,
votes in
and that's
the
12.
state of Washington. Here's how it breaks down right now: a difference of about 472,000, 473,000 votes.
See,
In the
and
road
this
to
is what I'm talking
270
about, the
that leaves
electoral
Harris with
college that people are talking about.
165,
She's going to win it by
214
400
for
something
Donald
thousand
Trump
votes.
down.
Yet
Let's
how
go to
many
Republicans.
votes
Mike Dubke, White House
is
Communications
Washington going to
Director
give
under
her?
former President
Now,
Trump,
if she
and Sarah
wins
Fagan, a
Washington,
former aide
she's
to
going to
George
get
W.
12
Bush.
electoral
Mike,
votes,
first of all, give
even
me
though
your
she
thoughts
wins
here.
it by
We've had
400
no
and some
calls
plus
in,
thousand
battleground
votes.
states so
And that's why a
far.
lot of people have an
Is this
issue
a-
with the
a-
electoral
a
college. It's
matter
only
of
going to give her 12
viewing
votes.
pieces through a
Or,
microscope
yeah,
right
12
now to try
electoral
to
votes.
understand where this is going?
Well, it sounds that way from the Harris campaign, but I want to stick with the vibe comment that John Lovett just made, because I really do think that what we're seeing now is this coming to fruition, this vibe versus issues election that we've had.
Vibe
the
versus
Harris campaign
issues.
really put
That
on
is
the
the
vibes, the
best
joy,
way I've heard it put
and
so
all of
far.
that.
This
And I
whole
think the Trump
campaign, this whole
campaign tried to
election
stick to
was
issues.
vibe versus issues.
Immigration, inflation, instability around the world. And if you look at the exit polls that you all have been talking about today, you really see that Americans think that the country's on the wrong track. We think the economy, we were better off 4 years ago than we are today. And when you look at the way Harris tried to distance herself from Biden, I think this all came down to whether she'd be successful with that, and it looks like she wasn't.
Hey, Mike, let me just ask you.
Whew, they said it looks like she wasn't. So she wanted this is so they said that Biden wasn't even pushing for her. Okay, so that's 7 electoral votes if she gets Connecticut. That's 7.
There's the breakdown right now, about a 10-point.
So she's a projected winner. And look at that, the difference is 45,000+ votes. Yet that's only going to give her 7 electoral votes. Now it kind of makes sense that it only goes to 270. So that's what I'm saying. When it comes to this electoral, I'm kind of like this on it. Like I see it, then again I don't, because
what do you make of it?
if you're gonna vote one for one vote counts for one.
Doing what it can to try to keep
I mean,
hope
will you
alive.
get the same winner? I don't
Look,
know.
I don't see.
Because look,
any good
California
news
is
for Democrats
54
in these
electoral
results.
votes. And
Donald
with the
Trump
electoral
is
college,
running about a
they
point
talk
or
about
point and a
different
half,
states have
ahead
a
of where he was
different
in
pool
2020.
or
And
say when
in these
laws
counties,
and
in
legislation is
blue
being
wall
brought
counties
up.
that
Oh, because
75%
this
of
state
the
has
votes
more
in.
people,
And
it gets
Kamala
this
Harris
many
is running
electoral
behind
votes,
in
and
those
all
urban
this gets
areas by
into it.
1 or 2
You know what I'm
points
saying? When it
compared
comes
to
to
where
politics and breaking
President
down
Biden
the way that elections are done.
look at
And then
that
with the
coupled
electoral
with
votes,
Donald Trump's
you know, as far as
overperformance
like
with
different
Hispanic
state
voters,
representation.
young
Okay,
voters.
Florida has 30 electoral
don't think
votes.
they have
California
a
has
lot
54.
to hang their
Now,
hat
if you
on.
want to talk about how many people
it's
reside
not
in
over.
each
There's votes to be
state,
counted. We
right,
should point out
who
that
are
these
registered voters who can
blue
make
wall states
decisions,
tend to be
California,
red
will it
barrage,
get more
even they go
care?
red, and
In
then
Texas,
they
will it
tend
get
to
more
go,
care, say, than
to raise
Arizona
narrows
or
as these,
Arkansas that only get 3
big
electoral
urban areas
votes?
come in
Well,
later.
because it only gets 3 electoral
But when
votes,
you just look at
does
the
anyone really care?
underperformance of
So
Kamala Harris and the
I get what
overperformance
people
of
bring
Trump,
that up.
it's gonna be
You know what I'm
pretty
saying?
hard, I
That's
think,
why
for her to
Florida
catch him.
and
Yeah, the
California
Harris team
and
is
Texas,
the
you
same
hear
way
about
they
those states a lot.
overperformed in
New York, you hear
Philadelphia.
about
Does
the
that give you
issues even
pause?
concerning those states a
see
lot
where they're
because those are
saying
major
that.
states when it
Now
comes
they're
to
looking, I'm sure, at
the
precinct
electoral
analysis,
votes
and we're
and
looking
political
at a
campaigns. So
county
those are
total,
popular
so we
states.
should-
You know,
we should give
larger
that
states.
caveat.
I'm
But,
surprised New
you
York
know,
has
Joe
26 with
Biden
its
got
just by
80% of
sheer
the vote in
people
Philadelphia
population
County.
alone.
And
The Price has 26.
she's not
I thought it
running
would
at
have more.
80%. I think she's, the last I looked, was at 77 or 78%. So that's a pretty significant difference when
Pennsylvania,
when a race
look
is
at
as
this,
close as it is.
19 electoral
Sarah, Mike,
votes.
thanks to both of you. Tom Yamas has more from the big board.
That's a
on
battleground.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
Georgia, but I
saying?
also wanna give
That's a
listeners sort of
battleground
a
state
vibe check
because
of
of
where
way
we are.
it can
It's still really
swing.
early
You know
in
what I'm
the
saying?
night, right? And even though people may be claiming they've won certain states yet, we still haven't called any of the battlegrounds here at NBC News. And a reminder, Harris's easiest path is to hold the blue wall. If she wins Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, remember, she gets to the White House. Even if she loses Georgia, North Carolina, the entire Sun Belt, she still gets there. Let's talk about Georgia, though. Let's find out where we are there in the Peach State. Still too close
What
to
do you
call
know?
for NBC News right now. 91% of the vote is in, but let's
I'ma
talk
be
about where
stupid,
the
bitch.
vote remains. Look at, okay, the giant
Okay,
circles, remember those
Georgia's
giant
another
bubbles?
battleground
That's the
state.
vote that
How
still
many
is
votes does
outstanding.
Georgia
We're still
have?
waiting
Let's
on this
see.
vote to be counted. And we know the exact number, or we can estimate the exact number. We think it's going to be about 487,000 votes. There's still almost 500,000 votes out in Georgia.
400 and-
still up for grabs here. Let's make some comparisons here. Remember, I told you Harris has to drive.
Georgia
the
has
vote
16.
in the Atlanta metro area.
Georgia has
50%
16
of the
electoral
voters are gonna
votes.
come from this area right here. First
93% in, so they're
she's
saying that she's
performing
gonna win
just like
Georgia.
where Biden is, slightly better. Fulton
And that's
County
why I was
performing
saying,
a little
with
bit
this
lower, but
map, you
slightly,
guys
still
see this
7% of
map,
the vote out
right?
to
You
where
see this
Atlanta is
map.
exactly. Gwinnett County,
And it's
80%
red.
in.
there's a lot of red on this map. You know, a lot of these states, you know, depending on the electoral votes, you know, so Trump is winning North Carolina, North Dakota, he won Ohio, Oklahoma. What's MS? I think that's Missouri. That's only 6 electoral votes. North Dakota, 3. Utah, 6. South Dakota, 3 electoral votes. Oklahoma, 7.
And they've almost got all the vote counted.
New England, 2 electoral votes.
Because there is something interesting happening in the
Wyoming, 3 electoral votes. South Carolina, 9.
About the black belt of North Carolina earlier and how she was underperforming there. Remember, this was Biden's number.
Yeah,
this
what's
is her number tonight.
And it
Watch
is
as
New
we go
England.
around here, okay?
New England
These
Patriots.
are counties where it's a majority African American, 52%, 50% for Kamala
Yeah.
Harris. This is a rural county.
So
Trump is overperforming here. We go to another
you see
rural
all of
county,
this red.
overperforming
It just
here.
depends on
Come
how
down
many
here in Dougherty
electoral
County.
votes
She's
each
slightly
state
overperforming Biden there, but
holds.
again, if she
It
wants
goes
to win
back
the state of
into that.
Georgia,
So you
she's
have to
gotta
know
be
the
doing better than
electoral
Biden.
college numbers.
It seems like
You
she
have
could
to
be
know
doing
it.
that in Atlanta. The numbers are good for her right now in the metro region, but it's still really too close for us to
New
call here in
England,
Georgia.
Nebraska.
Guys, I'm
I'm
gonna step back
sorry.
to you.
Gosh, dog.
Okay, Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks
I wanna go
for
to Chuck
correcting
because Chuck, we were
correcting
talking
me.
about Donald Trump getting new voters,
2
people that didn't vote
electoral
in
votes.
2020. And
Trump has 214. So they got Trump at 214.
seeing some pretty
Kamala at
staring
172.
numbers.
We have,
You know, it's
and that's what I'm
interesting.
saying. That's why you got to be
Georgia
on my
is going
stream
to
because I'm
shrink.
giving it
That's
to
a-
you
you
live
gotta-
right here.
with
Harris
all
at
of this vote is gonna be
187. Trump is at
Democratic vote.
230.
She's gotta win
And
the
we have
remaining probably
even
2 to
more
1.
up to date. You know what I'm saying? We
That's
have
like a
even more.
reasonable thing. I mean, Georgia's probably going to be decided by 4 or 5 digits.
And where the
okay?
vote is outstanding,
Exactly.
you think
So-
4 or 5 digits. You see what
I
I'm
think we
saying?
will be-
Georgia's
we
going to
might
be
sticking around Georgia for a little while. Just
and
if
you
it
still
does,
get
if
those
you're him,
electoral
you can't
votes.
totally
That's 16
write it
electoral
off.
votes.
There's a path there.
Kamala
But,
kind of has to win Georgia
Our pollsters did some
for this to
quick
be a
check,
fight,
noted
really.
some, comparisons to 2020.
She
Just
has to
simply
win it
Trump margins.
because she's at
These are not in
187.
battleground
Trump's at
states, but it
230.
gives you a hint of
So she has to
possibility
win
Donald Trump could actually
Georgia
win the popular vote
for
if
this
he
to
wins the
continue to be a
Electoral College
fight.
tonight. So,
She
for
loses
instance, in Texas, he only
Georgia.
won Texas by a little over 5
I don't know how
points in
much of a fight
2020.
we'll
He's won
have
it by
because
14
then,
points tonight in Iowa.
you know what I'm
It was
saying?
8 points.
That's going to put
It's
him
nearly
at
15
46.
points tonight in Florida. It was 3 points.
246?
13 points tonight for Trump. Not only gave you some blue
Song
states,
break.
Virginia.
Don't get
It was
my
10-point
don't
Biden victory. Looks like it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 4
Oh.
this time in Virginia. New Jersey, 15 points.
I was about to
right
say,
now,
don't
it's
get my
5
chat.
for
Don't get
Harris.
my chat. Don't get my
Illinois,
chat.
another state
Don't
is
get my stream.
a little under 10. It was
A lot.
at 17 points for Biden. So Trump has improved his standing in a lot of blue states. We'd seen that in our own polling. But it is why this time we are unlikely to have a split between the popular vote and electoral. Whoever wins the Electoral College is probably going to win the popular vote.
Those are pretty dramatic margins. I mean, we're not
Dramatic.
nitpicking about a point or 2 here. You're talking with Texas
5
at
points,
5,
10
6,
points,
7,
yeah.
8. I mean, that's
Well, this is the Hispanic shift in the Southeast. It's clear. Florida and Texas, that's the massive Latino shift that we've seen.
Yeah,
tonight
see?
in
That's
those
what I'm
two
saying.
States, but it may be spots of it everywhere.
So
That's what I'm
getting a
saying. So
reaction
Trump
from
did well when it
lawmakers,
came
Democratic
to the
operatives.
Hispanic
Some are
vote.
still saying, look,
Trump
we
did
can
well.
still
He
win this thing, we
performed
can hold
well
on to the
there.
blue wall, and that's absolutely accurate because
I don't
we're
know.
still tracking
Personally,
votes.
I don't know if this is going to be
Democratic
close.
lawmaker
I didn't
sort of to the
expect
point that
a
Chuck
close
is making,
race.
saying, if
I didn't expect a
this
close
race does
race.
not go Kamala Harris's
Anything
way,
can
this is a
happen though,
moment of
and
reckoning for the
we,
Democratic
and
Party.
that's why
This
I'm
person
not
saying there needs to be a
saying
hard
that.
look
That's
at
why they're
what
not
went
calling
wrong
it for
and
Trump, and I'm not even
potentially
calling it for Trump right now
really
because just
a
because he
real
has all
passing
this
of the
red,
baton when it
it
comes to
doesn't mean
leadership.
anything. It
And
just
of course, the
depends on
attention
how
will
many
turn
votes
to President Biden.
those
When
different
he
states. So we got
steps
Georgia, they
aside,
got
72%
16.
in our exit polls saying the country is headed in the wrong direction. That's
I think this
the
Minnesota
backdrop
has
to all
10.
of this. President Biden and this immense dissatisfaction with the
Arizona has
direction
11.
the
That's
country's
still
headed.
going.
It could be the
Michigan,
Democratic Party
not
was-
Michigan.
allowed itself to just organize
Has
itself
15.
being an anti-Trump party.
So
And in some ways,
Pennsylvania,
so
that's why they
focused
keep
on
saying it's going to come down to
creating an
Pennsylvania.
anti-Trump
Pennsylvania
coalition,
has 19.
they stopped
Virginia
being a
has
political party,
13
right,
electoral
to come
votes.
up with a basic agenda.
So
And
there are
you know,
some
and again, right now,
big numbers
I-
still out
I
there
get what that
left to
lawmaker is telling
see
you because
who's going to get them.
look at the
What
last,
is this
right,
one? I
the
can't
whole-
see that one.
Biden wasn't a pick of the future. It was a whatever you could do for Trump.
All right, we're gonna pause for a moment to
Most people were voting against Trump.
Some of our
They're
stations
saying
on
they
the
was
East
voting
Coast.
against Biden. That's the better way to say it. They can't say they're not going
It
to
is
say that.
just past 11:30.
With Biden, most people
Welcome back to those
were
viewers who are joining us
were
on this
voting
exciting
against
new
Trump more so than voting for Biden. And I think that's why Trump won the popular vote but lost the election. And then they said there was rigging going on too at the same
We have
time.
not called them yet. We've been getting minute-by-minute projections, all leading up to this road to 270, which is the magic number needed to win the White House. So let's go through some of the boards here. This is Pennsylvania at this hour. 79% of the vote in, too close to call. We've talked
Too close to call. I agree.
Harris to make up where she's
I
lost
agree.
in some of the rural areas. Here, let's go to Michigan, too close to call there as well, but a lot more vote to be counted. In Wisconsin, let's see how much we've got there. About 2/3 of the vote or so, too close to call. In Georgia, we're getting close to a close there, but they do count their votes fast there, and it's 91% in, but we will see what happens. Too close to call. North Carolina, too early to call. We will wait and see what happens there, but again, starting to see 88% of the vote coming in there. Let's go out west. Arizona, too early to call. Polls closed about 2.5 hours ago there.
They're saying too early to call.
Like the projected winner. This just came in right now. Okay, North Carolina, Donald Trump is the projected winner. You
So
see the
Donald Trump
margin
is the
there,
projected winner for North Carolina.
136,000. So
That's big because that's 16 electoral votes. That is one of the largest
50,000 votes there in North Carolina.
ones still out there. And we already got that. We got that at 2:30. And they're calling it out. Now they got 2:30. See, now they're catching up. That's one of the big ones out there.
Perhaps that would open up
Georgia is another one.
them out west, the Sun Belt path. It is looking like blue wall or bust. That is where it stands right now. 172 electoral votes for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the lead right now.
Let's go to Tom right now and talk about now what this does to Kamala Harris's paths to victory.
Yeah, let's show you real quick how Trump wins, right? How we project that he wins.
Okay, so here we go.
Robinson right now, 64.9%, 30% in. You can see how Trump's overperforming here. As we go along these rural counties, you can see Trump's numbers are increasing. 63 4 years ago, 66 tonight. We'll keep moving along here. 50%, 53%. So Lester, you asked, how does this affect him in the race for president? Let's go back out to our big board here, the road to 270. When we started out tonight, right, the paths to victory here, Trump had 10, Harris has 9. That's because we just called North Carolina. We can't even remove it anymore. This number before we called North Carolina, Harris had more paths than Trump did. But this is essentially where we started the night. This is the way it ended in 2020, right? He won North Carolina. President Biden had won the rest of the battleground states. But this gives the Republicans and former President Trump some hope. We now move to Georgia. We're going to be looking at the vote in Georgia. But as Chuck mentioned, very, very close in Georgia. And we're going to be waiting on that vote, the full vote to come out of Atlanta in those ring counties right now. But a big win for former President Trump. It's the first battleground we're calling tonight.
All right, Tom, thanks very much.
Remember, there was some late polling in the state that came just over the weekend that suggested that perhaps Kamala Harris was surging in North Carolina, that maybe she was making gains among some of these voters. That is clearly not turning out to be the case. That said, you've seen the reporting.
So they said that Kamala was doing well in North Carolina and she's not.
Of course, the question is, if Georgia goes, and I know you and Chuck were just talking about Georgia, but if Georgia does end up in the red column, it is Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania.
Well, to that point, the Secretary of State in Georgia, Brad Raffensperger, who people are familiar with from the last election, has said on the record that Trump has an insurmountable lead in Georgia with the number of votes outstanding. So he's the Secretary of State. I think he knows what he's speaking of, but we will continue to watch.
It's not going to look too good if Trump wins Georgia. That's why I was saying she has to win. So she got 13 with Virginia. She has to win Georgia. If she doesn't win Georgia, it's going to be tough. I mean, you got 19 sitting out there with Pennsylvania.
That, of course, goes into the Harris column. Here's where that leaves us in the road to 270. Trump with 230 now, 40 from his goal. Harris with 185 electoral votes.
Okay, let's bring Jen Psaki in, former Biden White House press secretary. And
that's what I'm saying.
Joining us earlier.
That's what I'm saying. If she does not win Georgia, it's going to be tough. It's going to be extremely tough if she does not win Georgia. If Trump ends up taking Georgia, and he's 40 away from getting 270, I mean, He can get that with Arizona.
campaign,
Arizona
like,
is in the air
tells
right
you
now.
A lot about where the heads are of the people on the campaign.
And Virginia's in the air.
The chair of the
I don't even
campaign,
think that
she was
she's
also
projected to win Virginia. They haven't
campaign
told us
manager
that
when
yet.
Biden won in 2020. And basically, they did not talk about it. I know NBC.
Oklahoma, he's going to get Oklahoma with 7. Do we already have Oklahoma taken away?
North Carolina, you just made a call on that. It's about the blue wall states, and she
Yeah,
warns that Arizona
we already got
and Nevada
Oklahoma
will take some
showing.
time.
So
What
she's
does
projected to
become
get
challenging,
Oregon.
I think part of the purpose of an email
That's
like
8
that is also to
electoral
pump up
votes.
the troops inside, the team who's been working so hard for months. That's part of it, and also to send that note to supporters.
So right now we're looking at 230 to 185. That's what they have on NBC. We have 230, 187.
Going a different way than you hoped it would. And right now, what the Harris team is doing, which happens on every presidential campaign, as you know as well, is sitting in what you call the boiler room, which is kind of an intense word to use, but that's what it's called. And they're looking at their vote goals in these counties and how the outcome aligns. And you look at everything from, did they get what they needed in the big cities? In Philly, there are some cities that haven't fully come in, so they're waiting for those. But also what the margins are for Trump, which are higher, as you've been reporting, and we've been talking about over on MSNBC, in some of the rural counties, meaning he's getting more votes there that they need to make up for in the cities. So it's a numbers game in each of these states.
But even in reliably blue states, we're seeing narrowing margins. We just saw it in Virginia. We called it. Kamala Harris won it, but I believe by a smaller margin than she did, or that the Democrats did 4 years ago. I want to show Minnesota right now, which we are calling too close to call. And this is a reliably blue state. Let me show you what the numbers look like, the breakdown. Half of the vote in. It's called too close to call. Again, when you see that wide margin, you were thinking, what are you guys talking about? It's because our decision desk is crunching the numbers. They know where those votes have come from.
So they're saying it's too close to call because they know what votes are left out there. And they may trend, they may be a popular trending areas left to come in that trend Trump's way, that trend red instead of blue. So that's why it'd be too close to call, even though she's up by 10%.
I think for them, what becomes harder and harder,
and she may get it. She may get it. That's why she needs to win a state with a higher electoral. These double digits, man, at least.
Minnesota's governor.
That's why I'm saying she has to win Georgia. She needs to win Georgia. Will she win it? I don't know, because Trump is in the lead in Georgia.
I don't know that they're overly worried.
81% of the votes in. Texas is huge, but we knew he was going to get Texas. We was going to get Florida.
I've heard a
we
lot
knew she was going to get
on the left
Cali.
ask over the last several weeks, how can this?
And look
be
at the Senate. You guys have to pay attention to these things. Look at the way that the Senate is going, 41 to 49.
Right, obviously with
so
the
far.
economy, with the 2/3 of the American people who think the country's on the wrong track on the immigration.
And then look at the House. The House is leaning towards
general polling.
Man,
that this would be a
this whole
Republican or for
this whole country can look red, man. I'm saying the House is red, and then the Senate is red, and then you have
you'd have a much greater margin.
A Republican president.
A Republican victory.
That's difficult to answer because Donald Trump brings out such a passionate base where you might have a problem getting that overperformance in rural areas.
Here we go.
Because he is so animating, especially on the right. Now, he's equally animating on the left, which turns out that opposition.
Or you might get suburban women on the side of a different kind of Republican.
Jen, has the conversation begun yet about Joe Biden and about the decision to ask him to step aside?
It will begin. It will begin depending on the outcome. And obviously, there hasn't been a race called yet. If this is not a Harris win, that will certainly be part of the discussion. It is. She's run a campaign over the course of 107 days.
She's projected to win Washington, which gives her 12 electoral votes.
And there'll be lots of questions about exactly that, the timing and the impact of that.
West Virginia 4.
Bringing up the history, I mean, in terms of vice presidents trying to.
Do we already have West Virginia called on our map?
Unpopular president. He said it's bordering on politically impossible.
And this gets back to something that we talked about. The favorability rating for
Wisconsin
President Biden is low, and you look at some of these numbers on how people feel about the country right now, and about 3 in 4 Americans in the exit polling say they feel angry or dissatisfied, and that is something that may end up being critical in this race as well.
And one of the things that I think is so notable.
Wyoming only has 3.
The big questions
And if he
would
gets
the
closer,
economy
if he
be
gets
the
to a
top
certain, I
issue,
want to
as
say if he
Mark
gets
is
around,
talking
if he
about,
hits
or would
270
reproductive rights,
before all
given
of
that
these
abortion
states
is
are
on the
counted,
ballot
they
in
won't.
10
I think they
different
will
states?
still count him,
Would that
even though
be
that he will
the
be
biggest
president
energizing factor
elect.
tonight? What we are
Right?
seeing
Trump will be
is that
president
right
elect.
now it seems like the
Right? He
economy
won't
and
be the
immigration
president as of
continue
yet.
to
He'll
be
be
the most
president
motivating
elect.
factors for people.
And I'm almost interested to see
And
that,
they'll
because
count the
we
rest of
did
them,
see,
yet they'll
using
still
Florida as
call
the example,
the race.
It was not close in Florida, whether at the presidential level or with the Senate. But at the same time, they're
Look at
sending
that.
Rick Scott and Donald Trump. Obviously, they barely defeated a constitutional amendment on abortion. So they almost, like we would say split ticket voting with Senate and Congress and president. They kind of split their ticket going, no, I don't like this, but I do like them.
And that's not something that is captured necessarily, because polling doesn't function this way in polling about abortion rights, right? That there are people who could vote for Trump and also vote for protecting abortion rights. Arizona is another interesting state to watch on that front, as you know, Arizona native, because I talked to Senator, or maybe we'll see, Congressman Gallego the other night, and there are people who could be Gallego, Trump, abortion rights voters, which bends the mind a
So
little bit. But
they're
that's why
saying
we
that
don't entirely understand how
Trump
the
and
electorate
them
comes down
barely
on these issues.
won the abortion, I think, which was number 4.
As a political journalist, what
And in
like-
Florida-
That's true.
Well, we're just moments away from midnight here on the East Coast. What are you guys doing tomorrow? I'll tell you what you're doing. The battleground states, they have not been called yet. Stay with us.
So the battleground states have not been called yet. This is huge. It's a big deal that the battleground states have not been called yet. That's what I'm saying. You can't get too excited if you're a Trump voter, and you can't get too down if you're a Kamala voter, just because all of this is red. You know, you knew a lot of this was going to be red because they traditionally vote Republican. So, and you can't get too focused on that, because you have to look at the electoral votes. And that's why I'm trying to get this. I'm totally getting distracted. I got people texting me. This is going on, and I have not gotten to it yet. I'm going to get to it to where we can see the electoral votes, because you have to see that. You have to see what the electoral votes are. I got to get these electoral votes up so we can actually see what each state, how many electoral votes each state holds. That's what I'm saying. You can't get too focused on all of that red. You see all that red here on the map? Oh my gosh, Trump is going to win, which he may. I believe, you know, personally, I think Trump is going to. But then again, I don't know, because you have to see what these battleground states, what these key states look like. You still have some high electoral voted states still sitting out there, you know. The smaller ones, yeah. The major big ones so far that we have come in, we've had Ohio come in with 17, Tennessee with 11, Texas with 40, California with 54, Florida with 30, which are like your larger states that hold a lot of the electoral votes. And Trump has gotten 3 of them.
Election night is about
Yeah,
to be
3.
election morning as we creep
But
up
Kamala
on
has
midnight
New York
on the
with
East Coast.
28.
Glad you're with us. We are moments away from getting more polls, more vote, and more closings as we get new numbers minute by minute.
Yeah.
We're watching not just the presidential race, but of course, we're watching the balance of power, the United States
Yeah.
Senate, the United States House of
And
Representatives.
these are important. The balance, she said it, the balance of, we're watching the balance of power.
Eye on that. We just
These are
lost power,
important.
so made
The
it
Senate,
crucial.
the House is
In
important.
Ohio, I know you've got some results.
Absolutely. So we called Ohio.
Congress is
for the
important.
Republican. Let's head
The
over
presidential
to
race is important. It
Pennsylvania.
is,
Just as we
but that's
await
why they're saying the balance of power.
results in the great
A
state of
lot of
Pennsylvania,
the country, a lot of it is looking red. It's going to be an interesting 4 years coming down the pipeline. It really is, from a political standpoint. It's going to be interesting because a lot of the state is turning red right now, and a lot of the states is turning red right now. The House is turning red. The Senate is turning red, and it's not just red by a little bit. The House is not just red by a little bit.
Challenge from Eric Hovde, businessman Eric Hovde. Let's head over to Montana now. Michigan. We're going to go to Michigan.
Michigan.
Alyssa Slotkin trying to win a Senate seat against Mike Rogers. This race also too close to call.
And did she get Michigan?
This is one of the seats that Republicans are eyeing as a potential pickup. John Tester looking for a fourth term against Tim Chee. This race too early to call.
Man, he might not get it.
Overall, again, Republicans have now picked up 2 seats.
Look at the Senate.
Is a very good night for them, potentially putting them on the path to take back the Senate, Savannah.
That's what I'm saying.
Polls and they had a 2-seat net gain, they would take control of the Senate. There's one race out there that's an odd one because you have a Nebraska Senate race where you have the Republican incumbent Deb Fischer up against an independent Dan Osborne, who is interesting. If you read into, he has his views talking about not putting people into categories. He's got an array of views. He calls himself independent. He appears to be. He says he won't caucus with either side, and he's giving her a real run there in Nebraska.
He's giving her a real run. The polls have tightened in recent
And look at the
days.
House. This is something else I was talking about. Look at the House. 173 to, what was it? 148 in the House. Democrat is 148, Republican is 173. And the House looks like it's going to swing Republican. This is all important. It's key. It's pivotal in a lot of the decision making that Trump is going to have. Right, a lot of power that he's going to have, because if you control the House, you control the Senate. There's a lot of things that can't go on, you know, when you're trying to get laws and get legislation pushed through. You're not going to have too much kickback. That's why a lot of this is important. That's why what I'm saying, when you're voting, you can't just focus on the president. You can't just focus on the president. You got to vote on everything. You got to look at it all. Because if the president wants to do something, depending if he has a Senate or a House that is on his side, whether it's a Republican president and the Republicans control the Senate, or majority Republicans in the Senate, or majority Republicans in the House, there's not going to be a lot of kickback, or we got to go back and do this again, you know, fixing things, trying to get everyone wants to get their piece of the pie when it comes to pushing legislation through. All of it goes into it.
We're almost identical in terms of the splits. 60-38 for Democrat versus Republican here, 66% I believe in Mecklenburg and Charlotte, 63% in Wake. That's almost identical to what it was 4 years ago, but it's the margins in the rural parts of the state that really drove this victory, at least by a couple of percentage points for Trump, which sounds pretty familiar. Tom was talking about that a second ago. That's thought one. Thought two is the Democratic race, you know, the governor's race, excuse me. There was a lot of thoughts about split tickets and whether Mark Robinson would be potentially dragging down President Trump or even affecting the down ballot races. We have updates here, and it's not just Mark Robinson losing convincingly to Josh Stein, 55 to 39%, with 85% or so of the votes in so far, but it's also the lieutenant governor's race. The Democrat up a couple percentage points there, Rachel Hunt. Jeff Jackson, the AG, he's up a couple percentage points over his Republican opponent. So you're seeing truly Republican or voters here in North Carolina going across the board for statewide Democrats and then also voting for Donald Trump. So we're seeing that sort of as a microcosm of this overall picture. And then lastly, you have roughly 37% of the electorate in North Carolina that is unassigned, right? Not Democratic, not Republican. Democrats, registered Democrats in the state had gone down about 80,000 or so, I believe, votes from the previous election. Republicans had gained 100,000 plus registered voters, but the reality here is now 400,000 new unaffiliated voters, and we're wondering where will they fall? What is the fault line going to be for those folks, especially these hundreds of thousands that are moving in from out of state? North Carolina gained the third most amount of people post-pandemic after Texas and Florida. How would they play out, especially in the suburbs of these large, Democratic cities? By and large. And what we're finding out right now is that the exurbs did really lean more Trump, and that a lot of these folks in the unidentified category were going more red than blue, at least in this election. That's what the early results appear to show, Savannah.
All right, Sam Brock
He
in
won.
Nashville for us. Thank you.
He killed in North Carolina at 73%.
Governor Walz, the sitting governor, on the top of the ticket here. And it's
So New Hampshire go to Kamala.
Right now, Democrats, though, are okay with this margin right now. About 50% of the vote is still out. This is how it ended up in 2020. You can see Harris is overperforming slightly. Biden right here. I wanted to look at Minneapolis, Hennepin County. This is the largest county in all of Minnesota. She's doing fine. She's tracking just like Biden did. So this is not really a worry for them. I did want to show you something, though. Blue Earth County, okay? So this is a county that Trump is on top right now. Biden won it in 2020. Why do I want to show you Blue Earth County? Well, besides having the coolest name in the entire country for a county, this is where Governor Tim Walz is from. This is where he taught with his wife. This is where Coach Walz is from. Right now, Republicans are winning his county. It just goes to show when you talk about how Trump may or may not win this election, he's driving up votes in rural areas. I'll show you another one, Stearns County, which actually has a large Somali American population. 95% of the vote in, he's overperforming there. So again, Minnesota,
So he's
it doesn't look like it's
overperforming
trouble for Democrats right now, so 50% of the vote is out. But when we look at those rural counties, he's overperforming even in a place where Governor Tim Walz is from. Guys?
All right, Tom, thanks very much. Let's bring in NBC's Blaine Alexander, who was in the Atlanta area tonight with some developing news.
Yeah, we have heard some notable remarks from the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, concerning the race here in Georgia. Now, before I say them, I want to make it clear, NBC News is still characterizing Georgia as too close to call. But I want to let you know what Raffensperger said not too long ago in a news conference. He said that he believes, looking at the numbers, Donald J. Trump has a, quote, insurmountable lead with the number of votes outstanding. He later goes on to say, it looks like this is pretty much done, and then says, quote, I think the results are pretty well baked in based on where the leads are right now. He's talking about the state of Georgia. Now, again, NBC News still characterizing this as too close to call, but we're talking with Brad Raffensperger, of course. He is in the control center in his Secretary of State's office, watching those results come in, watching the numbers, and also where those votes are coming in as well. Now, I've spent the evening talking to some of my Republican sources throughout the state.
They're saying that Trump may win Georgia. Look at that. The difference is 118,833.
Winning here in Georgia. What would be different from 2020? Of course, we all know that Georgia kind of shocked so many people around the country 4 years ago by flipping blue and helping send Joe Biden to the White House. But they said, again, across the board this time, that it was the push toward early voting by Republicans that they believe has really made a difference in the Peach State this time around. You remember 4 years ago, Donald Trump was really waving people off from voting early, telling them to go on Election Day. This time we've seen a very different message. His surrogates have been preaching a very different message. Even Governor Brian Kemp and other top Republicans in the state have been pushing that early voting message. When I spoke with one Republican source earlier tonight, he said, looking at early voting, he was optimistic. Also, the fact that Republicans tend to turn out more on Election Day, he was feeling good about the way things were going here in the state as well. So several sources telling me they believe that early voting did make a difference, guys.
All right, Blaine Alexander, thanks very much. You know, I was going down, as we bring the panel back, I was going down the most important issues from the exit.
They're online, man. They're going in about Florida.
Right. And that was Donald Trump's
I don't know. Are they upset people voted red in California? I mean, in Florida, you knew Florida was going to vote red. You knew it. You knew Florida was going to go red. I don't think that didn't surprise me. I'm not surprised Florida went red. I'm not surprised at all that Florida has gone red.
It's always been a big
I am not surprised at all.
Now, fourth on the exit poll list, but look what was up
Florida
there,
being red
surprises
does not surprise me
a
little bit.
Exit polls now is state of democracy.
Not at all.
Doesn't mean they're going to win overall. And state of democracy is complicated as the top issue because Republicans and Democrats see it different ways.
Yeah, both sides think there's a threat to democracy for different reasons. Can we go over to Tom Yamas? He's been pacing over there by the Georgia map. Because it's interesting. I mean, we have the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, but who has certainly shown his independence, saying that Trump has an insurmountable lead. I believe you and Chuck have said there's still some vote
and that's the reason why. I mean, this is a battleground state because it could change. Now, even look at how it's broken down. I'm going to mute this because I want you guys to hear me. Right? I'm going to mute this.
It's all over the Atlanta metro
now,
region. This is where
look at this map and how it's breaking down the different areas within the state of Florida. Each of those areas carry a certain amount of population that can swing it, right? That can swing the vote. Now, just because you see a lot of that red, Trump is going to win Georgia. I mean, look at where he's at right now, 42.1%. So, but look at that. That's Cobb County. You got Fulton County. Look at that. 71% is her, right? Gwinnett County. You see how those counties are broken down and how many people are in each of those areas. So it really just depends. So she's winning in those areas, but then when you get to the areas,
but here's the flip side of all this.
Look at this.
Let's throw a dart to the east side of Georgia. Any county.
He's going to show the other side of the county. And look how Trump's overperforming her.
Again, I'm going to just touch random counties here. 65, 69.
So-
These aren't big counties, but any county I touch, he's going, well, except for that one, any other county.
It's not close, and that's what he's trying to show y'all. It's not close. Let me unmute it because it's not close with where he's winning at. And look at how it's a huge
Can they
disparity.
run up the score here? Is this what the Secretary of State is talking about? That the numbers are so high in the rural counties, Democrats won't catch them in the Atlanta metro region, but there's
It's
still
not
voting
enough
this
that
area.
voted
So
for
that's one
her
reason why we
in
can't call Georgia just yet.
in Georgia. It wasn't enough that voted for her. Yeah, those areas were heavy populated and they voted blue. But if you look at the other side of Georgia, they mostly voted red. And they voted for Trump in those rural areas. And that's what he was trying to show. And so it depends on how those votes come in those states to see where you're going to call it. That's why they're saying it's too early to call. Now, they're saying it's too early to call, but the senator is like, bro, these numbers are coming in. And the way Trump is like winning in those areas in Georgia, he's going to end up winning the whole state. She got Hawaii. Hawaii's only 4 electoral votes, which is great, but she has to win a battleground state. She needs to win those battleground states. Trump win those battleground states, they're going to call the election for Trump.
Electoral votes.
All right, we've got quite a few battlegrounds still pending tonight. Pennsylvania, the
Pennsylvania's
biggest
pending.
front, 80%
Pennsylvania
of the vote
is,
in.
I believe,
It
the
is
largest
too
battleground
close to call
state
in
left.
Wisconsin, same story. Here we go. 75% of the vote in, a difference of 87,000 votes. Michigan, too close to call at this hour as well. Midnight on the East Coast.
Pennsylvania, I believe, is the largest battleground state left. I want to say that's 19
Been
electoral
counting
votes.
for about 3 hours now out west.
Yeah.
In Nevada also too
That's the
early to
largest
call.
the largest electoral
we have
ballot,
too close to call.
the largest battleground state
Feeling very good about
when it
their
comes to electoral
prospects
votes.
there, but the margins are not at a place where we are ready to call that. Georgia, too close to call at this hour, too. We just discussed that. So that might be a ray of light for Kamala Harris, or perhaps a very a narrowing of her path to victory.
Yeah.
We should mention, Tom, we have called North Carolina. That was the first battleground to call, and it stays in the red column for Donald Trump.
North Carolina was a battleground state, and Trump won it. And that's 16. Because it could have gone any way based off how traditionally North Carolina votes.
You can see how much of this section was blue in 2020. Again, Biden won these counties.
And it's a
Now, this
lot
is
to
2024.
understand, a lot
He's
that
flipping
breaks down
counties
and
like
goes into
Monroe. Again,
when
it's
you're
about a
talking about
200 vote difference there, so we can't really put too
when
much
you're
into
talking
that.
about
But he's ahead. Northampton County, remember, this is the one that has
the
picked
way
the
these
president, or at
elections
least
go,
picked the winner of
right? And the way
Pennsylvania,
the
going back to
electoral
the
college
Kennedy
goes, and the
years.
way each
This is
state,
Easton. This is a fast-growing area.
you know,
Suburbs.
breaks down,
Used to be the
you know,
people
when it
that
comes
used
to these
work at Bethlehem
counties
Steel.
and
It's now
how many
changing.
votes come
Again,
in with those counties.
fast-growing suburbs
So
in South
a
Central
county,
Pennsylvania.
if you want to look at this
52%
Pennsylvania
on top.
to the left
Again,
up
a
here,
reminder here, this is
oh,
a
well, he
county that
put the
Biden
thing
won
there.
in 2020.
All
And
that
this
red,
is
okay,
blue right
yeah,
now. This
it
is
may
Bucks
all
County.
be red, but the
56%
population might
in.
not be
Still a
that
lot of the vote
big
is
there.
out. There's only about a
And that's why a lot of it
400
will still be in
still
the
waiting at
air
182,000
because of the votes they
votes.
have to
So
come in from
Republicans
these
can't really
areas.
draw
Well,
too
it's
much out of
mostly
this,
red. Trump
but
won that. It's
Democrats
mostly
would rather
red.
these counties
It's
were
mostly
all
blue.
Let's
Kamala
move a
won
little
that.
further
Well,
south,
look at these areas that
around the
are
collar
coming in.
counties
That
of
still have to come
Philadelphia
in.
here.
They may
Montgomery
hold a
County,
greater
this is where Governor
population,
Shapiro is from,
so they may be able to swing
61%,
that state.
performing
Yes, you
slightly
won
under,
most of the
Joe
states,
Biden,
but there
not
was
too
not
bad.
too many
Chester
people out there
County,
in those areas
58
anyways.
to 54. That's a bigger gap there. Again, remember, Joe Biden wins Pennsylvania because he does better than Hillary Clinton in those suburbs around Philadelphia. And let's
There
take
we
a look
go.
at Philadelphia right now. Okay, 81 for Biden, 77 for Kamala Harris. There's still about 30% of the vote is out. But again, these aren't the trend lines that Democrats are going to want to see. Look, it could all change when that vote comes in. This is
Yep.
where we are right now. This is a
Yep.
snapshot in time. It could all change. Erie County is another swing county that we're watching. About 75% of the vote is
Swing
in.
county.
She's overperforming Biden there. That's a good sign for her, especially in
So it looks
Western
like she
PA,
may
where
win.
Democrats knew they were going to have some trouble.
Well,
because
wait,
of
let's
the
see.
issue of
That's
fracking.
Erie County.
Let's look at Allegheny County
Okay.
real quick. This is Pittsburgh. 94% of the vote is in, and she's about at the same mark where Biden is. That's where we stand right now, guys, in Pennsylvania.
How about Wisconsin? Can you do Door County? Because as you well know,
So Pennsylvania looks like he was going to win Pennsylvania too. In those counties, she overperformed, but the overall state of Pennsylvania, it looked like Trump was
You're
going to
betting
get.
on. Door County is blue. Democrats are on top there. But look, guys, this is a very small number. Door County is not a big county, but it's one that all the political watchers look at because it usually picks the winner almost always of the statewide race in Wisconsin. Right now it's blue. That's a great sign for Democrats. I'm going to look at another one like I mentioned, Sauk County. This is another one that usually picks the winner. Trump is on top here. Biden won it in 2020, so he's really overperforming, going from 48
So,
to 52.
Wisconsin, how many
But again,
electoral
there's still
votes is
about 30%
Wisconsin?
of the vote that's out there, so we got to wait and see. The big ones we're watching in Wisconsin, as you know, Savannah, Dane County.
I think 10.
University of Wisconsin here, the fastest growing area of the state.
I think 10 is for
75%.
Wisconsin.
She's slightly underperforming there. Again, she has to turn out in these cities because, like the other battleground
Dane
states,
County.
I should say, unlike the other battleground states, there are not large minority groups in Wisconsin.
So
It's
people
the
are upset
whitest
the
of all
way
the
with the
battleground
way
states.
Florida
And then
went.
Milwaukee,
People
again,
are
we're
upset.
gonna
They're
wait
online
till late
upset
to
with
get
the
all
way
voting
Florida
in
went.
Milwaukee. She's at 66% 4 years ago.
They're
Joe
upset with
Biden
the way
won
Florida
Milwaukee,
went, y'all.
won the state of Wisconsin with
People are upset on
69%. She's
Facebook. On
gonna
my
have to turn
Facebook,
up
they're
that
talking
vote
about the way
for
Florida went.
voters.
But
Show
I
up,
don't know if they're
guys.
talking about
Got a
like
lot
the
of votes out there,
presidential
though,
votes,
in
or if they're talking
Wisconsin.
about
You
some
could
other
call it
type
the
of vote. They're
Battle
talking
of
about
Bellwethers,
Florida.
if that's what you're looking at here. I also think Bucks County. I will take my Bucks
But
County
if you're
native
upset
privilege
with the
as
way
we
Florida
look there.
voted,
It's an
majority of
interesting one because you've
Floridians
got lower
voted for
Bucks,
Trump.
Central Bucks,
Like that's
Upper
crazy
Bucks, and it
because
looks
he was
different
going to
in
win
certain areas.
Florida. I don't remember when the last time a Democrat won Florida. Let's look that up.
Montgomery County, Delaware County demographically here, and I was in touch with a good Republican source there who thinks that Donald Trump is going to do better, and we're seeing it, starting to see it in some of these numbers in Bucks than he did in 2020. That said, remember, this was a +4 county for Joe Biden back in 2020. It is represented by a Republican in Congress, so it's one of these places very, very swingy and a place that a lot of folks are watching, and I see you nodding your head, Jen.
Yeah, well, I did not grow up in Bucks County, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about Bucks County over the course of many years in politics. You know, looking at county, as Tom was going through it, one of the things that we're seeing over and over again is that she's underperforming where Biden was in 2020. It doesn't mean that's where Biden would have performed, where he's still the nominee. But it does, and that's not just in Pennsylvania, where you're seeing it in Wisconsin, you're seeing it in other places. One of the
Let's see,
things as we
when the
watch
last
these results
time-
that I've been thinking about that Democrats will have to think about, depending on what happens here, is there's been a realignment of states Democrats focus on. And, you know, Georgia and North Carolina are in many ways like baby blue. And I mean that because they've only been blue for one cycle, right? So they've done that because of organizing on the ground, but they're not reliably blue. And the problem is Ohio and Florida are gone. for
Well, in the
Democrats.
case of North Carolina, it was baby blue in 2008 and not since.
It hasn't been since. So that's, I don't know what color it is. It's lavender. So yes, exactly. So I think one of the things
See?
that they will need to think about, regardless of the outcome, is where the states are that they're going to play. They would love to have Texas, of course. Texas didn't turn out for them to work out. Maybe it wouldn't for 8 years. But with states off the map, it's like, is it Georgia and North Carolina? Are there places they need to invest? That's one of the challenges, too, I think.
Point, I'm getting an increasing number of texts from Democratic sources who are looking at these returns come in, the fact that she's not meeting her benchmarks in these various counties where she needs to, who are really starting to take that reflective tone of Democrats and thinking about the next election cycle need to think about how to better meet voters where they are. Again, we still have a lot of vote to come in. We still have to see what happens with the blue wall. But the fact that this is such a fight for them, the fact that this is
Let's
a
see the
tie
last
race,
time Florida
it's
voted
also
Democrat.
Taking a step back, voters
2012.
saying so far, at least, they like Trump.
Well, it's so interesting, too, because I remember
last
in
time
our earlier
Florida-
days in politics, after Republicans lost to Barack Obama, there was the famous autopsy.
The Democrats have won Florida in only 5 presidential elections.
Republicans saying, listen,
1964, 1976, 1996, 2008, and then 2012.
How interesting that we actually are seeing tonight Donald Trump getting more of the Latino vote. We'll see if he, got a better share of the black
Donald
vote. I
Trump
don't think
won
we've
more
seen
of the
that in exit
Latino
polls
vote.
yet, but you're starting to see that.
I
That is
heard
true.
people talking about that, Donald Trump winning
it wasn't a
the Latino
policy,
vote. And
campaign,
at the
right? There
polls,
weren't policy
I was talking to
proposals
my
that were
brother, and
going.
he was
To
talking
me, it
about
seems
being
much more
at the
cultural,
polls.
what you're seeing.
And when he was there at the polls,
That is a harder thing to grapple
majority
with.
of the
That's my point.
Latino
It takes a lot of deep
voters were
searching.
all of the
Again, we
ones
don't
he
know what
ran
the
into.
outcome is going
And
to
he was
be,
saying it was a
but if you
lot of them.
look again
They
to
were
the
voting
breakdown
for
of
Trump.
College versus non-college educated, rural versus urban. Those are big cultural issues that are beyond whether somebody has an 81-page economic plan or whatever their other plan is. And that's a different
I disagree
conversation.
with you a little bit, Jen, on that.
All right,
I do think
Level of disagreement. Go ahead.
I do think there was policy, but it was more around the record. So I mean, Donald
Yeah.
Trump was running as the incumbent president without being the incumbent president. He was running on his record primarily prior to COVID and reminding people, whether it was on the immigration, the economy. I mean, I remember when I was on the 2020 campaign prior to the pandemic, I think we were down for a Democrat debate in Atlanta, and an African-American gentleman came up to me and like looked around and said, "I like your guy because everybody's got work and our paychecks are going up. Now, COVID scrambled everything, but I think a lot of people
Obama.
in those communities.
So
that are
Obama
moving
won
over,
Florida.
They're doing it based off.
He was the last.
I remember whether it was the border
president, the last Democrat to win Florida. And they only won Florida in 5 elections.
It was an incumbent campaign without being the incumbent.
With the benefit of 4 years, and people do
that's
right.
He beat Mitt Romney.
We don't have to argue about this now. But is it a revisionist? If it's a revisionist, so to me, that still is a messaging, cultural thing, and not actually a policy debate.
Okay, I'll give you that part of it.
Lightly dispute.
All right, well, Garrett Haake is at Trump Election Night headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. How's it going there, Garrett?
He's in West Palm? Yeah.
Lester, there's sort of a barely contained sense that the party is really going to get started here at any moment at this Trump election headquarters. Every time a new result is announced on screen behind me, there are huge cheers from a crowd that has been filing in here, drinking beer, wine, and cocktails for some time now. And is
I don't know why he said that so shy. Beer, wine, and man.
It is a younger crowd. It is a younger crowd than other election nights I've covered, other Republican events that I've covered. And I think it
young people voted for Trump. I'm not gonna lie. Young people voted for
towards Donald Trump, the young men who he has put so central in this campaign. You know, I think about the fact that just today, when he was voting, he was asked by another reporter about what he thought one of the most important moments of this campaign was, and he mentioned Joe Rogan, the podcaster, and the fact that he did that podcast interview, and then subsequently got Rogan's endorsement, which he made a big part of his closing remarks just last night. Feels like a week ago now. Trump is talking to a different.
I'm not gonna lie. That Trump and Joe Rogan podcast, I think, helped him in so many ways. That was probably a key. Now, do I think that he would have won without that? Because this is my opinion. I think Trump's gonna win. I don't know though. I'm just saying my opinion.
All right, Garrett, thank you. I want to go over to Peter Alexander, your counterpart.
Trump is going
in Washington,
win.
D.C. So what is
I think that Joe Rogan interview helped him in so many ways. That's just my opinion.
But within the crowd right now, it's pretty silent. A lot of glum looks on the faces here over the course of this evening. They've been playing as the returns were coming in on one of the cable channels, and frankly, they weren't the returns that most of the people here in the room wanted. So you start hearing several dozen people start chanting, "Music, music." They muted the TV and blasted some music so they could sort of lift the spirits of some of the folks here this evening. I'll tell you, based on an attendee who was at one of the Harris events taking place at a hotel not far from here, the situation there, the scene was described as that of a funeral right now. Now, that doesn't mean this thing is over, but it does give you a sense of the way people are feeling
I don't know
right
what's
now.
going
I
on
was
with
with
this
Kamala
feed,
Harris
guys.
yesterday as she was traveling through Pennsylvania at that late night event. Actually, it was just 24 hours ago that she was with Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, Oprah Winfrey, and she said to the tens of thousands gathered that momentum is on our side, but clearly there was a different message being communicated now in the form of that document that was obtained by NBC News. The statement sent by the campaign chair, Jen O'Malley Dillon, saying basically that we always knew this race was going to be tight, and increasingly it appears that they believe the blue wall states are their best path going forward at this time. That's what it seems to be the way this night is going to go for most folks here. It's not the end of the road. Jen O'Malley Dillon also saying we're going to keep at it tomorrow, but we wait to hear from Kamala Harris, of course, in the course of the next couple of hours. We'll let you know.
Jen, how important are notes like that? Not for our consumption, but for the consumption of the campaign.
Hugely important. I think people forget. I've been on winning presidential campaigns and losing ones. It feels better when you win. Just state the obvious. But
I agree.
you know, we can agree. But you know, this is a team that has been, many of them through a massive transition just 107 days ago, where many of them signed up to work for somebody slightly different. And Joe Biden, you know, it's been. They've been working 20 hours a day. They've been eating bad pizza, drinking bad beer, all of the things, and it's just to keep them rolling,
But at a
keep
moment
them
like
going.
this, but a moment like this, now we know earlier in the evening they were trying to keep them in line and all this, but now you're at a point where you have no control.
You don't, but you need to keep the campaign team's spirits up, because they're continuing to talk to voters and counsel people who may have questions, and they're still a part of this big team that's been working to elect Kamala Harris. They don't have control, but the end has not happened yet, and so they need to keep them all, their spirits up. That's the goal.
Now you say the end hasn't happened yet. I mean, do you still
All right,
hold
so here
out
we
hope
go.
that there's a path?
These are the
reasonable
electoral
path?
votes.
Well, look, I
We
think
got
it
'em here now.
becomes, as I said earlier, more and more challenging as more results come
these
in,
are the
and you
electoral
see
votes.
that the blue wall looks like the primary possible
The electoral
path, and
votes
as you
for
see her
each state.
underperforming Biden in a
I
number
wanted to
of
get a
these
better
counties,
image, but I couldn't find a
that
better
makes it more
image, y'all.
challenging. Now, there are still, if you talk to Democrats, which I have, they believe there are votes that are still coming in Philadelphia. There are still votes coming in cities. That's often how
Yeah.
these nights go. So I'm a believer you got to wait until you know. That's what happens internally here as well. But yes, if you're on the campaign right now, you're feeling pretty down because there are places you wanted to have in your win column to give
Yeah.
you more space and
And that's
breathing
what I'm
room, and you
saying.
don't
She
have
has
them
to
in this
win
moment.
a
As we talk
battleground, a
about this
major
idea
battleground
of the
state.
Democratic brand,
California
and as
was
we've been
big,
having
but
this
I think they
conversation
already
here,
knew
I
they
just
were
wanna
going to
throw
win
out a data
California. I
point to
think
the
Trump
table
knew
here,
he was
because
going
there is a
to
ballot
lose
initiative that was just
California.
passed in a state that enshrines a right to paid sick leave and a higher minimum wage, and it passed with 59% support. If I were to say that, maybe you'd say blue state, probably, right?
California, right?
Missouri, right? A state that we called almost right away for former President Trump here, which I think speaks to what you're getting at here, this idea of a realignment in this moment. You've talked about it. Chuck's talked about it. We've had that conversation here at the table.
I also think Hallie had the opportunity to interview Vice President Kamala Harris, and you asked her a fascinating question. Do you think the country is ready for a black woman president? And she said yes.
I think the country is ready for a black woman
Goes,
president.
I think that will be
I
one
think
of
so.
the questions that get
This
that.
I don't
is the-
disagree
the
with that.
piece that, and again, we don't know what the outcome is
Yes.
yet. But I think when Hillary Clinton lost, a lot of people felt like, a lot of women, a lot of Democrats felt like there's never going to be a woman in my lifetime, right? And I think one of the things that is going to be a challenge if Harris loses is that there will be Democrats who will not want to take a risk on a woman, on someone who's diverse, because they'll think, I like that person, but the country's not ready. Here's the thing. The country's not ready until the country is ready. With Barack Obama, there's a range of
I
factors
don't believe
that
that.
lead to the win or loss
I don't
of
believe
anyone,
what
and we
they're
don't know what's
saying.
happened yet. That will all have to be delved into, but I do worry about that if she loses.
We do know it is something that she leaned out of in her campaign, unlike Hillary Clinton in 2016. It was not something that she didn't open her stump speeches with that idea. I mean, she talks about it, and she talked about it with me. She's talked about it with all of you here too, that it would be the president for all Americans, and that she is sort of putting her head down and grinding it out.
But if she loses, it won't be because women didn't turn out. It won't be because of women, right? It won't be because she pulled back a lot of the Democratic base that had gone away and were, double haters, as we called them for a long time, before there was a switch at the top of the ticket. And that is actually how Barack Obama also ran and won, which he didn't lead with the historic nature of his candidacy. On
I
his
don't
sleeve.
think
There will
they're
be a lot of
talking
people who
about
second-guess that.
is the country ready for a woman
But
president?
If she loses, it may also
And
be because there are tremendous
if she
headwinds in
loses,
terms of an
it's
unpopular
because they weren't.
incumbent
I
and
don't
people
believe that
feeling terrible
if
about
she
the
does
economy,
lose,
and
it's
even if
because
inflation is down to
America isn't
2%,
ready for
sometimes
a
the stuff
black
you feel,
woman
your gas
president.
prices,
I don't
your
believe that.
groceries, it doesn't feel that way.
I don't believe
So
that at all.
may also be
I think the country
the rationale.
is ready for a black woman president. I do. I really do believe that the country can handle a woman president, period, and a black woman president. I think the country's ready for any race of president right now.
And people will leap to different ones, right? The country isn't ready for a woman. The country isn't ready for a black
I don't
woman.
believe
All
that.
of these things. But there are a lot of factors that play
Yes.
into the win or a loss. And I think if she loses, I'm hopeful people will look at the broad scope of where the country is, the cultural divides, the rural-urban divides,
The education divides.
The education divides. There are just a lot of factors at play in presidential races.
I'll give you something that may be positive for you going forward. Should this all end the way we were talking, that's a possibility. You still have a very young, good bench in Governor Shapiro, the governor of North Carolina, the Gretchen Whitmer, who could possibly bridge that gap, and as opposed to saddling them with the L, if they would have joined the ticket with the vice president, or if they had replaced the vice president and become the nominee with 100 and some days out in a very difficult situation, I think you would have been weaker as a party for it.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think that if she loses and Donald Trump wins, there will be millions of people in this country who voted for her who will feel like we're in the state of an emergency. And I think that is how people will respond and feel. And they will be looking for hope, a resistance and opposition, and there are a lot of people on the Democratic bench. You mentioned some of them were in the Veep stakes. We all, lived through this summer. Some of them were not.
Other
who I would
picks.
expect would all be out there on everybody's shows.
She was probably the best candidate. And
Well, and that's what makes
okay,
the timing, I think, of President Biden's decision.
I'm
to
not
sit down
saying
after
that
the debate, something
on
that if she
views
does, in
wise,
fact,
but
lose, will be under a microscope.
personally, in my opinion, I think Trump was going to beat anybody that he went up against. That's just my opinion. I think Trump was going to beat anyone. No matter who Trump went up against, I believe he was going to
I think
win.
it's one of the big questions moving
This is
forward.
just my opinion. I think Kamala was probably the best to go against him, even though she was going to lose. But I don't know. It's still too close to call, right? So I'm not saying I know who's going to win.
First debate with Harris.
It's just my personal opinion.
And I also think that it throws into question a lot of things. I mean, I think anybody who watched that debate objectively felt she outperformed him in that debate. If she doesn't win, yes, there should have been a second debate, but do debates matter? They should matter. They're the public being able to see the candidates. She has a far superior ground operation that has been invested in across the country. The Republican state parties, you can disagree with me here, of course, are falling apart in many states in the country. That will throw into question, does that matter? It should matter, but it will throw that into question. So, yes, not a second debate, not an opportunity for people to see them person to
I don't know
person.
if she
The first one
outperformed
definitely
him
benefited her,
either.
But if she doesn't win,
I don't know if I agree with that.
put her in the White House.
Well, we got a lot to
Did
talk
she
about.
do
We're
fine?
still
I think she
waiting
did
on
well
a
in the
lot of
debate.
numbers
I
in the
don't
battleground states and the road to
because if you
270,
look at
we'll
what
be
people
right
were
back
saying online, and if you people were saying that there was a lot of Kamala out there. I'm not gonna lie. Her marketing campaign did a great job. This is what I think that we're seeing, and we see it often, right? Social media online success does not speak to or dictate or even define real success. So she was extremely popular and successful online. I did not, and we're seeing that. It did not translate in real life. That's why you have to be careful when it comes to these online and social media things. Just because something is popular online does not mean it's popular in real life to real people, right? So I felt like she did really great. Well, I think that she did really great online. I didn't see her doing really great with actual real physical people. So, and I think that that's what we're seeing. And people are surprised by that. Quite frankly, I'm not really, because that's just what I saw. And that's just what I've noticed in talking to different people. Now, she has to win, in my opinion. She has to win Georgia. It's not looking like she's going to win Georgia. And it's funny if you remember when Trump and Biden were going at it, Georgia was a problem. And Georgia was a problem, and many people said things about Georgia.
News lives in the now.
Even with what Georgia said. We have to get this back live.
Than ever. This monster and historic storm is set to make landfall now.
We have to update this back to live.
Devastating.
Okay.
Now he's real.
We're seeing some stuff. Okay, she has New York. You see this updated. She's at 210. Trump is at 230. We have a race, ladies and gentlemen. We have a race. And we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna take this off. We're gonna unmute.
Stepped away or heard parts of the conversation, know that this race is not over. This is the road to 270. That, of course, the magic number. Donald Trump right now leading with 230, Harris with 189. All right, here's what we have from the state of Nevada. It's 6 electoral votes. It's too early to call. That's NBC News characterization of the race. You can see Donald Trump appears to be well out in front right now, but again, too close to call. Georgia.
Look at this. We moved it so that way we can see what is happening, ladies and gentlemen. We can see what is happening. Kamala is now at 210. Trump is at 230. She's coming back. She's fighting. She has Virginia.
Lead of Kamala Harris as we continue to watch this one.
She has Virginia.
Let's zoom in on Michigan with Tom Yamas. What you got?
Hey guys, okay, so we have now more than 50%
Okay.
of the vote is in Michigan, as you mentioned, Lester. 15 electoral votes. This was Biden's largest margin of victory
Here
in
we go.
2020 when it came to the battleground states. Almost the whole game is Wayne County. It's Detroit. Not enough vote there. About a quarter of the vote is in. We can't really make any projections or calls here because so much of that vote is out. But just to give you an idea of where Biden was in 2020, again, a lot of this vote is out, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. But 68% tonight, right now, Harris at this point in time is at 58%. Not a great number for her. It is a tale of two suburbs in Michigan, right? You have Oakland County. This is where Kamala Harris did that rally, or I should say that town hall with Oprah Winfrey. This is one of the wealthiest counties in all of Michigan.
This is
Pontiac,
interesting.
Michigan is here,
And
the
this is my
suburbs of
brother's
Detroit.
state. What up,
This is
Bean?
where Biden was in 2020, 56%. This is where Harris is tonight, 53%. There's still about 20% of the vote. Just over Macomb County now. This is a little more middle class, a little more working class. It is a suburb of Detroit as well. Republicans do very well here. Trump was at 53%. There's only about a third of the vote in. He's at 57, so he's overperforming there. Some of the other areas we want to watch: Grand Rapids, Kent County. This is the last place where Trump held the rally last night, and or I should say, yes, on Monday. Sorry, getting my days confused here. Biden was at 52. She's overperforming there. That's good news for the Democrats. I also want to talk about Washtenaw. This is the University of Michigan. Go Big Blue if you're a fan out there. 71% of the vote is in. Remember, this is a college
that.
county. Democrats have to do very
So she
well
has
here.
Virginia, she
Biden
has
72%.
Hawaii, she has
Tonight, Harris is
Nebraska.
underperforming right
Virginia,
now. Three-quarters, almost
if you
a quarter of
look,
the vote in Ingham County, again,
Look at
another
this.
college county. This is where Michigan State is. Half the vote is in. Biden was at 65.
Look at this.
Harris is at
Virginia,
56.9.
13
Trump barometers
electoral
right now. Cass
votes.
County, Trump's at 66%. 4 years ago, he was at 63. So again, the story of Trump overperforming in those rural counties, we're seeing it as well in Michigan. Still, a lot of the vote is out, though.
She has
Look, we still need half
Virginia.
the vote to come
She
in. A lot
has,
of that's going to be Detroit, as we know.
I think
I'm
this
gonna
is
look at
Washington.
Saginaw.
Yep.
This is a battleground county. This is where she
She has
toured that
19.
semiconductor
This is what I'm saying. She has
plant.
Illinois,
We don't see
19
much. There's
electoral
only
votes.
1% of the vote, and I don't want
She
to draw
has to
anything
win
from there.
these.
We'll
11
check
here.
Kalamazoo. She
These
appears to
electoral
Michelle
votes
Obama
are
was the
huge.
Michelle Obama.
The electoral
appears
votes are
only
huge.
13% of the vote
That's
in,
what took her
and
to
she's
this
slightly
210.
underperforming.
She was
Guys,
sitting
a
at
lot of the vote is still out in
187 for a
Michigan,
while.
but the trend lines we've been seeing in the other
And when we
states, we're
updated
sort of
this
seeing in Michigan
feed,
as well. But
she
again,
goes
I
to
don't wanna draw
210.
too much from that because there's a lot of that vote that's out.
Because they call
Really just
Virginia
need to
for
see you
her.
do those university towns because
It's shocking.
Well,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of turnout and Democrats early in the day were kind of giddy about that, but I think this might be a function of what we've been seeing, which
Right.
is young men turning out for Donald Trump and maybe skewing what you normally would expect from a university town.
And something we haven't mentioned just
Ah,
yet. because
young
so much
men
of the
voted
vote
for
is
Donald
out
Trump.
in Wayne County. You have Detroit and you have Dearborn. That makes up Wayne County, that Arab American Muslim vote. We're
Arab
talking about more
American
than
and Muslim vote
200,000 voters
for Donald
there.
Trump.
Again, it's probably not going to be monolithic, but they're uncommitted votes as well. The question is what happens? Do they not show up? Do they vote third party? Do they vote for Trump? Or do they stick with Harris? We still don't know.
Okay, Tom, hang tight there. We want to go right to Detroit, actually. NBC's Jesse Kirsch on duty
Going to
there.
Detroit.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, Savannah, I know we're wondering when we're going to have those votes from Wayne County, specifically Detroit, where I am right now, as Tom was just mentioning. Here's what we know from officials. Here in Detroit, city officials had expected around midnight that the full tabulation
All right.
would be completed. So we
So we got that
received
feed
word
going,
that
bro.
has been finalized,
This feed is
but that was
important
the
to us
estimate
because
earlier
it's
in the
showing
evening.
us the
We know
map,
that absentee
right?
ballots,
It shows us the
around
map,
95% of that
and
had
it
been
also shows us the electoral
before
votes,
election
and
day.
that's what
So
I
the
want to see. I
overwhelming
want to see the
bulk of
electoral
the
so that way
absentee
we
ballots
know
were ready to
when
be
these states come
tabulated
back in,
before
how many
election day.
votes
So that
is
was
each
what was
candidate going to
the
get with
expectation
these
heading into
states
tonight.
over
Just a
here.
short time ago,
And
we
this
heard
is showing
from
how
the
many
Secretary of
electoral
State here
votes
in Michigan
each
herself,
state
and
holds.
she says that they are further along in
Now this
tabulation,
map,
including
I'm
for
going to
here in
make this
Detroit,
view
than was
smaller here so we
anticipated.
can
Her
see this map.
initial
We can
estimate
be able to
before
still
election
hear
day was by
but that way
midday
we're able
Wednesday.
to
So
see this
today,
map and
we
see
would
how
have
it's shaping
an
up.
answer on the unofficial results. She says it could be sooner now. There is a caveat. Remember, in 2016, former President Trump won this state by around 10,000 votes. We are told there are around 6,000 ballots outstanding from military and overseas. If they're postmarked by Tuesday, they can be counted if they're received by a week from yesterday, which would be Tuesday, the 12th. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Jesse. And in battleground Georgia, Ellison Barbers in Gwinnett County. Ellison, what's it looking like there?
Hey, Lester, it's starting to get a lot quieter in this tabulation center, and that's because for the most part, they're almost done here. We're told by election officials in this county there is one precinct that is still out of the 156.
Now we're able to see
155
we're able to
have
see
been
how the
counted. They're
states
still
is.
counting
And this one here,
precinct
you
and a
see
few
this state right
absentee
here.
ballots, but voter turnout here has surpassed what we saw in 2020. That's something both Democrats and Republicans were hoping for. But what Republicans were hoping for specifically was that Trump could maybe get a couple percentage points above the 40% that he had in this state back in 2020, and that it would be enough to chip into Harris's margins and the Democrats' margins here and then carry the state. And right now, he's a little over 41% of the vote in this county. So it looks like what they were hoping would happen here in terms of those couple extra percentage points might have happened. I will remind you, when we're talking about Georgia, think of what happened here back in 2022 in the midterms, where you had Trump endorsing candidates in the Senate race, in the gubernatorial race, and in the Secretary of State race. All of the candidates he'd backed lost that election cycle. The state essentially seemed to be rebuking Donald Trump. Tonight, Lester, it seems like we're seeing a very different Georgia than what we saw in 2022.
A different Georgia.
Right, Ellison,
So there's that's why I'm thinking. I'm wondering, are they saying that Trump is going to win Georgia? Is that what they're saying? That's Nevada.
Democracy in action, Savannah. We're in the tabulation center. The machines are humming. The ballots
Yeah.
are coming in from polling places all across
Nevada.
the county. Although
We
it
see
is
how
now
Nevada is shaping
abundantly
up.
clear
So I
that the
wonder,
markers
is
you
it
see
like
over
that
my
because
shoulder are going
they're
to
saying
be
it's too
here
close
for
to
a
call
while.
what
That's
Nevada
because
is?
We just heard from an election official about 10, 15 minutes ago
That's
to
six?
say that people
6
are
electoral
still
votes?
voting. It is, 2.5 hours past when polls were supposed to close. People that are still in line can still vote, and
Oh.
they are still voting. We're hearing that there's a polling place, a tribal community that has about 50 people still in line. It is going to take a while for those votes to get counted. In-person votes that come in today have to wait to be counted until the very last person in Nevada takes their turn to vote. So this is going to
Polls
take some
closed 2
time.
hours
We
ago.
also understand there was a university of
So they're
Nevada,
going to
Reno.
let everyone come in and vote if you were sitting in
Still
line.
had to vote after
That's
polls
probably why
closed
Nevada
there. That
is grayed
because
out like
we're
this.
hearing same-day registrations were spiking at college campuses. College students realized, you know what, I think I am going to vote. And so they signed up to vote on the same day, clogged the system a little bit. None of this is to say that this is any indication that there's anything wrong, any indication of fraud. It just means that the system is taking a while. And as we often report in the Silver State, it may take a minute before we get totals here.
And I don't think there's a problem with that.
All right, Steve, thanks
Like with
very
these things,
much.
people may have
NBC News
issues
legal
and they may say that there's
correspondent
things
Laura
where
joins us
fraud
now.
can
She's
occur.
at the
But I don't think there's a
Vote
problem
Watch
with
desk
that.
with an update on
I
the
think let them do what they got to
abortion
do.
measures
You know,
on
let
the
these
ballots in several
let these people do their
Hey
job.
guys, yeah, we've been tracking these across 10 different states tonight, and at least so far, we can make calls for 4 different states, and it's worth noting here, the places where the abortion referendums have actually gone through and passed are places where abortion rights are not in jeopardy, places like Colorado, where abortion is easily on the ballot there.
Right to
and has
abortion and
managed to
insurance
pass.
coverage. So
The first
yes.
one, New York, again, obviously you can still get an abortion in New York, but there was part of a package of
Right to abortion, yes, in
anti-discrimination
New
laws
York,
to try to shore up
62%.
these rights. Again, these are constitutional amendments. The next one, in Maryland, you can get an abortion up to the point of viability, around 24 weeks of pregnancy now, and it again will be enshrined in the Constitution. The big exception here, guys, Florida. That one was different because it required a supermajority to pass, 60% of voters, and it did not meet that threshold, falling just above it, just
So
short of
no.
it, around 58%.
So Amendment
that one,
4.
the abortion referendum failed. It will not enshrine constitutional rights to abortion in the state of Florida, and the 6-week ban will stand there. Guys, we're going to keep watching
So
other
that,
states like South Dakota,
and I found out
also
about that
Missouri,
amendment later,
Nebraska. The
right? I
referendums are
voted
still
on it,
the ballot there,
but I found
and
out
we're
about
not
that
yet at the
later,
point where we
and it
can
was
project
interesting to see
All right, Laura,
how
thanks very much.
We got a new
in
guest on our panel.
Florida,
We've got former housing and urban
I didn't know
development
that. I
secretary
thought that it
Democrat
was going to
Julian
be
Castro
on a
and
federal
Secretary
level. I didn't know that it was going to
remains with
be
us. He was
just
the
on like,
communications director for
you know,
Trump's 2020
statewide.
campaign. Nice to have you
Each
both
state
with us.
was able to vote on it. I thought it was going to
ask
come
you
from the
about,
federal level, but I think that it
the
was
Latino
about,
vote,
you know,
because
can the
we're
federal
looking at
government
an exit poll that shows Latino men
getting
vote
to,
for Trump
you know
by
what I'm saying,
10
when it comes to
points.
abortion, have,
They
you know,
went for Biden by 23.
can the
That's
government
a
get involved
33
with
point swing.
abortions
How do you
from the
make
way I
sense of that?
understood it,
Yeah,
right?
I think all of us are trying to make sense of that. Look, this is one exit poll, so I'm not prepared.
So we see now Harris is at 210, Trump is at 230. This was just Harris 187.
I
and Trump.
attribute that to several things.
230. Look at this, man. Look at the
you
ticker,
were
bro.
talking
Look at the
about
House.
divides
Look at the
earlier,
House is at
right?
186
Trump,
Republican,
the rural urban
154
divide,
Democrat.
around
And this is
educational
at this,
background.
so
I
it's
think that's true in
current,
the Latino
right? The
community,
House
too.
is
If
at
you
186,
notice,
Democrats are at
particularly in these places that are
154.
more
That's what I was
small
saying.
town
When
and
you're
rural,
voting, you want to
he
make
has
sure you're
picked up
voting for.
significant
You
Latino
can't just
support.
focus
I think
on
we're
what the
seeing that in
president is
places like
doing and look
Pennsylvania.
at the presidential election. You want to get involved
in
with your
addition
local
to that,
government.
from
You
what I
want to
could
look at the
gather,
House. You want to look at the
economic
Senate. Now, it's
message
a
really
lot
resonated.
to
You have to
unpack.
remember, this is a
It is.
working
It's a
class
whole bunch to
community by
unpack.
and large, and
But you
all of
want to
those
try to make
messages
sure that you look at that
keystone to,
because
we had the
if you
greatest
get,
economy,
if you're Republican
look
and
how
you
bad
get a
inflation is
Republican
and so
president,
forth.
right?
I
You
think
vote for
that
the
played
Republican
well this
president
year.
and you
I'll
get
be
that. I'm
interested
going to
to
mute this
see
because I'm talking
whether
at the
there's a
same time.
difference in Nevada
And you get a Republican
Arizona.
president.
Those are
You want to look
states
at what
where
the
the
Senate
Latino
and the
community
House
is
is
much
doing
more
because
organized and has been
that's
by
going to
Democrats for
dictate
longer
how,
than in places
you know,
like
how,
Pennsylvania
you know,
or some of the other
easier,
markets.
right? Not easy, but how much of an easier path that your president has on getting legislation and laws passed. You don't want too much hang up. So say you have a Republican president and now the House or the Senate is now Democrat, majority Democrat. Now the Democrats hold majority of the House or hold majority of the Senate. When it comes to trying to get legislation passed, laws passed, it's just going to hang up a lot. You know, you're going to get a lot of kickback. Oh, now I want to throw what I want in there on that legislation. So it goes into it. So it looks like the Senate and the House are both going to go red. It looks like that right now. So in the event that Trump does win the election, right, and they're showing it, Kamala's at 189, Trump is at 246. We don't have 246, we have 230. Let me make sure that this is live. This is live. So they have Trump at a higher number than what we have. We have Trump at 230. They had Trump at 246. And I wonder what they gave him. Did they give him Georgia? I wonder what they gave him to get him to 248. Because I don't see that on the map, on our electoral college map. So I got to see. Anyways, so you want to pay attention to your House and your Senate. You really want to. Because if you vote for a Democratic candidate and now the House is now majority. So say Kamala does win this election. Say she does win. And the House is at, look at that, they got Trump at 252, Kamala's at 226.
Look at his number right here, 252. If he wins Pennsylvania, he's going back to the White House, 271. It's coming down to Pennsylvania right now for Republicans. What the math changes now for Kamala Harris.
Let's unmute this, and I'm going to get back to my point. I want y'all to hear this. I want y'all to hear this.
She's lost North Carolina. If she wins Nevada and Arizona, she's still going to have to pick off 2 states in the blue wall. She no longer has that path. Listen, if she wins the entire blue wall, yes, she'll go back to the White House. That is still an option for her. Listen, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, she has to win all 3. But it looks like this is the entire game for her right now, guys. By losing North Carolina, losing Georgia.
They gave Trump Georgia. They called Georgia for, yep, it's red now. They called Georgia for Trump, and we don't have Georgia for Trump here.
We'll put him over the top.
Trump does not have Georgia on our map, and that's our problem. That's why we still have Trump at 230.
We'll turn to Secretary Castro.
Because MSN, NBC has called Georgia Trump.
Honestly, it feels like 2016.
This is interesting. And that's why I was saying we now have a race because Kamala hit 210. It's close. It is close. Now,
we saw a lot of enthusiasm today.
Georgia is how many electoral votes? 16. So that's what put Trump to 246. Oh, yeah, but they got him at 246. Now, why they had him at 252? They must have called another state for Trump and just has unofficially, not officially.
And that's, you know, for Democrats has to be worrisome.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, it's early. I mean, but when you look at that, you can't say they didn't park in Pennsylvania. They did, you know, and they have this superior organization, most analysts think. What do you think was the difference maker?
You know, I think she was put in a very difficult position by President Biden.
I hate to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but we have a call in the U.S. Senate that will change
the
balance of power in the U.S. Senate.
The U.S. Senate has a call that's going to change the balance of power.
GOP control of the Senate.
That's with the victory of Deb Fischer, the incumbent in Nebraska, who was given quite the run for her money.
Oh, okay, so she won. She retained the Senate. And see, now look.
It went down to the wire, but in the end,
Look at see now. Look,
to the Republicans, and that gives.
If Trump wins the election, he has the Senate because the Senate is at 51 right now. It's at 51 right now. So Republicans control the Senate as of right now. Well, Republicans control the Senate right now, which means if Trump wins and goes to the White House, he has the Senate. He has the Senate, which means it's an easier path for him. When it comes to, I'm muting this because I'm talking. When it comes to Trump having to get things done or wanting to get things done, in the event Trump wins this election, he has the Senate. So he's not going to have much fight or much kickback when it comes to him wanting to push legislation through. That's why these things are important. And I'm telling y'all, you have to look at just more than the presidential candidate. You have to look at all of this stuff. It paints a picture. And I really do believe, in my opinion, I do believe that the country is swinging. I really do believe that.
What are you hearing?
Yeah, Savannah, I think of all
this
the
is
outcomes
interesting.
that happened here tonight, this is probably the least surprising. Republicans felt very confident about their chances of winning back the Senate, just given the map. There were 10 competitive Senate races across the country. 8 of them were held by incumbent Democrats.
The majority goes to the Senate, man. I mean, it goes to the Republicans.
These races were in places where the elections were expected to be very
It was extremely competitive.
here in a big way tonight. I do think perhaps
This
the
was a
most
very
dynamic
interesting
that's now playing out at
political
this hour
moment.
is that where Senate Republicans were confident of winning the majority, but they were very much talking to us about the idea of 50+1. They just wanted 51 seats to make sure that they would have the Senate Majority Leader, that they could control the legislation.
Man, I'm telling y'all.
They're now talking about
Pay attention to this, bro.
margins. They are now looking at that blue wall the same way that we are looking at the blue wall in terms of the race for president and seeing real opportunities for pickups in places like Wisconsin, in places like Michigan.
This is crazy.
In places like Pennsylvania. These were areas where Democrats were hopeful because they had strong incumbents there, or they had strong challengers, people running in open seats like in Michigan, who they thought they'd be able to run ahead of Kamala Harris, even if the race was close at the presidential level. Donald Trump's margins seem to be bringing those Republican
when it comes to the
candidates along
Senate,
with him
now
in
that
states along that blue wall.
Republicans
And
hold
don't forget
majority
there's
of the
2 other
Senate,
Senate seats that are still
in
on
the
ballot
event
as well.
Kamala
We talked
wins,
about Montana, which Republicans feel
when
good about.
Kamala wants to try to get legislation passed through the Senate, she's going to hit a wall. She's going to hit a wall. Not to say that she won't be able to get things passed. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult for her to do things in the event she wins the election, because Republicans hold majority of the seats in the Senate. So they can swing votes, man. They can swing things in their favor when they need it, because you have all Republicans. You have majority of Republicans in the Senate. Now, the House, bro, Republicans win the House, bro, and it looks like they're going to win the House, bro, with 189.
Yeah, different leadership too.
Republicans are going to control, in the event that Trump wins the election, Republicans are going to control the political climate for the next 4 years. For sure, because the president.
Weeks for that one. But Kelly, what's your takeaway here?
Well, certainly
Now,
the
Congress
Senate
still comes into
Republicans
play
have
with a
this
lot of
way
this stuff, too.
Reshaping themselves, and it is without Mitch McConnell, who's decided he's not going to be in leadership. And so it will be more in the form of Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump becomes president again, then you have that kind of partnership where he will have more of an opportunity to drive the agenda. Now, if the House goes to the Democrats, then they have the counterweight, and they have the power of subpoena and the power to be an agitation to a Donald Trump if he returns to the White House. For Republicans, as Ryan mentioned, and as we
she's
talked
breaking
about
it down
tonight,
even
the
better than what I could.
expectation was that this was likely because there's a third of the Senate that is up every 2 years, 34 seats this time, and it was favorable territory for Republicans. But for the partnership between a White House and at least one chamber of the Senate, of the Congress, it makes such a difference. Now, Donald Trump has not always courted those Republicans. He has such a grasp over his party, not always wanting to work with them in terms of governing and getting things done. But he has infused his brand, his personality into this Republican caucus, and that will mean sort of a Trump-style reflection in the Senate, perhaps more than we saw in his first term, because you won't have Mitch McConnell in a leadership position.
All right, we want to go to Harris headquarters. Cedric Richmond, who is, of course, the head of the DNC. To address
Harris.
There. Let's listen in.
Harris people are about to make a. Let's listen to this. Let's listen.
I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing.
Let's listen to what Harris's camp is saying right now.
We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
Richmond, who is, of course, the co-chair of the Harris campaign, I misspoke earlier, apologies for that, saying that we will not hear from Kamala Harris tonight, but we will hear from her tomorrow. We've got Julian Castro here. What do you make?
We're not going to hear from Kamala Harris. They said that Kamala Harris is not going to say anything tonight, so we're not going to hear from her tonight. I wonder why. So I guess people are dispersing now. You see this? Are people leaving because she says she's not going to make a speech?
Probably an hour and a half later, if I remember correctly. Look, I think it's important to note that this is a different year. There are still votes to be counted. You know, none of those battleground states have been counted, but it feels eerily similar to 2016.
The parallels are really striking. If you were there at the Javits Center, which I was.
So I wonder, is she preparing to say that she lost? Like, what is that? To say that she's not planning on speaking,
we were looking at in 2016
or
was the fact that
she's
Hillary
not
Clinton
planning
didn't
to
visit
address.
Michigan, for example. This was very different. Vice President Kamala Harris went everywhere.
She showed up in Wisconsin.
Of the
She showed up in
battleground
those
states,
blue wall
but
states.
again, her messaging, and we all noted this at the time, her closing messaging really focused on the issue of democracy, when polls showed issues like the economy, like reproductive rights, are really the top issues for voters. So that's undoubtedly one
although
thing
in our
that will be
exit polls,
well, yes,
threats to democracy is the number one issue. It's just that it's in the eye of the beholder, and it means different things. I mean, Mark Waters here, veteran.
So she does not plan on addressing.
Campaign in 2020.
And I wonder why.
Democracy, I think, is.
I wonder why she doesn't plan. That's interesting to me. Because why does she not want to speak right now?
Certainly means January 6th and some of those, extra
You know?
legal, not legal moves to try to hold on to power in 2020.
Why does she not want to address tonight? What's going to happen tonight that makes her say, I don't want to address tonight?
Things that threaten, there could be a number of cultural issues that they think are just as existential. And it's really about the direction of the country.
Yeah, well, obviously I don't speak for every Republican. I do think there are a lot, though, that believe the threat to democracy also is packing the Supreme Court.
That's interesting to me. I really don't understand that. I don't understand why she doesn't want to make a speech tonight. Or why she doesn't want to say anything.
We often describe it. The New York case was a big.
I was trying to get Louder with Crowder on. I don't know if you guys watched Louder with Crowder.
Fined hundreds of millions of dollars.
Maybe you guys have seen that.
So those kinds of things, I think, also resonate for many. But I know we've talked about a lot about the 2016, and I was on that campaign as well with then Governor Pence, obviously part of the Trump campaign.
But he came out and said that she's not speaking. So I think did her rally disperse? Was the people waiting dispersing?
You have to win WOW counties, or you have to do.
Oh, I think they may still be there. Yeah, they're still there. I think a lot of people just probably walked away. Maybe.
I'm going to grow my rural numbers, and then I'm going to take them up
I don't know.
Another level even more.
Well, as we go to a commercial break, there's the side-by-side picture. If you were just tuning into all this, I think the pictures speak loudly. On the left, the Harris campaign headquarters for the night as people are packing up and leaving, told they will not see the candidate tonight as they process some unhelpful trends for them. On the right side, the Trump gathering in West Palm Beach.
West Palm Beach. He's in Florida. He's here.
Again, the race has not been called yet, but they, like everyone else watching, some interesting trend lines that seem to be pointing in that direction.
Interesting trend lines.
Still be with us, and we'll be right back.
60% of the vote in. I'm seeing a lot of red lining up and down Lake Michigan.
Let's check this out. Oh, I thought they were gonna show us who was given hoax bomb threats made to dozens of polling locations in swing states. Hoax bomb threats targeting polling places and election offices briefly disrupted polling. Trump wins North Carolina, holding a key state for Republicans. I didn't know North Carolina was such a key state. I did not know that. I'm going to be honest and say I did not know North Carolina was such a key state. But it is. It really is. I did not know it was such a key state, though. Let's see. Let's see.
More Americans turn to NBC News than any other news organization.
Welcome back to NBC's election night coverage. It is almost 1 a.m. here in the East with another poll about to close as we wait on numbers from some of the critical battleground states in the race for president.
We're covering not just the presidential race, though, but also both houses of Congress just made a big call in the Senate. Kristen Welker on the balance of power there, and Republicans have officially regained control of the United States Senate.
They've regained control of the United States Senate, which is a significant development, one that was expected. And now the question that we are asking is just how big will their margins be in the Senate? So right now it's 51-41. We're still waiting for a number of results. But among the top states that we're looking for, now that they have these pickups, which have given them control, Arizona, Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake, we still haven't called that race. The Montana race is such a fascinating one. Senator Jon Tester trying to win re-election against Tim Sheehy. Tim Sheehy is a somewhat controversial candidate, and yet it looks like Jon Tester could potentially be poised for defeat. We'll have to see how that race goes.
It's a very red state, Montana, so he was one of the most vulnerable incumbents.
Absolutely. And when Republicans were eyeing how are we going to win the Senate, this was the race that they continued to reference. We're also waiting for Pennsylvania. Senator Bob Casey looking for a fourth term against Dave McCormick, Trump-backed businessman Dave McCormick. So we're watching, and Tammy Baldwin, by the way, also in Wisconsin is looking for re-election.
How about Michigan? We've got an open seat, a Democratic retirement.
In Michigan, absolutely. You have Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers running very close. And again, I keep making this point. Some of these Democratic candidates actually looked like they had a good shot at winning re-election. And then the polls have just completely narrowed, which is what we've seen at the top of the ticket as well. And we continue to ask this question.
So this is all. So we still don't have.
Just brings me right to Hallie.
We still don't have a current
if you might see,
Kamala
Trump
number.
Slotkin in Michigan, or right. Trump Baldwin in Wisconsin. We don't see a lot of ticket splitting in the modern.
We still don't have a current Kamala number.
Let's see how this goes, though, because we haven't called some of these races, right, where these Democrats are vulnerable and some of these. I mean, listen, we're talking about the blue wall in some of these blue wall states. And remember why the margin matters in the Senate. Not just for funsies. It's because there's a couple of Republicans in the Senate who would be potentially likely to buck Donald Trump if he were to win the White House on some issues.
That's the reason. Wow. And the House is looking, bro, the House is going to go Republican.
All right, well, we're still waiting to see how this all plays out tonight. We've got more ahead. Let's check back right now with the presidential race and the road to 270.
I wonder why they still have her at 189. I wonder why they still have her at 189. This is interesting to me.
Coming up on 1 o'clock in the morning in the east. That's the road to 270. The map filling out. 6 of 7 battleground states have been called. And we just got word from Harris headquarters and the co-chair of the campaign, Cedric Richmond, that we will not be seeing Kamala Harris tonight, but we will see her tomorrow. Let's go to Harris headquarters. Peter Alexander, our correspondent, right there. So what are you hearing? What is the
we got to see what's going on with Kamala's. They're going to talk to her people.
Savannah, we did just hear from Cedric Richmond making the announcement to the thousands who had gathered here. Frankly, many of them had already left as
we're going to see what's going on with Kamala's camp.
Saying that they would not hear from the Vice President Kamala Harris tonight, instead saying that she would speak to her supporters, not just here at Howard University, her alma mater, but to the nation as well, in an address that would take place at some point tomorrow. No specifics on when that would occur. For those who have kept track of the Trump era, you'll remember in 2016 a very similar circumstance there at the Javits Center in New York City at Hillary Clinton headquarters, where one of her top aides, John Podesta, came out and spoke to the crowd saying she wouldn't be speaking. Ultimately, she conceded the next morning, Wednesday morning. So a lot of votes still out there. No plans for any concessions, certainly at this
That's
point.
what I'm
but
saying.
I can tell you in conversations we've had with a series of individuals, including a Democrat who was attending a donor event that was taking place at one of the glitzy hotels not far from where we are here in Washington, D.C. They say the atmosphere there was like a funeral. Another person said that the situation, in their words, was just, quote, not good right now. We did hear earlier from Jen O'Malley Dillon. She is the campaign chair. She had what was in effect a sort of pep talk for the forces, the campaign staff, telling them all to get some sleep and that they would come back and finish this off strong tomorrow. So that's effectively where things are at the end of the evening. But I got to tell you, Savannah, on a day when so many those close to Kamala Harris really felt like they had the momentum, they felt like the vibes were on their side, it quickly appeared clear that, you know, despite her effort to say that we're not going back, that they may be returning to the figures that haunted Democrats back in 2016, where they just didn't have enough to defeat Donald Trump that go around. So many blank stares, glum faces, people not so much holding back tears, but certainly unable to crack a smile here. They had been handing out American flags early on. As some of the early numbers were out, they were cheering and waving those flags. But as the night progressed and they watched the returns come in, no more waving flags. In fact, they asked for the television to be muted here with the returns, with the exception of Hawaii, Colorado, other places that Harris won. They turned them on and got cheers for that. Instead, they blasted music to try to sort of distract from the situation, try to give a little pick-me-up to the people here.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. I want to go over to Garrett Hage, who's at Trump headquarters in Florida, where it looks like the party is still going. And of course, the question is whether or not we will hear from the former president.
So Trump is definitely going to say something. He's going to say something tonight. He's up.
Yeah, Savannah, Trump supporters reveling in
He's
the
up.
news that they're getting here in this ballroom.
Trump is up right now. Let me tell y'all, Trump is up right now. And he's going to definitely say something. He's definitely going to address tonight. For sure, Trump is going to address tonight. He definitely
There has
is.
been movement from Mar-a-Lago across the intercoastal waterway.
He definitely is going to address tonight. And rightfully so. If you win, you better drink some coffee. You better address. Drink some coffee. Get the crust out your eyes. You know, do some jumping jacks. You better address. And he's going to address.
We've got another call to make here.
Uh-oh, we got a
This is
call.
the State of New Mexico. NBC News projecting that Kamala Harris will win in New Mexico, 5 electoral votes. Here's the breakdown right now. You see the difference, 43,000, 95%.
She wins New Mexico with 5 electoral votes.
Where does that bring us to in the road to 270? Donald Trump at 246. Harris now up to 190.
So they have her at 194.
Let's go over to Tom Yamas, who's at the big board of Pennsylvania, and you've got some bellwether counties that are reporting in now, and it's a good news for Donald Trump.
Yeah, one in the east, one in the west. Let's start in the east.
In the east?
Northampton County. This is Easton, PA, right here, south central suburbs. 95% of the vote is in. Trump is there with 51%. Remember, Biden won this in 2020. So Trump able to flip that bellwether county. There's still some vote out, but it's unclear if Harris can catch up. Erie County. We haven't talked enough about Erie County tonight. This is one of those swing counties that we watch in western PA. Biden won it in 2020. Tonight, Trump is on top. There's about 3,000 votes still left to be counted here. It's unclear. She's going to have to get all those votes if she wants to flip that county back blue. Let's go to the caller counties in Philadelphia. Let's talk about what we have here. So we want to compare to 2020 to see how she's driving out the vote. Underperforming right now in Chester County. Still 20% of the vote is out there. Montgomery County, 86% of the vote is in. 62% for Biden. Again, 60%. She's underperforming there. We move down to Delco. 95% in, 62.9, slightly underperforming there. Philadelphia County, this is where she closed out her campaign with Lady Gaga and Oprah as well. There's still
Pennsylvania.
A lot of vote left to be counted.
She's going for
20% or so.
Pennsylvania.
81%
That's that
where
battleground
Biden was
state.
at. She's at 78. And finally,
That could
Bucks
definitely
County
do
here.
something.
Trump has flipped this right now. There's still about 30% of the vote is out, 69%. He had 51. Biden did in 2020. Trump tonight with 50%. Still some vote to be counted there. But those aren't promising numbers in the collar counties right now. And the bellwethers, one in the east, one in the west, showing signs that Pennsylvania could turn red. Still a lot of vote out, guys. But this may be one of the reasons, and we don't know why Vice President Harris decided not to speak tonight, but this may be one of the reasons why the trend lines in Pennsylvania, from what we're seeing, if she doesn't win Pennsylvania, there is no longer a path for her.
And you're seeing some of these same patterns in other states as well.
Wisconsin and Michigan as well. We're starting to look at the counties there. We walked you through Michigan and Wisconsin. Still a lot of vote out in those two battleground states. But again, those trend lines that we're following, we're searching these maps to see if there's any positive signs for the Democrats. And I got to be honest with you, the more I go through these counties, through all the battleground states, more and more what you see in the rural counties, Trump is overperforming. Harris is underperforming in the counties.
The counties, because the counties, depending on what the counties look like.
If he wins Pennsylvania,
right?
he goes to the White House.
Right. Whether it's a call or not, it functionally is. I don't know. The minute if we call Pennsylvania tonight, does he get to 270? I think so. Yeah.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
So
That's why it's ball game. I mean, that's it. So.
And they're counting fast in Pennsylvania tonight as well. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I think we're going to have some projections to make. Yes. Don't forget.
We are going to hear from
one more state to go here.
Alaska.
Oh, Alaska.
And NBC
Three
is
votes.
projecting that it's, well, not projecting at all. We're saying it is too early
to call
on Alaska.
Too early to call.
And here's where the road to 270 stands right now. Harris.
So
with
Trump is at 246.
194.
We don't have that update yet.
Gaining ground
Let me
now,
see why
246,
my
as he
ticker
looks
isn't
forward
updated.
to scoring 270 electoral votes.
Okay, let's see the battlegrounds. Pennsylvania, we just discussed it. Too close to call right now with 92% of the vote in.
Yeah,
Same
we're still at
story in
230,
Michigan,
210.
but we've been discussing how some of the
It's not updating
trend
yet,
lines are not
fellas,
positive for the vice
folks,
president
ladies,
tonight.
and gents.
Michigan
It's
too
not
close to
updating.
call. Minnesota still too close to call at this hour. Of course, that's the
Still
home
too
state
close
of
to call.
Governor Tim Walz, but too close to call right now with the what we have in here.
Yeah.
Arizona too early to call, and in Wisconsin
Too close to call.
Close to call. So I think, Tom, you've got Wisconsin. Yeah. We'll give you a chance to do the bow and the wow counties again. Just
Bow, wow, wow,
late.
yippee, yo, yippee, yay. Okay, Madison, this is Dane County. For Democrats
So she's
right
going
now,
to the-
she's
he's
doing
going
just
to the
fine
counties
here.
again.
75% is where Biden
And this is
was
gonna
in
be what
2020, with
Wisconsin's
95%
gonna
of the
show.
vote, and she's at 75%.
Now,
That's fine for her.
if she
Milwaukee, we're gonna be
loses
waiting on the biggest city and the biggest
Pennsylvania,
county in
that's
Wisconsin
it.
for a few
That's
hours,
it.
I would
If
say,
she
maybe
loses
more than that.
Pennsylvania,
She's at
she needs to win
66%,
Pennsylvania.
but again,
She needs to
40%
win
of the
that
vote
blue
in
wall is what
Milwaukee
they're
is not
saying,
in.
which
This
is
a big
majority of those
Democratic
upper
county, so maybe she can
states
run her numbers up there.
tend to go blue.
The WOW counties here, Ozaki, this is the O
So
in the WOW.
what they're saying
81%.
is,
Trump was at 55.2.
I'm
He's
gonna-
almost matching where he was 4 years ago. Let's
I'm gonna
go over to
hide
Washington
this
County,
so you guys
68,
can see.
Overperforming there. Let's go down to Waukesha. Slightly underperforming, still
Okay.
some of the votes out there. But these two counties just south of Milwaukee, they're still part of the Milwaukee
this is what they're
media
calling
market.
the blue
We're
wall
seeing
right here.
51%. He's
Right?
overperforming
This
there,
right
but
here.
still half the vote is out
She
there.
needs to
And then
win
Kenosha, 95%
this
in,
whole blue wall up here is
overperforming
what
there
they're
as well.
calling.
These are counties that were blue under Obama.
This is what they
Trump was
call
able
the
to
blue
flip them
wall.
over
So
and
she
then
has
hold
to
them as
win
well.
this
We can go to the
in
battle
order
counties
to
now. This is
clinch
around
it,
Green Bay.
right?
56%
She needs to win
Trump
over here too,
overperforming
but
there.
it's not too
We'll
much,
come down. Sorry,
you
let
know,
me go over here to Winnebago.
it's not too
50
crazy of
again,
a need.
overperforming.
She has to
And
win
we
this
go to
blue wall,
Allegheny,
all of
again,
this,
slightly overperforming,
in
guys.
order
So as we
to
study this map, let me go to some
win.
of the Democratic
If she
strongholds that she's
doesn't,
doing. Lacrosse, 95%.
you know what I'm saying? She can
So
win
look,
over
I think
here in
it's a
Nevada
slight
and down
drop,
here.
but
She can
again,
win
we're
that,
talking about a margin of
and
20,000 votes. That's
and
what it
it's
was
not
in
gonna matter.
2016 and 2020.
And
You
that's
wanna
what I
be
was
on
saying.
top. You want to be overperforming everywhere you
If
look.
Trump
She's
wins
about at the same mark,
Pennsylvania,
slightly higher, but
that's
not by
it.
much in Eau Claire. And then another one.
That's just my prediction.
Matching Biden
if Trump wins Pennsylvania, that's it.
That's when we're watching.
He's going to be the next president. Top, but only by about 466 He'll be back in the White House. That's 19 electoral votes. That is the largest battleground state that's out right now. There's no battleground state larger than that right now. Arizona's at 11.
Mark Lauder remains with us. He was part of the 2020 campaign for Donald Trump. Great to have you both here.
He won Georgia, which
when you see those trends,
I didn't know he was going to win Georgia. I figured he would, but I didn't know because it was such a toss-up. Like, she was doing well in Georgia, and he just won Georgia. I don't know by how much. I don't know if they showed that.
Where Bucks County goes, we go. And we spent more time in research.
Trump won battlegrounds, Georgia and North Carolina. He won North Carolina. We know that. He won North and South Carolina.
Is really difficult.
Both of the Carolinas he won. And this is going to show how many electoral votes each state is, which is extremely important because when he wins a state, she wins a state, that's how many votes they're going to get to the 270. So you see that. That's why I wanted this to be shown. I wanted you to see how many votes, how many electoral votes each state had. And that's extremely important because you see a lot of this map. Let me hide this again. A lot of this map is red. And as you can see, Harris is at 210, Trump is at 246. So he's only up, according to this poll here, according to this vote tracker here, he's only up, 36 electoral votes. And he has a lot of Florida. I mean, a lot of Florida. He has Florida. But he has a lot of the country. So, and that's why I wanted this to be shown, because he has majority of states won, but look at the electoral votes. California is 54 electoral votes. That's a lot. And she won California. Now, he won Florida and Georgia, which is 30 and 16. Which is catching up to what California is. She won New York, which is 28 electoral votes. She won Illinois, which is 19 electoral votes. That's a lot.
He can't get over 49%. He's found more voters, and we're seeing it tonight when he's overperforming in some of these ruby red rural districts.
Which, by the way, for the third time you run for president, that just never happens. Yeah. And I really do think that his campaign has figured out a way to do this and really target some of these demographics. Obviously, the young white male was the right thing to do. Getting into minority communities was the right thing to do. You know, Democrats.
She's talking about how he's talking about.
It looks like to say, what do we need to do here?
But does Trump transcend politics as we know it? I mean, that he was able to be as successful as he had by sticking his finger in the eye of the political establishment, of going where no other candidate could or had gone before.
What is true is Donald Trump has always been underestimated by Democrats and has always figured out a way to juice turnout in ways that we thought were both abhorrent and didn't make sense to
they're talking about how he did on the campaign trail and how Trump had a lot more than what the Democrats thought he would have because he wasn't a career politician. And that's what they're talking about. They underestimated him.
And ripped off his shirt in sort of that moment of sort of super masculinity. And one of the conversations that we had at the time was about this, and it just, as it's named, so-called bro vote, right? The young male voter. And the Trump strategy all along had been supercharge the base, boost that turnout, crank it up big time, get those so-called low propensity voters. People, listen, young guys typically don't show up to vote all the time, and they typically don't show up to vote consistently. I will tell you that the Trump campaign has, for a bit now, been feeling good about being able to get those.
I didn't know that.
Those people who
I didn't know that.
Vote
I didn't know that at all.
Specifically with young.
It's so interesting because we heard anecdotally, again, from some of our correspondents about frat houses, fraternity brothers getting really into voting for Donald Trump. So I don't know if this is we could call it the bro wall. You know,
she said the bro wall.
Has gotten these low
the votes are in yet, but 484.
It is the hardest demographic in American politics. Males under 30 to turn out. They're the lowest turning out segment. I've spent hours on your show, you and I, talking about running up the numbers with women. And, you know, the Harris campaign did some of that tonight. The Trump campaign decided, let's just give her that and let's go grow our electorate differently. And it looks like tonight that worked.
We've got another result on one of the abortion referenda. Well, let's go to Laura Jarrett in the newsroom. Laura, what do you have?
Yeah, Lester, this was another ballot measure, this one in Arizona, where overwhelmingly by a vote of 62%, that ballot amendment has now passed. Again, this would be a
So this is the right to abortion.
A right to an abortion up to the point
Each state had to vote on this to see what it was going to, how it was going to impact each state. So Arizona, it passed. It passed in Arizona.
Restriction on the right to abortion. So a big difference there. Again, we haven't yet made a projection on the ultimate race for president in that state. But again, the ballot amendment we can project has passed there, Lester.
All right, Laura, thanks very much.
And you know what's interesting on that front? There's also another ballot initiative in Arizona that has to do with immigration. And the thinking was that maybe that would turn out, if people were going to turn out based on this abortion ballot initiative, maybe they would also turn out based on the immigration ballot initiative, that those would maybe lean Trump. But the Trump campaign has thought that there would be, quote unquote, ticket splitters or ballot initiative splitters, people who would back former President Trump in Arizona, but also back this ballot initiative that, as Laura reports, has just passed.
One of the things that I think is so interesting is we're talking about expanding the amount of voters who came out to vote for Donald Trump is this decision that he made not to campaign with Nikki Haley. And a lot of people thought, oh, that's going to be a big misstep. To your point, Jim, it was his way of calculating, I'm going to focus on driving out the mail vote, because a lot of people thought, boy, that's a risky strategy. Why wouldn't you have Nikki Haley?
But he also never made any overtures to Nikki Haley voters. When Nikki Haley dropped out of the race, there was never a sense of, here's an olive branch coming to my tent.
But there were a million people that voted for Nikki Haley in battleground states. And I mean, that's a real gutsy move to say, you know what, I'm not interested.
But the true answer is you could have done both. Like, he could have done both, like a good presidential campaign usually would. In a race where 70-some% of Americans say we're on the wrong track, this race was really close because Donald Trump couldn't ever grow his vote past these young voters we're talking about. Had he been able to do both those things, to your point, 1 million people voted. They were just sitting out there. Remember Nikki on one of your shows this week saying, no one's called me, no one's asked. Because they decided, to your point, they were going to go jack up low propensity white males, and it may have worked.
Let's go check in on.
So he didn't take Nikki Haley under his. He did it with Kennedy. He did it with Kennedy.
Yeah, Lester, we're trying to get some clarity. As I mentioned earlier, we were hoping we would have the tabulation from the city of Detroit around midnight. We have not gotten any confirmation at this point if that has been completed, but I do want to emphasize something that we're seeing coming out of the surrounding areas. Dearborn, Michigan. That is a community that has a large population.
It looks like Trump is going to win Michigan. Michigan is 15 electoral votes.
The situation in the Middle East that has been going on for months.
Oh man,
it might impact the vote here, and we're starting to get some early.
It's not looking too great, guys. I'm just letting y'all know it's not looking too great for Kamala.
Waiting for more votes to come in, including the
absentee. The difference is 233,502. 64% of Michigan votes are in. Michigan is 15 electoral votes. Trump is leading 52.3%.
The warning signs around this issue go back to the Democratic primary. President Joe Biden, when he was still at the top of the ticket for the Democrats, he had over 100,000 people vote uncommitted in protest of his administration's stance on the war in Gaza back in the primary. We've seen both campaigns make a concerted effort
to make
outreach to this community on this issue. Vice President Harris over the weekend at a rally in East Lansing, Michigan at Michigan State University on the campus singled out the war in Gaza at the top of her remarks. We saw President Trump in his final campaign rally of this cycle, potentially his last ever as a presidential candidate in Grand Rapids, Michigan, on Monday night, really into early Tuesday morning. At that event, he had a Muslim mayor, a Muslim American mayor from a community in Michigan speaking there. Both campaigns have been making a push there, but we also know Jill Stein has made a very concerted effort to reach out to that community. In fact, she had planned to be in Dearborn tonight.
Trump wins Michigan.
From a group known as
I'm not going to say I want to call it because Pennsylvania is still won, right?
The election night celebration.
I don't think that she gets it if he wins Michigan. I think she needed Michigan too.
What they're seeing from the results, and I just want to read part of some comments that someone gave to me when I interviewed them after they voted, or around voting, I should say, in Dearborn over the weekend. And he said that as it comes to both major party candidates, he hopes that they will, quote, recognize that we don't have these people in our pockets. My vote is up for grabs. It's a wake-up call, and it certainly seems at this point that the positions of both major party candidates or the lack thereof of a reach out in the way that some people wanted may be influencing the vote here. And again, in a state that was so razor thin back in 2016, only around 10,000 vote margin in favor of former President Trump. We'll see if this could be the difference maker in the state with 15 electoral votes up for grabs.
15
All right,
electoral
Jesse, thank
votes.
you. And we've got an alert here. This is Nevada, moving from too early to call to too close to call. And they're counting fast. They're 70% of the vote.
Nevada's too close to call.
In the western battleground of Nevada. And Tom, let's zero in on what you're seeing there.
Yeah, some interesting things happening in the Silver State. If the trend is your friend in Las Vegas, the trend is your friend if you're a Republican tonight. Here's why. Look, a lot of the vote is still out in Clark County. There's still about 23% of the vote that's out in Clark County. But this margin right here at this point in the night is way too close. This is how Clark County, Vegas ended up 4 years ago. You can see it was almost a 10-point split here. It was a 10-point split there. And now we're talking about 2 percentage points tonight in Clark County. Again, a lot of the vote is out. That vote could come in and those numbers could change. Reno, Washoe County, more reflective of the entire state vote. This is the battleground county. Biden won this in 2020. Tonight, Trump is on top. Still, a lot of the vote is out. He's only on top by about 200 votes, so not much to say there. But what we can point out, in the Trump counties, like Elko County here, 64% in. Trump is overperforming tonight. He was at 76. He's almost at 80% right now. And Democrats aren't going to find votes here. I mean, these numbers aren't going to swing a lot in the Democrats' way. This is Trump country here in the middle of Nevada. Douglas County is another, I should say right down here, Douglas County. This is another Trump barometer that we watch. Again, overperforming. 66% of the vote is in. He was at 63 in 2020. He's now at 66. But the big story for me right now, and a lot of the vote is out, Clark County. I mean, this is 3/4 of Nevada right here. If Democrats hit certain margins where they're 50,000 or 60,000 votes ahead of Republicans, Republicans will never catch up in Nevada. Again, there's a lot of vote that's still out. We can find out exactly how much is out. 223,000 votes, so still a lot out there. Democrats won't get all of those, but they'll get a large chunk. Again, this is still a little too close this early in the night. Guys?
All right, Tom, thanks very much. I want to go out to Steve Patterson. He is in Reno, Nevada, where they had long lines into the night. How are things going there now?
You know, Lester, really an experience, a process that is sort of winding down in most counties across the country is only just spooling up here in Nevada. As you mentioned, you know, voting really ended just a few minutes ago with some of these counties sort of ending the process. People were still in line hours after polls closed. And so the count couldn't really start until that happened, which is why Tom Llamas reporting, obviously, that it's still too close to call, too early to call at this point. Several counties still need returns to come back. It is still very early on in the process. But we saw almost immediately Republicans sort of jumping out to this early ballot lead when it came to turnout. That was sort of the reading on the wall that I think a lot of folks had. And specifically in those counties in which, you know, Tom Llamas was pointing out that are red, they're going to stay red. This sort of the math doesn't change in those areas. There's really only 2 population centers in this state, which is Washoe and which is Clark, Vegas and Reno. If she doesn't build up a big enough firewall that we see these returns happen over the next few hours, then it's going to be very tough for Democrats to make up that ground. I spoke to both campaigns. They both feel like they still have a good shot. Obviously, Democrats and Republicans both aiming for another subgroup here, nonpartisan voters. It is a huge, huge segment of the electorate here in Nevada. It is larger than Republicans, larger than Democrats. Of course, they all have their opinions about which way they break, different leanings, and I think both campaigns feel like they're seizing on that. They feel like they know their voters in that group, but that's what makes it so notoriously hard to read in this state. Which way are these nonpartisan voters going? And I think that's sort of what we're going to be focused on within the next few hours. It may not be until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock tonight before we start seeing legitimate, solid returns that'll tell us one way or another how the state is going to go.
All right, Steve, thanks very much.
That's mountain time, too, by the way. So even later here on the East Coast, let's go to Garrett Haake. He is at Trump headquarters in West Palm. Any word on whether we will hear from the former president?
And they're talking about the Nevada is 6 electoral votes.
We will, Savannah, and soon, I'm told by a campaign official.
I don't know if they care about that.
On his way across from Mar-a-Lago to here in West Palm Beach. And he is expected to speak soon. Now, what soon means is a little bit of open to interpretation, but Trump himself made it very clear earlier today. He does not have a lot of patience with this vote counting process. He wants this to be over tonight. He thought earlier today it would be over tonight. And it was his desire to speak tonight you see that picture breaking up a little bit as he makes his way across the bridge to West Palm Beach. This ballroom is full. Secret Service starting to kind of close the doors, urge people to get in. They're cranking up the music. Savannah, I do not think it will be long until we hear from former President Trump.
And that will be an interesting situation because if assuming the status quo exists, he will not have been called as the next president.
Well, we will recall that he declared victory in 2020 when, in fact, he lost. So we'll see what his verbiage is here. What are you going to say?
I was going to say, I've been speaking to some of his allies, sort of this divide about how he should approach this night. And some of them are saying you should be very aggressive. You should get out there and claim victory if, in fact, you think that's where this is headed. Others are saying, look, let's just walk a very fine line. I'll be really curious to see what he says, because this election, unlike 2020, the numbers are on his side. And again, we still have a lot of votes that need to be counted, so we don't know what the ultimate conclusion is going to be. But it's notable he's coming out in Harris.
Yeah, to be clear, in 2020, he declared victory. The race hadn't been called one way or the other. He hadn't lost yet. He lost
Garrett
5 days later.
You've got some new information, Garrett?
Well, Lester, I just want to add that Trump was asked about this earlier today, and I think we have two things from him and from his campaign. First of all, his campaign has made it very clear that he would speak when they felt he was well on his way to 270 electoral votes. They were very clear that they didn't.
So they're gonna wait, slow down before he comes out. But I think Trump wants to talk right now. That's just my opinion.
He would speak.
I think Trump wants to talk right now.
Secondly, Trump
I
was
don't think
asked today
he's.
what his message is going to be to the millions, tens
I don't
of millions
think
of
he.
people who will have voted for Kamala Harris if he speaks after a victory. Would he give a unifying message? Trump said that he would, but described this as a broken country and said it would be important to try to fix it. Unifying message has not been Trump's strength, candidly, across his political career. But he
The House is at 193 for Republicans, 160 for Democrats. It's about to have a red country. I'm telling you, it's going to be a Republican country. I didn't see this coming from the Senate and the House. I did not see that. I didn't know. I didn't see that coming. I'm not going to lie. I didn't see that coming. I didn't pay attention to the House and Senate leading up to Election Day. I didn't. I paid attention to that kind of late, so I didn't know. I thought the Senate was the most important, or I thought the Senate could be more. I just found out tonight watching this, man, that it's just like, okay, you could kind of survive without the Senate. It's the House. I didn't know that. I got to do some research on that because maybe it is. I don't know. Hoax bomb threats targeting polling places. Man. Jamari Figures wins bid to represent Alabama district. Republican Bernie, Moreno unsets Democratic senator. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. He unseated. Crypto was on the ballot too now. Crypto, if you're monitoring crypto, we should monitor crypto as well. I should probably be monitoring crypto too. Because crypto was on the ballot. And crypto matters. Crypto matters right now. I should probably be monitoring crypto as well.
Kristen Welker,
as all this is going on. I kind of don't want to because I'm throwing a lot on my machine right now.
NBC News Daily is #1
and I don't want to disrupt the stream too much.
All of television.
I'm Morgan Radford. I'm Vicky Wynn. I'm Kate Snow. And I'm Zinklea Samwat.
What's happening around the world?
Israel's military is building up there along the border.
And what matters here at home?
New numbers are out today showing more encouraging signs for our economy.
Let's zero in on exercise. We know we're supposed to be doing it. What does it do for our health?
What needs to change for social media to be a safer place?
NBC News Daily, weekdays from 12 to 4 on NBC News Now.
Welcome back. Let's check in on the road to 270 as we put the map up on the screen. All right, there's the road to 270. Donald Trump inching closer to the magic 270. Harris with 194. Let's take a look at Pennsylvania, the important battleground state, maybe the most important. Donald Trump with a narrow lead there. That is still too close to call. 93% of the vote in Pennsylvania. This is what it looks like in Michigan right now. Trump out with a lead over Kamala Harris and a 225,000 vote difference. 67% of the vote in. That's too close to call. Wisconsin, another key battleground state in play. Too close to call there. 89% of the vote is in there. And we can show you Nevada with its 6 electoral votes. Too close to call. 37,000 vote difference. Minnesota, it is Kamala Harris leading, but that is characterized by our decision desk as too close to call. 85,000 vote difference in Minnesota. Tom, we'll send it back over to you.
Yep, we're going to be looking at Arizona right now. The closest margin in 2020. At this hour, we have about 53% of the vote in. It's really tied up. It's pretty much 50-50 right now. Trump's slightly ahead by 16,000 votes, but it's still very early. Maricopa County, 60% of the vote. This is sort of, you want to win here to win the state. Harris is on top right now. We can compare her to 4 years ago. But again, half the vote is out in Maricopa County. But she's kind of where she wants to be. She's doing a little better in Pima County. Again, half the vote is out, but she's overperforming there than where Biden was 4 years ago. But when we go to the Trump counties, okay, places like Yuma, Trump is overperforming. 52% in 2020. Again, there's only 35% of the vote in, but he's at 64%. And we can actually, if we move the state over here, I'm going to pop over all the red counties, and you can see how he's overperforming. 68. Now at La Paz, 71. We go a little further, Mojave, 75. He's at 76. We'll come over here to Navajo, 53. He's at 61. Still half the votes out over there. Finally, 58 and 60%. So you can see, I want to show you an interesting stat, though. So remember where this race is right here, right? It's neck and neck. Let's go to the Senate race here, and it's a much different story. Look how much ahead Gallego is over Kari Lake right here. So you could have that split ticket voter effect in Arizona happening right now. Again, Gallego's at 52%, Kari Lake's at 46%. When we come back to the president's race, 50-49. So you can see what's happening there. We even heard Jen Psaki talking about this, right? There could be voters who, the border's important to them. The economy's obviously important to them as well. And they could be picking Trump for the presidency, but Ruben Gallego for the Senate, guys.
I think the abortion ballot measure passed as well in Arizona. So, voters aren't always sticking to the categories people want to put them in. Can we see the Nevada Senate race? So if Gallego gets the Democratic seat, that's a hold for the Democrats, and Jackie Rosen trying to go back to the Senate and hold that seat. How's it looking, Nevada?
Look, this is neck and neck right now. And Dems thought that they were going to have this, this was a lean Democrat. They didn't think this was going to be a tough race for them. This is a little tough right now. But again, a lot of the vote is still out in Clark County. Let's see. We can see how compared to Biden. She's slightly underperforming Biden. But again, there's more than 20% of the vote out in Clark County. I don't want to make too much assumptions about Nevada without sort of a majority, all of Clark County in, or at least 90% in. In Washoe, which is more reflective of the entire state, neck and neck there. I would say, I think it's
majority
fair to
of
say
Nevada
at this point with the vote where it is, Sam Brown is
Republican.
overperforming. Jackie Rosen, of course, the incumbent
Two different counties
not
are
great
showing.
news for Democrats right now, but it's still a lot of the vote is out in Las Vegas, and that's what's going to really decide this election, Savannah.
Yeah, and we're waiting for the Montana Senate seat as well, where John Tester is looking to hold on. You can check in on that, report back. Oh, no, look, you're so fast on that board now.
This is interesting, man.
Tim Sheehy, look at this.
This is interesting.
The incumbent John Tester is down. This was the most expensive Senate race, I think maybe ever, in Montana here. This was a huge fight, and we only have about 30% in, so we can't really draw too much from here. But we can see how, this is a very red state. Trump was at 56. He's performing at 51 right now, so he's sort of underperforming. But look, it's still early in the night. There's still 70% of the vote that's out in Montana. But this is one we're going to be watching closer there's still a lot of counties that haven't even reported vote yet. So still very early in Montana, but the Republican, Tim Sheehy's on top.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. We're back with our panel now, along with our guests, Claire McCaskill, former Democratic Senator from Missouri, and Mark Lauder, Strategic Communications for the 2020 Trump campaign. Good to have you both here with us tonight. Claire, let me start with you. We may hear, Donald Trump sooner than later. What can he say that will make it a less bitter moment for those on the left?
Oh boy, that's a really hard question. First of all, do I think he will? Will he try to reach out and be a unifier and try to acknowledge that this country is divided incredibly divided. I don't think he will. That's not who he is. That's not how he got elected. And I don't know him. You could probably answer this better than I could, but it doesn't seem like to me that this would be the moment where he would not try to be his authentic self, which is I'm a marauder, I'm a disruptor, I'm somebody who I'm going to be your fighter against everything you hate about government. I think he'll stay with that kind of theme tonight.
Let me ask Mark, is that how he ran? I mean, has he, let's treasure one more question.
She's saying that he ain't going to try to
more
make them
course
feel
in
good about
general,
losing.
the key to getting elected president.
Well, I think obviously he's got his own unique style, and he speaks in his language. But I also think when we were talking about this earlier, I think Jim Messina was talking about it, that Democrats had made the decision to basically just campaign to be anti-Trump. And for the last 10 years, it's been primarily anti-Trump. I remember coming down the stairs with him as president-elect the first time in 2016, and I thought actually he gave a much more open speech to bringing the country together, because that was his first moment speaking as president-elect in 2016 in the wee hours over here at the Manhattan Hilton.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if he's going to hit on his campaign themes.
I mean, let's remember we have seen him on the national stage for 8 years. I mean, I covered him in the White House. We covered him in the White House together. We covered him in the campaign. We know who this person is. He's been president before. He's been a presidential candidate before. And we know what his message tends to be. He's done it over and over in this campaign. And that is a message that is darker, that casts America as a dangerous place, a place that only he can fix. Somebody who, as we talk about rhetoric, just called Nancy Pelosi as crazy as a bedbug just recently, right? So let's just remember that is, I think, some of the tone. Now, we may see tonight him look to make I'm not even going to say the word pivot, but perhaps extend an olive branch. Maybe. I mean, listen, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think there's a pattern of history.
To that point, I mean, remember after the horrific assassination attempt against him, the Republican National Convention, and all of the reporting, in fact, everything that he was saying was,
said it.
He said it, yes. He said, I am going to deliver a unifying speech. And it was for part of the speech, but then it quickly became a very familiar, almost speech that you would hear on the campaign trail.
Well, that's what he ran for, and is perhaps going to prevail on that very way of being. I don't know that he would have.
But they're thinking that he's not going to try to unify.
There was.
And hey, man,
in the
listen,
moment, some magnanimity towards.
I get
will
it,
make one bold
right?
prediction, though, Savannah. Yeah, I predict that he won't.
Having your candidate up, I've had presidential candidates who's,
even after he won election in 2016.
So I mean, I get it, and that whole fear and doom and gloom, like, is it really gonna change? But
I remember
you kind of can't get too much on that and think that it's gonna implode. The country's gonna implode, or explode because your candidate didn't get picked. That's a dangerous place to be in. I don't believe that. You know, it may be hard for people not to give into that, but you know, you don't want to get too caught up in that. You don't want to get too caught up. It's gonna all be over. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna all be over.
We were kind of told what time it was.
Yeah. Well, just to speak to that, I mean, again, we don't have to rehash all of it here, and we're still waiting for Pennsylvania to be called, but he is somebody who has called journalists the enemies of the people. Just at a rally recently, he talked about being surrounded by bulletproof glass, and that if somebody wanted to come after him in a attempted assassination, again, they'd have to shoot through the media first, and he'd be okay with that. His campaign tried to suggest that's not what he said, but that is the kind of language that we have heard from him consistently.
And remember how he launched his campaign, vowing retribution. And in recent weeks and days, we've heard him talk about his political rivals as being the enemy from within. His vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, has spent a lot of time answering for that in interviews that he has done.
Well, just to bring everybody up to date, 1:30 on the East Coast, and we are awaiting Donald Trump, who's expected to speak at the Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. Battlegrounds remain to be called, and so there still is a narrow path. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for Kamala Harris. But the trend lines and the reason you're hearing this tone from Democrats and Republicans alike is the trend lines are indicating that it will be a Trump victory, but this has not been called yet. So you have the audience there waiting to hear from the former president. These are the uncalled battleground states. Those are the trend lines that we're talking about. Pennsylvania, a healthy Trump margin there with 94% of the vote in. Those states out west, Arizona and Nevada, we may not know about those for several hours now, and we are waiting. Wisconsin and Michigan kind of bringing up the rear there in terms of these Midwest, East Coast time zones. So we will continue to follow this, but Kamala Harris, I should mention, has gone home for the night. Cedric Richmond, who is the co-chair of the Harris campaign, came out and addressed the crowd at Howard University in Washington, D.C., letting them know that she would address them and address the country, he said, tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. Well, it is Wednesday morning here on the East Coast, but in a few hours from now.
Yeah, and we should, it's worth noting in 2016, after his victory, he appeared in the 2 a.m. hour to make his remarks. And we are in the 1 a.m. hour, and we saw that motorcade a bit earlier crossing the bridge in West Palm. But we don't have any timing as to when we may hear.
Well, we know we won't hit traffic because of the hour and also the motorcade. But we are expecting him. And we've been talking about, you know, what tone he might strike. And also, I mean, Mark Lauder, you were there. You know him. If you, let's just pretend he listens to his advisors. What would you advise him to say tonight?
I would outline what we have to get done. And first off, we have 74 days, if I'm going off my quick math, before you actually take the oath of office. So I would obviously want to get right to work. You would obviously praise your staff. Unlike what you would normally do in a traditional speech this way, you will have not talked to your opponent unless something strange happens between now and then, and she calls, they reach out and call. So you're not going to be able to say anything along those lines. And then ultimately, I think, especially if it looks right now, you may not hold, but you're leading in the national popular vote. That's something that you have not done. It's something only one president, Republican president, has done this century. You have a mandate. And
what is the mandate? Because he didn't run to the center. I mean, he ran to the base, and the base, it seems poised to elect him. So what would the mandate be if you're him? What is it the mass deportation? Is it, the tariffs, for example? I mean, he's been very clear about his policies.
I think first and foremost, it'll be energy, the economy, extending the tax cuts, and then I think you will get into illegal immigration. I think you will get into in some of those other areas. But ultimately, I think that's first where you go. Also will depend on if you have the House. If you have the House and the House comes with you on this, then you have obviously both chambers. You'll have unified control. And that changes a lot.
He will effectively be a one-term president. What does that mean in terms of how he would govern?
You have, what, 8 months to get something done before they start running for re-election? No, I mean, in reality, you obviously you're going to have your 4 years, but as we both know, you get that 100 days, maybe that 6 months before Congress goes and starts acting in their interest for their re-election, their campaign interests. You're going to have what I assume would be a primary to be your successor, and then obviously the Democrats will have their primary.
Claire, how would you see that? How would you see that rolling out?
Well, I think it depends on whether or not the House is controlled by the Democrats. Remember, when Trump got elected last time, he had the House and the Senate. He had all three, and there was, he struggled. He got the tax cuts done, but that was really the only, he didn't repeal Obamacare. He didn't build the wall. He didn't do a lot of the things he had promised to do, even though he had all three houses. So I worry that if the Democrats get the House, then whatever he doesn't get done will be Hakeem Jeffries' fault, as opposed to his inability to produce on the promises he's made. But if we don't take the House, then I think he's got a tall order, and I think he's got to do the tariffs. And he doesn't need Congress for that. He can do the tariffs right away. I've been hearing from my friends that are in Europe. They're very worried about the lines of those countries being redrawn fairly quickly.
You mean Ukraine?
Yes, and more. Orban and other autocrats that now will feel this is a green light. I think NATO will be greatly diminished. I think our European allies will be very, very nervous. So that's another whole piece of this. So I think it really is important for us to know whether the Democrats take the House before we start speculating too much. And part of me, I want the Democrats to take the House because I think there'll be a check. On the other hand, they also will be a scapegoat.
Well, let's be clear. If the Republicans hold on to the House, they have the Senate. If they win the White House, you have an ideological 6-3 Supreme Court. You will have the Republicans in charge of every branch of government in this country.
And not to raise this specter, but it is possible that if Donald Trump wins another term, if that happens, and we have not called Pennsylvania or the race yet, so big ifs here, but if that happens, you could maybe see some court retirements if there is a Republican Senate, Republican House, Republican in the White House as well, and then the court could become even more conservative. Again, potentially, I don't want to go too far down that road. Let's see how the night shakes out, but since you brought it up, Savannah, just to throw that in.
Well, that brings us to Tom Yamas and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
We've been talking so much about those collar counties. I want to talk about the I-222 corridor, and I know we have some PA homies in the house tonight. I'm sorry if my highway is not exact, but it kind of cuts through here. And I want to talk about this because when we look at the counties and how Trump's doing here, this is where the Hispanics are. This is the Latino corridor, if you will, in Pennsylvania, because I want to show you how important this is. So when we start, we can start right here. We'll start in York County, overperforming in York County. As we move up, Lancaster, about even there. We'll keep going. Berks County here, overperforming again, almost all the votes in there. We go to Lehigh now. She's underperforming. Harris is underperforming from Biden. Trump is overperforming. And we finish over here in Northampton again, Easton, PA. Again, he flips this county, overperforming there. And then I want to show you the polls, guys, right? This was the exit poll that sort of, I don't want to say it surprised us, but this told us that the story was going to be different tonight. This is Trump support among Latino voters in Pennsylvania. Look at this number. 2020, 27%. In 2024, 41%.
And I said this earlier.
Latino voters, and again, I know this
Latino
could change.
voters.
These are early exit polls.
We're out there
Look at the breakdown here.
voting
55,
Donald Trump.
57. But even black voters, he grew his margins there from 2020
They
to
were.
2024. And again, that Latino margin, that spread right there. And I bring this up because we were talking a lot about that Madison Square Garden rally. That
And we
joke
know
that was
black
made,
voters were voting
about
Trump.
Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans and how it would affect the race and how it would affect what happened
We know
in
black
Pennsylvania.
voters were out there
so
voting
far,
Donald
we have
Trump.
not seen it
We
have
know that.
any tremendous effect. Again, we'll get all the data post-Thanksgiving, and we'll be able to sort of figure all that out. But right now, it looks like it's not affecting those Latino counties in Pennsylvania. I do want to get
Black
a check
voters
in
were voting
on
Donald
how
Trump.
the
Latino
collar counties are doing around
voters
Philadelphia.
were, voting
And we'll get
Donald
Biden's
Trump.
number, where Trump is. This is statewide. We're going to start in Chester County. Harris is underperforming, still about 15% of the vote left out there. Montgomery County here, again, underperforming. We come down here to Delco, 62%, 61%, you know, almost about the same. But again, if you want to win Pennsylvania, you have to be at the same mark as Biden or higher. And then Philadelphia right now, this is not a great number for her. This is pretty bad. Again, 15% of the vote, more than 15% of the vote is still out there. So she could claw that back. And I don't want to forget Bucks County here. This is the big one tonight when we talk about the collar counties in Pennsylvania, because Democrats need to win this. They need to win all the collar counties. Biden at 51 in 2020. Tonight, Harris underwater at 48.
Black voters
Trump
were voting
up at
Donald
50.
Trump.
He may
Latino
possibly
voters,
flip Bucks
Latino
County.
voters,
75%
were
of the
voting
vote is in.
Donald
Hallie
Trump.
Jackson's the Bucks County expert here, so I'll
And-
leave it to her.
No,
but
no, correct me if I'm wrong. It was
yeah.
Biden County in 2016 as well, right? By a slim margin.
It was
In Pennsylvania, look at Pennsylvania.
Sorry,
Pennsylvania.
Democratic County, of course.
Look on the electoral college side. Pennsylvania is 19 votes.
County Republicans thought they had
And
a chance
Michigan
or could at least
is
claw back some
15,
of the vote,
and it
maybe
does not
peel
look
back
like
some of
she's
the
going to win
Democratic
any of
support.
those two.
And tonight it looks like it's happened. We're still waiting on a quarter of the vote.
And I mean-
but that's a strong. When you see a number like that in Bucks County, you know it's going to be a tough night for Democrats.
And as we talk about the education gap here in this race, I will just point out that Bucks County does have a bigger education gap than you see in some of those other Philadelphia suburban counties as well. You have an area like Lower Bucks, you see more of sort of that blue-collar voter there.
And the fact that Erie County also has gone for Trump, that's a huge bellwether in the state. And that's why Democrats who are texting me are saying all of these signs are just not headed in the right
Well, I
direction.
mean, Joe Biden, of course, picked up, he did better, in some of those rural places. He, is sort of from Scranton or Scranton adjacent, grew up there, but then obviously went on to have Delaware as his home state. But I mean, he did better in some of these rural places that we're talking about.
Well, what was interesting is that when Biden won it, when Obama won it, he drew out a very large African-American population and vote in the Philadelphia area. Yes, did well in the collar counties. But Biden really won it because of the collar counties, and that's what made his win in Pennsylvania so different.
Everyone's speechless here. I guess it really is 1:40 in the morning, except for they're not speechless. They're cheering there at Trump headquarters.
I think we can
at
go
West Palm. Yeah, I think we must be getting close to that moment with Donald Trump. It's motorcade. We saw it coming, so I think.
Yeah, Garrett Haake is there.
Yeah, he's there. We can listen to him and hear what the crowd is hearing.
Yeah. Savannah, I can tell you right now, the anticipation far outpaces the available information about what Donald Trump will say and when he will say it. They're broadcasting another network in here, and we're getting a lot of cheers from a crowd who is anticipating a victory speech. I can tell you on the platform behind me, you probably can't quite see it, but the glass is up. The teleprompter glass is up for prepared remarks. But I think it's possible that part of the delay here may be that those remarks don't yet exist. Trump told reporters this morning after he voted that he hadn't written anything yet. He hadn't written a concession speech. He hadn't written a victory speech. He is something of a superstitious person, and it's possible he did not want to put anything on paper early, not knowing the results. For right now, I'm like tapping through my phone. We're reaching out to campaign sources, but I think part of the problem is Trump himself may not be entirely clear what message he wants to give to the country when he decides to step forward and give it. Savannah?
All right, Garrett, thank you. Let's go over to Peter Alexander at Harris headquarters, where they're shutting it down. Cedric Richmond had just came out a little earlier saying that we will not hear from Kamala Harris tonight, but we will tomorrow. Any further word there, Peter?
Right now at this hour.
Yeah, I think most accurate to say that we are shutting it down at this point, shy of 2 o'clock here. We're the only ones left, a matter of reporters here who are sort of bundling up their gear in anticipation of the vice president returning to Howard University, her alma mater, as we were told. I guess it's later today. She'll be speaking today, Wednesday, not just to her supporters, but to a national audience as well. Obviously, this thing isn't done yet, but certainly based on the expressions we saw, the information we're getting from those in and around the Harris campaign, it doesn't feel like a winning night for them, a successful campaign. We heard a funeral type atmosphere from those top donors who were gathered at a hotel not far from here. Kamala Harris never arrived at this location, not dissimilar to Hillary Clinton back in 2016 when it was one of her aides who came out and said she wouldn't be speaking, that she would deliver remarks the next day. Ultimately, it was then when she delivered a concession. So they're keeping close eyes on Pennsylvania. But the bottom line is, you know, there are key demographics and critical counties and crucial states where they're just underperforming.
Peter, I'll ask you to stand by right now. We have another call in Nebraska.
Another prediction.
Split electoral votes. NBC News projects that
Nebraska.
Donald Trump will win 4 of the 5. There's the difference. This is District 3. Donald Trump, the projected winner. And you can see 58% of the vote is in there.
District 2.
And District 2 remains outstanding. That's the one, the Omaha adjacent district that usually goes blue and is expected to tonight as well. I think we await District 2. Think we just saw that.
So look, we got her at 214 now.
To the magic 270 that would put him over the top and hand him the White House once more.
Yeah, we await his comments. Stay with us. NBC News election night coverage continues right after this short break.
Yeah. And NBC, they sick over there too. They sick over there. Flipping back a key battleground state. They looking sick over there too. So he won Nebraska. Well, I think he just won certain districts, and because they got those districts, oh no, they're giving him. Oh, they say hold. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. Where it says he has Nebraska CD 1 hold. So I'm guessing they're holding it for him. Oh well, it's holding that line. Then Georgia gained. He's gaining more momentum there, and she may get New Hampshire. How many votes is New Hampshire? Oh, New Hampshire is 4. So the stock market is going up right now. I mean, it's election season, so a lot of the stock markets, crypto, all these things, they're gonna go up because it's election season, you know. So these things are gonna keep going up at this time. So hey man, listen, we're here, we're live streaming, we're here the election. We'll probably call it after Trump makes his speech. I'm pretty sure Trump is going to make his speech here soon.
And how do you get
And this may be called tonight, guys, and I was not expecting it. Well, this morning, it may be called early this morning. I was not expecting it. I'm not going to lie. I was not expecting it to be called.
Welcome back to NBC News election night coverage. It's nearly 2 a.m. in the East. We're looking at the scene in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Trump speaks to supporters at Campaign HQ.
Former President Donald Trump are celebrating. Early celebration. The race has not been called yet, but there is anticipation that the former president will speak here tonight, and so there is great excitement. Let me hand it over to Kristen Welker right now, who can talk about the other big headline of the night, and that's the balance of power.
Yeah, Lester, Republicans cheering for this as well because NBC News has projected that Republicans will take control of the Senate after claiming 2 seats. Let's take a look at some of the races, though.
So the Senate takes it.
In Pennsylvania, Senator Bob Casey looking for his 4th term in the Senate. This race too close to call. His challenger is McCormick, and let's look, you can see right there, 51 to 41 so far. So there you have Senator Bob Casey trying to fend off a challenge from Dave McCormick. Let's go to Wisconsin now. Tammy Baldwin looking for another term in the Senate. She is getting a real run for her money from real estate and CEO executive Eric Hovde. Let's go over to Nevada now. Jackie Rosen. A couple of months ago, it looked like this was going to be safe for her. This race now too close to call as she is trying to fend off a challenge from Sam Brown. Let's go to Michigan now, this open seat, Alyssa Slotkin and Mike Rogers fighting for this Senate seat in the great state of Michigan as we wait for a call at the top of the ticket in that state.
So we already know that the Senate is in Republican hands, and now where the question is of the margins, and the remaining incumbents holding on to Democratic seats have always been on defense there, but those are very tight races. And
dude, the House, I want to see what they're doing with the House, man. See, they're talking about the Senate. I want to know what's going on with the House.
In Wisconsin, all of these races have gotten much tighter in these recent weeks. But look, if former President Donald Trump does, in fact, win the White House, having a Republican Senate undoubtedly would pave the way for him to clear at least part of his agenda potentially more easily. Now, of course, he might be dealing with the Democratic House.
And I'll tell you, the Republican, I just got a text from a source, Republican Senate source, they're feeling pretty darn good about tonight.
Well, we have a few seconds here. We await the appearance of Donald Trump in that hall in West Palm Beach, Florida. We see a celebratory atmosphere there. People, cheering and hugging, and it looks like a victory party. And when the former president steps out,
this is crazy.
That's exactly what it will be. However, NBC News has
this is crazy. I'm not gonna lie. This is crazy. Right here, because the way that Kamala was looking and the way that people were on board with her, it was crazy, man. I had a feeling Trump was going to win this whole time, only because of the way things were shaping out. But this is crazy. I'm not going to lie. This is crazy.
Celebration has broken out. The crowd now eagerly awaiting what they hope and believe will be an appearance.
Donald Trump is going to say something soon, I'm pretty sure. I just want to see, I really want to see what's going to happen with Pennsylvania. And I want to know what's going to happen with Michigan.
Around the podium, so all seems to be in readiness.
By the way, we saw the crowds cheering a few moments ago. Another network has called the race for Trump, which explains the cheers inside the headquarters. We have not. Just a reminder, our decision desk, which is in Philadelphia, crunches those numbers. And the motto there is they don't need to be first, they need to be right. And we really do exercise an abundance of caution.
Somebody I'm looking for here, and I don't know if he's in this convention center or if he's still at Mar-a-Lago with former President Trump, is Elon Musk, because he potentially may have ended up being a factor in this race if, in fact, we do call Pennsylvania for former President Trump. He created this super PAC, put a ton of money behind Donald Trump in this state, did that very controversial $1 million a day giveaway to people who would sign a petition arguing for, First and Second Amendment rights, et cetera. I think it was something like $118 million that he poured into this race behind former President Trump and has become a very close ally of his. It speaks to what we've been talking about. Young men, there's this picture, Mar-a-Lago, Elon Musk, Dana White, UFC vacancy guy, out there with
Donald Trump. By the way, speaking of, I mean, first of all, Elon Musk hours ago tweeted, or X, or whatever you call it now, game, set, match. So he's already been feeling that victory. But let's talk about RFK. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Has stated that Donald Trump promised to give him everything having to do with health care in the government. So we'll see if he keeps that promise.
And he is, again, a very controversial figure here, talking about children's health. He's big in the sort of anti-vaccine movement. Former President Trump has said just recently that he would be in favor of him sort of being in position. Remember, there's also this interesting dynamic where RFK ended up on the ballot in one of these blue wall states. So you saw former President Trump traveling with him to Michigan and Wisconsin. It seems like to remind people, no, he's with me, right? Put my name at the top of the ticket, not RFK Jr.'s, but he has been brought into the Trump fold as well.
Well, Elon Musk is so fascinating because he was actually in charge of part of the Get Out the Vote effort. And Trump campaign officials, and I interviewed Caroline Levitt today and asked her about this. She said, look, it's unconventional. This is what we're doing. The campaign is also involved. But the bottom line, it seems to have worked, at least in some of these states that we've called so far.
We just saw the actor Jon Voight among those gathered waiting to hear from President Trump. I think we have former President Trump, Garrett Haake, at Trump headquarters in West Palm. Are you getting any guidance on the timing?
Savannah, I've got nothing but bad news for you. I have no guidance, and in fact, Trump campaign officials who are texting me back have no guidance. So we're all in a bit of a waiting period here for the former president, I think, to make the decision to come speak. You mentioned another network having called this race. Obviously, not a decision we have made. NBC News not making any projection, but I do think that will weigh on Trump's thinking now that his audience here in the room believes he has won. I've not laid eyes on Elon Musk yet, but I have seen Tucker Carlson, who was part of the sort of core group of folks at the Mar-a-Lago party earlier this evening. Everyone who was there has decamped for the convention center. So really, the stage is set for Donald Trump's moment whenever he chooses to take it. And this crowd is ready. I've been watching people who in many cases have been here for hours and enjoying the cash bar quite thoroughly, hugging and smiling and dancing along to the program, ready for a victory celebration that for them has been a very long time coming.
Hey, Garrett, let me ask you, we've been reporting for weeks that this is going to be a tie, and we've seen, what Democrats now see. Was there any expression of pessimism? Was there concern that, there but for the grace of God go I, Republicans could have gone in the same direction as the Dems?
When I talked to people within the Trump campaign the last couple days, there were a lot of nerves because what they were trying to do was very much unproven. They had a theory that they could expand the electorate, they could turn out all these new voters, they could convince young men to show up and vote, and it was totally unproven. And, the Trump campaign ethos in general, from the top down, is to be confident, borderline cocky, until you are proven wrong. And so that's mostly what they projected. But in these last couple days, they saw the same polls we did. They saw, I think, the vice president's closing message. They saw Donald Trump at a lot of his rallies kind of failing to deliver the knockout blow with his own closing message. And they did get a little nervous. But their theory of the case was always that this electorate existed and they needed to prove it to be true. And I can tell you I have gotten several text messages from Trump campaign staffers and major donors basically saying, see, we told you so. I mean, for them, it was always going to be either a close Kamala Harris victory in their view or a sweep, potentially, of the battleground states if their theory was right. They have felt minute by minute and hour by hour tonight that the evidence is pointing towards their theory being right, and we won't know till all the votes are counted, but certainly it's starting to look that way as we approach 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, we are approaching 2 o'clock in the morning and waiting to hear from the former president, or some words when we might hear from him. Again, this race has not been called by this network. This network still going through its processes, and when it's ready to speak, our decision desk will speak.
But as we look at where the numbers are and what the mood music is, if you will, I think one of the things that is on people's minds is who will be, if in fact former President Trump does well in Pennsylvania and we call that race for him, et cetera, who will be in his ear? Who will be in his inner circle? And as we're talking about some of this, it may be striking for some folks to remember back in 2016, Jared Kushner was such a presence on the trail, his son-in-law, Ivanka Trump, his daughter, Melania Trump has been a rare presence on the campaign trail, campaigning for her husband this time, and both Ivanka Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner have largely taken a back seat. They've kept an arm's length away from domestic politics here and have not been on the trail much. They may be here tonight if, in fact, he comes out and gives some sort of big speech. They may line up as part of the family, but they have not been a presence in the way that they were.
Well, let's also not forget that 40-year-old J.D. Vance, who served in the United States Senate for 2 years, is on the precipice of becoming the vice president of the United States for a man who's 78 years old. So, I mean, this is a moment.
Yeah. The one thing I'd say about who would serve in the administration, I think this is actually a better opportunity for him coming back after the 4 years in between. Because normally when you have the second term, you just shuffle the chairs on the deck. You've got the number 2 person was really good, so we'll move them up to number 1, and maybe I'll move you over to another. He's cleaning house. I mean, the house got cleaned, and now he's able to rebuild the entire thing.
I think he will put, for example, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Do you think he says, you know what, I'll give you the FDA or the health department?
Or
HHS. Yes, exactly.
Those are Senate confirmed, and so unless you went with an acting role,
Which
he would be.
himself has said he doesn't mind having acting heads in there.
I mean, I'll leave that to him. But what I'm also going to say, though, is that when it comes to, whether it's in the national security space, in all the other spaces, he's learned from that. I mean, I was there the moment he walked into the Oval Office for the first time as president, about 7 o'clock p.m. on January 20th, 2017. And most of the people we did not know because he wasn't the politician. Reince was doing all of this, who was the person of Washington, D.C. You're taking
talking about his former
Congress.
chief of staff, Reince Priebus,
And so now he's got that knowledge.
Well, and it's striking because so many of the people who served in his administration have said he's unfit to serve. And so they won't be returning, obviously. And we spent a fair amount of time talking about that in recent weeks. All of the people who called him, for example, a fascist. I do think it's worth zooming out a little bit and just acknowledging the history-making moment that we are witnessing. The fact that he's only the second president in more than 100 years, if he does in fact win, to go back to the White House and serve non-consecutive terms.
What do you think of your old boss, former Vice President Mike Pence, is thinking? He did not endorse Donald Trump, and of course, famously, did his constitutional duty on January 6th to the chance of hang Mike Pence. What do you think he's thinking right now?
I think he's probably thinking about it from a policy standpoint. I mean, the campaign is over. That decision has been made by the American people. And so I think he'll look that if there's an area where they are in agreement on policy, he'll engage. If there's an area where he's in disagreement, he will decide whether he will make that known or just quietly wait and know that you've got actually another opportunity 4 years down the road, not to run, I'm not saying that, but to influence another set of policymakers.
But there is a reason that he's seen so many of the people that worked under him leave and now speak ill of him. And so what does that mean for the future of his next cabinet?
Well, I think a lot of times you have to realize how to communicate with him and also what your role is. I mean, I think this is one of the big disagreements I think we had in Washington, D.C. and with the bureaucracy in general, is to provide advice, to provide consent, to provide your best recommendation, but there's only one person who put their name on the line and was elected by the people of America to be the president of the United States.
Claire, you had a thought, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people will be looking at is the military. We have a civilian-controlled military in the United States, but there is a deep ethos in the military, especially in the leadership, about the separation of politics and the military. And Trump at times tried to blur that line and was frustrated, I think, because he could not get the military to do what he thought they ought to do when they ought to do it sometimes. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the Pentagon handles this, because there are so many strong leaders in our military, and they have come up through the ranks, and they have transferred their families all over the world, and they have learned every part of military leadership. And I think there could be some bumps in the road as to how he handles the military and who he puts in charge.
Well, in his first term, there were a number of administration officials who were there because they felt as though they could say no to him. They felt as though they were protecting the government. And by all accounts, this will be a very different second term. He was doing an interview with Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity asked him if he would be a dictator, and he said only on day one. And of course, some of his supporters said, look, that was hyperbole, it was a joke. But the reality is, I think this administration will look a lot different. There will be people there who will support, and the question is how many will be able to question him, to challenge him. We know that he also has his eye on people like Governor Doug Burgum, Senator Marco Rubio, obviously Elon Musk, as we have discussed, as potential people who would return to a second administration.
To sort of put it super simply here, this is the case that Vice President Harris made for the duration of her 107-day campaign, which was that if Donald Trump gets back into office, her argument was that he would be potentially more dangerous in the first term, she said, because the people who acted as a check around him will be gone. And I think that's what we're talking about here. Who will be around him? Who will be those voices in his ear? Clearly, that is an argument that did not resonate with voters in Georgia. It did not resonate with voters in North Carolina. It did not resonate with the Latino voters that we've been talking about, et cetera. But that is the case that she had been making and was trying to make, bringing up these cabinet officials, other Republicans, people who had previously been allied with him that chose to break apart.
Did he win a mandate?
Listen, the House, the Senate is Republican now. He is on the precipice of potentially winning. Again, we have not called it, but winning Pennsylvania, which would be essentially ball game
and
for
potentially
him.
the popular vote as well.
Which for the first time, he's never had that before, right? And we don't even know, could this be a sweep of the battlegrounds? That's a huge question mark, too. So, listen, he has been very clear about his policies, the things he wants to put in place. We talked about tariffs. If he has a Republican House and Senate, suddenly, perhaps that makes it easier to find the money that he will need, the enormous amount of money to carry out those mass deportations, for example. And so there are going to be some policy implications depending on which way Congress goes.
Well, Project 2025, which the former president has disavowed, but it has to be acknowledged, has folks who have worked for him and people that he has consulted with all over it. And there's a lot of talk in that document about getting rid of the so-called deep state, and because the view from the Trump campaign and the Trump way of thinking is that deep state, these are people that were an obstacle to what he wanted to do inside the administration. Mark, how seriously do you think he will take that?
Well, I think he will take. I don't speak for the former president or his campaign, and
we've got an important call to make here.
Moments away from calling one of the key
battlegrounds. Stand by.
battlegrounds.
Yes, NBC News can now project that Donald Trump will win in the state of Pennsylvania. 19 electoral votes. Here's where it stands right now. Donald Trump out in front, difference of 188,000 votes, 95% of the vote in Pennsylvania, and that goes in the Donald Trump column.
And with that, it's expected that he will have the 270 votes he needs. I see you puzzling over there. It's because of Nebraska.
I was looking here going, okay, am I going crazy?
No.
Because we haven't called Alaska yet, and that's why it's 266. But once Alaska gets called and Nebraska, you can see former President Trump, he had to get to 270. He's likely to get to 272, if not higher. We still haven't called Wisconsin or Michigan as well, but he is on his way. NBC News projecting him on his way back to the White House.
And we were told he is perhaps a minute away now from coming on the stage at the campaign headquarters in West Palm Beach and to make his remarks to the crowd. The crowd very silent right now. I'm not quite sure what they're listening to, but they have been partying for quite some time.
Well, this is history. Not since Grover Cleveland in the 1880s have we seen a president return to office after that gap. So a second term after a gap of time. 4 years later, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States, as he was the 45th president of the United States, with the convincing sweep of several battleground states. Several battleground states still not decided, but the magic number of 270 electoral votes has been reached, and we will have many hours and days to talk about the coalition that he put together. But this is the scene at Trump headquarters in West Palm Beach as Donald J. Trump once again will assume the presidency on January 20th. The United States Senate will be in Republican hands. Democrats have lost control of the Senate, and the fate of the House of Representatives, currently in Republican hands, also in question. Democrats just need 4 seats to pick up to get control of the House. That would would be the one check on Republican power, but it may well be that they sweep the House as well. So we have set the scene for you. This long campaign is over, and we await the former president to make his remarks.
Tom, to be clear, how does he get to 270 now? He's at 266.
Yeah, so right now he's at 266. If we fill in, and let me see, because sometimes when we get to a certain point, you can no longer fill in some holes here. But he wins Alaska, and then we go back. Oh, in Maine. There's a congressional district in Maine that we're still waiting on. You can see Maine is not filled out yet. There's a congressional district in Maine. Once he gets there, he'll get past 270, or he'll get right to 270, and that's where he'll stand tonight. And when we hit 2024, he'll likely get to 272. Again, and we haven't called Wisconsin and Michigan, so it could grow from there. But as Savannah mentioned, he got to 270. That's the magic number. We're projecting that Pennsylvania is a win for former President Trump. He is headed back to the White House.
This is all, of course, assuming that Alaska and Nebraska and the Maine district go the way that we expect them to go. So I think Tom is making an excellent point here that we haven't hit that magic 270 number just yet. But with the win in Pennsylvania here, the thing I'm looking for, a couple of things. What is the Harris campaign going to say and do now? Because the last that we heard from them, of course, it was Cedric Richmond taking the stage. That memo had suggested to staffers, listen, we've got the blue wall. We're going to wait and see turnout in Philadelphia. We have now called Pennsylvania. That is incredibly significant here. And so do we hear from, if not her, as we don't expect to, the campaign tonight? And then obviously, what are we going to hear when former President Trump himself takes the stage there down in Palm Beach?
And will she call him to concede? I mean, that's my question. If you'll rewind back to 2016, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton did, in fact, call Donald Trump that night to concede.
And the next morning she came before the cameras. It was, I believe, late morning, if memory serves. She did. And I think the Democratic the leaders have signaled that she will address the country tomorrow, and they certainly could read the tea leaves and saw which way this was headed. And so, you know, we believe and project that he will reach at least the 270 votes that he needs.
Well, and I remember talking to John Podesta in 2016 and saying, have you written a concession speech at the beginning of the night? And he said no, because we don't even want to think about that. And you have to ask that question. Did Harris even have a concession speech, or is that part of what she's thinking through? What exactly?
Well, I mean, going into a night where, you know, the polls showed 49-49. I mean, I think
well, maybe someone wrote a concession.
I think you wouldn't be blamed for being presumptuous to go out and write a.
For all the talk about the 2016 vibes, and I'm sure it's in your text messages as well, yours, you know, that this feels a lot like that. There is a distinction here, and I defer, of course, to the former Hillary Clinton campaign correspondent. But there was, in some ways, an air of inevitability around Hillary Clinton that just didn't exist around Kamala Harris. She wasn't even supposed to be on the top of this ticket 6 months ago, right? So there is, it was a very different vibe coming into this. She talked about, and her campaign cast her as the underdog here in this race, not as the sort of heir apparent, if you will. So there are some distinctions here.
By the way, this is the third straight election in which it appears that pollsters have underestimated the Trump vote. I mean, we will see. We don't have all the numbers here, and we can all do the comparison, but it does appear that he, at least, maybe it's not a polling miss, because those were, in most of these battlegrounds, dead ties, and within the margin of error. And if it's in the margin of error, it's not a polling miss. But there's no question, Tom, that in the counties that you have now memorized, that will be haunting you to the last of your days, that he was outperforming and getting new voters to the polls and squeezing out more voters, especially in those rural districts.
We were looking in all those battleground states, and the pattern that we kept seeing was that he kept overperforming in the rural areas. She was underperforming Biden in those urban areas, in the blue counties she needed to win. I was signaling you, Savannah, because one thing, I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet, but if former President Trump goes back to the White House, something else you guys, I don't think you've talked about it yet, is the Supreme Court. And what happens in the Supreme Court, and if anything happens there, we saw how he completely reshaped that court. And if he's reelected, and it looks like he's going to be, I mean, not that there's anyone sort of hanging on there at the Supreme Court, but it's something that Republicans are going to be thinking about.
Well, and here's the other point to remind people of. The Supreme Court issued a ruling that gave him immunity from all official acts. Prior to tonight, Donald Trump was facing 3 legal battles and was also convicted.
He's got a
November 26th sentencing date.
So there will be a lot of questions about how all of that will
There are two state cases. The sentencing case, the sentencing is in the New York State case, and then there are two federal cases which will functionally disappear.
Go away.
I mean, they'll go away if he took office and they were still going. He could pardon himself. He could have a different attorney general. I mean, there's a million. They're gone. They're just gone.
Yeah, and remember, he also said he would free all of the January 6th convicts. We'll have to see how that works functionally, and he'll fire Jack Smith on day one, and again, the deportation force, which he has promised to start on day one. So we'll have to see how that all unfolds.
It's interesting.
Very clear.
Think about what Judge Merchan in New York State Court will do with the sentencing date before him, whether he just tables it or, you know, but in any event.
that could mean another Supreme Court intervention to try to find out
It could. It'll be very interesting. Yeah, it's an experienced judge. I don't know what he'll do. He may just, you know, recognize what's going on. And in the end, it is a business records case. You know, so he may decide, okay, the conviction stands, but choose not to sentence to jail, which actually would be in line with similar situated defendants.
Yeah, so you have
so it wouldn't be surprising.
Your court TV hat back on here.
I know. It's like all that legal education put to use here at 2 o'clock in the morning as we await Donald Trump to take the stage here in West Palm.
Yeah, we're in a bit of a holding period right now. The crowd is I guess, watching some speeches or videos right now, and they're waiting for the former president to come out. We don't know whether he will claim victory. Again, we have not made that call. At least one other network has, and the crowd reacted to that a bit early, but we make no statement from that other than the fact that we're our decision desk works along with its own metrics in making these decisions, so they will at some point make calls, and we'll see where the evening ends up.
Yeah, well, barring an earthquake in some of these states, such as Alaska, I think that by calling Pennsylvania, it's sort of all over, but the voting. But we will wait for the official moment of 270 votes. But I can guarantee you Donald Trump is it. There's Vivek Ramaswamy, Doug Burgum. These are former opponents in the primary who were quickly dispatched and then came over to the Trump side, and perhaps they have stars in their eyes about what roles they may play in a Trump administration.
There's another piece of history that if this goes the way that it seems likely to go here, and he does hit 270 electoral votes, he would be the oldest president ever elected. He would actually beat now President Biden by about 143 days. So he would make history in that setting as well. That is not something he prefers to talk about, especially as age has become front and center in this race, as Vice President Harris looked to cast him as sort of exhausted, questioning his fitness for office in those final days of the campaign. Again, an argument that clearly did not seem to resonate for voters in Georgia, in North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, those battlegrounds that appeared to be putting him over the edge.
Let's go to Garrett Haake. He is there at the Trump headquarters. Garrett, can you tell what the audience is listening to right now, and any word on when we might see Mr. Trump?
Lester, they're listening to a discussion of the race on Fox News. Beyond that, I'm still embarrassingly bereft of much programming information. The Trump team briefly took down the teleprompters that had been on stage for the last hour or so, leading us to believe that Trump was going to come out and speak off the cuff, which sort of tracks given that we knew he had not written any remarks earlier in the day. Then we just a moment ago saw staffers come back out and reassemble the teleprompter. Trump's son, Eric Trump, just posted a picture on social media of the former president backstage holding papers that appeared to be remarks, perhaps rehearsing, getting ready to come out. But the guidance we have gotten from the campaign remains unambiguous soon. And beyond that, we are left to wait and wonder with the rest of you as I'm watching staffers make yet another adjustment to the former president's teleprompter on stage.
Yes, it's getting to be late here, and we are awaiting former President Trump, and we're just doing a switcheroo here with getting our Capitol Hill correspondent in position here. We have a lot to discuss with him as we talk about and potentially a new Washington. It's So we haven't called the race yet, but we've called Pennsylvania, and that just about does it, as all of us who've been studying the map certainly know by now.
A new Washington that looks a little bit like the old Washington, right? Yes. With Donald Trump back in office here. The dynamic's different, especially with the way that the Republican Party has changed. Think about it, gone. And Ryan Nobles is joining us, knows this. Mitch McConnell will not be in Senate leadership anymore. Something, I remember in 2017 when Kristen and I were, newly minted White House, or you were a White House correspondent, I came on board. There's a lot of discussion about the Republican establishment and Donald Trump and would he bend to them or would they bend to him? We now have that answer 8 years later, and that is what Washington, it seems, if this goes the way, barring any big surprises, will look like.
Well, and that's what we were talking about at the convention. This is Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Yeah, and the type of new senator that you're going to see coming in and joining the ranks of the existing senators are all senators that are in what you'd call the MAGA mold, right? These are people that have run campaigns that are in the same vein as the type of campaign that Donald Trump has run. These are people that very much sought Donald Trump's endorsement, felt that it was necessary to connect with him and his base. The best example of this is Mike Rogers, right? Former congressman from Michigan who, at a certain point in his career, attempted to try and break himself from Donald Trump, tried to be a part of this kind of anti-Trump establishment. Maybe he thought that was the future of the Republican Party. Went away from politics for a little while, came back when he saw that his seat was open in Michigan, and basically did everything he could to make himself in the MAGA mold. And now he's going to be a part of this new group. Oh, he could potentially be part of this new group of senators. We haven't called that.
Yeah, I'm just peeking. He's leading it by a little bit. We have it as too close to call.
Right.
Well, I mean, you look at Senator Marco Rubio, who I just saw there. I mean, all of these former opponents, it's either get on board or get run over. And, that's kind of the way that it's been, and many of them have. I mean, former Trump critics, I might mention J.D. Vance, a former Trump critic who is about to be vice president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, and I've had many conversations with both senators and aides and people with a lot of influence on Capitol Hill, and they've talked about this metamorphosis. And they've talked about how maybe they don't like necessarily Donald Trump's personality or the way he presents himself or the way he talks about people, but they also realize that, and what is clearly evident tonight, that he has captured the pulse of at least half of the American people, and in particular, the American people that elect Republicans to office. And so you can try and fight against that establishment if you want to be a Republican, or you can get on board, and more you see these Republicans getting on board. The question, I think, becomes, does that translate into some sort of governable posture? They're very good at throwing pot shots. They're very good at complaining about things, turning that into actual action, because Donald Trump has laid out a long list of things he'd like to get done. Like, how quickly can he remove tax on tips or tax on overtime, which is something that he's promised? He may have the votes to do that. Now it's actually time to turn
but then you got to find the money elsewhere when you want money for other things. So budgets are budgets.
Right. I do think it's worth, just as we sit here and reflect on the history of this moment, thinking about not only is this historic because he's the first president to serve 9 consecutive terms in more than 100 years, but think about the political comeback that we are witnessing. Think about January 6th and the days after that, and the number of Republicans who wrestled with whether to impeach him again and convict him, and who tried to separate themselves from him, much like you're discussing, Ryan, and who'd written him off politically, who just could not conceive of this moment. And then he had this incredible showing in the primary. And now here he is tonight on the cusp of
I think back, Kristen,
going back to the White House.
Often of that period of time where Mitch McConnell had that moment where he had to make a decision during the second impeachment trial as to whether or not he would lift his thumb and allow a whole group of Republican senators who were seriously thinking about voting to impeach him and put Donald Trump in a position where he would not be able to run for office again. And at the time, Mitch McConnell's argument was that this was not a decision, a political decision, that this would be a legal decision.
Decided in the courts.
He would be prosecuted, and a judge and jury would decide whether or not he should be convicted of those crimes.
I want to show you very quickly a photo of Donald Trump apparently taken backstage. This is not it, but there it is. So he's...
I think that was posted by one of his sons, just mentioned by Garrett Hake a few moments ago.
One of the other... I'm sorry, I was going to say one of the other things, I think there is still some suspense to the evening as it relates to the margin here and to the popular vote, right? Because this is something else that speaks to this idea of a mandate. Because over the course of the last 8 years, one of the things that you often hear said about former President Trump as well, he doesn't have half the country, right? He's not there. He wins the electoral vote. What does the popular vote look like? And what do these other battlegrounds look like? Yes, we've called here at NBC News, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, all still out there. His campaign, his allies would be thrilled with a battleground sweep if that's what this turns out to be, as a talking point that will drive them over the course of the next
Well, not only that, I mean, Donald Trump has been extremely clear about his agenda, whether it's no tax on tips or if it's tariffs, if it's, you know,
mass deportations.
Mass deportations, the war in Ukraine, cutting off the money spigot, trying to negotiate an end to it right away. I mean, so, you know, if he wins a battleground sweep in the popular vote, it's not that people didn't know what they were voting for.
I do wonder, and especially when you put it in that context, that was one of the things that Vice President Harris struggled with to some extent, and they made the calculation that she wasn't going to get specific about every single potential policy issue. And she is someone who, of course, was thrust into this race with 100 days to go, who had frankly never won a primary. I mean, remember, in 2019, she dropped out before Iowa.
You know what's very interesting in one of the exit polls? Kamala Harris's favorable rating, 48%. Donald Trump's, 44%.
That's right.
People like him less, and it appears
but the people who
voted
liked
into
him,
an office.
the people who liked him showed up here, and maybe others as well. And look at Joe Biden's approval rating, too. I do think that comes into play here. His favorability at 41%.
Well, they may not like him, but they like what he says.
Well,
they like his policies.
I talk to voters all the time that say, I can't stand him. I don't like the way he picks on people. I don't like his tweets. I don't like the way that he picks on people that aren't like him, but I love his policies.
But in his mind, does that validate his worst instincts now? I mean, will the lesson for him of this election be, you know, course works?
Well, and also it doesn't matter, Lester, right? Because he's not going to run for re-election again. That's it. He's going to have these 4 years, and he's the same Donald Trump, but he may govern differently. And what I mean by that is that he knows Washington now. The first time he didn't know Washington. Now he knows Washington. And also the people that are going to sign up for his cabinet, they know what to expect. You remember, all these people signed up, they got approved, and then they quickly were dismissed. What we saw with his campaign that was different from 2016 and really from his White House presidency, the team he assembled is the team that stayed, right? His campaign team, those around him, are the people that stayed. What's different this time around, though, Trump's inner circle is much different. You've mentioned this. No more Jared, no more Ivanka. There's much different people that have gotten close to him over these 4 years. So it may be a little different, and everyone that signs up sort of knows what to expect. I think when you talk about people like Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Tim Scott, these are people who stayed very close to him. They ran against him, but they stayed very close to him. You could see positions like Secretary of State and other cabinet positions being offered to these senators.
Some of the OGs are still around, right? Some of those 2016 people who came in early are I think it's Corey Lewandowski who's back in the fold.
Steve Bannon, still an outside advisor. I'm told not planning to go back to the White House, but I think these are people who will continue to be in his
They'll be in his ear.
But I wonder, to your point, though, Lester, when we look at this campaign, one of the things that was much different than what we saw in 2020 and 2016, aside from the candidate himself, the operation was far more disciplined than what we saw in those previous two election cycles.
Absolutely.
Chris LaCivita, who I covered for a long time as a political reporter in Virginia, Susie Wiles, they at least kept the overall message of the campaign, you know, very focused throughout the entire time. Now, he would get off the rails from time to time. That made their lives difficult. But you found them keeping everyone together and focused on a specific message.
But look at the Donald Trump we have seen in just the last few months in terms of message and
He's about to take the stage. Let's listen.
Here's Donald Trump now coming out.
Thank you very much. Wow. Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends in this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. And in addition to having won the battleground states of North Carolina, I love these places, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, we are now winning in Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Alaska, which would result in us carrying at least 315 electoral votes. But it's much easier doing what the networks did or whoever called it, because there was no other path. There was no other path to victory. We also have won the popular vote. That was great. Very proud of it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, winning the popular vote was very nice, I will tell you. It's a great feeling of love. We have a great feeling of love in this very large room with unbelievable people standing by my side. These people have been incredible. They've made the journey with me, and we're going to make you very happy. We're going to make you very proud of your vote. I hope that you're going to be looking back someday and say that was one of the truly important moments of my life when I voted for this group of people beyond the president, this group of great people. America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate. We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good. And the Senate races in Montana, Nevada, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, were all won by the MAGA movement. They helped so much. And in those cases, every one of them, we worked worked with the senators. They were tough races, and I mean, the number of victories in the Senate was absolutely incredible. And we did tele-rallies. We did tele-rallies with each one of them, and sometimes we did 2 or 3 and it was amazing to look at all of those victories. Nobody expected that, nobody. So I just wanted to thank you very much for that. And you have some great senators and some great new senators. And it also looks like we'll be keeping control of the House of Representatives. And I want to thank Mike Johnson. I think he's doing a terrific job. Terrific job. I want to also thank my beautiful wife, Melania, First Lady. Who has the #1 best-selling book in the country. Can you believe that? Oh, no, she's done a great job. Works very hard to help people. So I just want to thank her. But I want to thank my whole family, my amazing children, and they are amazing children. Now, we all think our children are amazing. Everybody here thinks their children are amazing, but that's a good thing when you think they are. But Don, Eric, Ivanka, Tiffany, Barron, Laura, Jared, Kimberly, Michael, thank you all. What a help. What a great. My father-in-law, Victor, is tremendous, and we miss very much Melania's mother, Amalia. We miss Amalia, don't we, huh? She would be very happy right now, standing on this stage. She'd be so proud. She was a great woman, that one. Beautiful inside and out. She was a great woman. I want to be the first to congratulate our great, now I can say, Vice President-elect of the United States, J.D. Vance. And his absolutely remarkable and beautiful wife, Usha Vance. And he's a feisty guy, isn't he? You know, I've said, go into the enemy camp. And you know, the enemy camp is certain networks. And a lot of people don't like to, sir, do I have to do that? He just goes, okay. Which one? CNN, MSDNC? He'll say, all right, thank you very much. He actually looks fun. He's like the only guy I've ever seen. He really looks forward to it. And then he just goes in and absolutely obliterates them. Say a couple of words.
Wow. Well, Mr. President, I appreciate you allowing me to join you on this incredible journey. I thank you for the trust that you placed in me. And I think that we just witnessed the greatest political comeback in the history of the United States of America. And under President Trump's leadership, we're never going to stop fighting for you, for your dreams, for the future of your children. And after the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Thank you very much. He's turned out to be a good choice. I took a little heat at the beginning, but he was, I knew the brain was a good one, about as good as it gets. And we love the family, and we're going to have a great 4 years, and we're going to turn our country around, make it something very special. It lost that little that little thing called special, we have to make it so. We're going to make this so great. It's the greatest country and potentially the greatest country in the world by far. And right now, we're going to just work very hard to get all of that back. We're going to make it the best it's ever been. We can do that. If we had to wait longer, I don't know. It was going bad, and it was going bad fast. We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally. They have to come in legally. Let me also express my tremendous appreciation for Susie and Chris, the job you did. Susie, come here. Come here, Susie. Chris, come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay sort of in the back, let me tell you. The Ice Maiden, we call her the Ice Maiden. Come here, Chris. Come here, Chris. Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background. Come here, say something.
This wasn't expected, but I just want to thank, obviously, President Trump for this journey. It was a great one, and he's a hell of a candidate, and he's going to be a hell of a great 47th president. And this team that we had, the best team, and, of course, even my boss, Susie Wiles, the best. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Susie. Look at this. She's shot. I've never seen her be shot before. Susie. They're great. Everybody up here is great. Everybody up here is very special. But the Trump, who did you say? Oh, let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon. Now he is. Now he's an amazing guy. We were sitting together tonight. You know, he spent 2 weeks in Philadelphia and different parts of Pennsylvania campaigning. You know, he sent the rocket up 2 weeks ago, and I saw that rocket, and I saw it coming down. I saw it. It was, when it left, it was beautiful, shiny white. When it came down, it didn't look so pretty. It was going 10,000 miles an hour, and it was burning like hell. I said, what happened to your paint job? He said, we've never made a paint that could withstand that kind of heat. And but I saw it come down and turn around. And it was, you know, it's like 22 stories tall, by the way. It looks a little smaller than that, but it's big. And it came down, and you saw all that fire burning. And I'm saying, only Elon can do this. It must be an Elon. And I tell the story. I told it last night. I had a man on the phone. I had the screen muted, no sound. I was talking to a very important man, happens to be here. And that very important guy, one of the most important people in, I would say, the country, actually. But, you know, I was president, and now it looks like I was going to be maybe president again, so I figured I could ask him to hold. So I asked him to hold. And especially because you're going to be president again, they hold. So I took the phone down, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm seeing this crazy thing that's going around and coming down. It looks like it's going to crash into the gantry. And I said, oh, no. And I said, do me a favor, do you mind holding for a couple of minutes? I want to see this. I thought it was a space-age movie or something. I put the phone down. Bad part, I didn't pick it up for 45 minutes, and he was holding. But this spaceship came down, and I saw those engines firing, and it looked like it was over. It was going to smash, and then I saw the fire pour out from the left side, and I put it straight, and it came down so gently, and then it wrapped those arms around it, and it held it, and just like you hold your baby at night, your little baby. And it was a beautiful thing to see, and I called Elon. I said, Elon, was that you? He said, yes, it was. I said, who else can do that? Can Russia do it? No. Can China do it? No. Can the United States do it other than you? No. Nobody can do that. I said, that's why I love you, Elon. That's great. And you know, when we had the tragic Hurricane Helene, and it hit North Carolina, they were really devastated, the water. This was a big water, as big as we've ever seen, water hurricane. It built lakes out of nothing. Fields became lakes, and And the danger was unbelievable. And the people from North Carolina came to me and they said, would it be possible, at all possible, for you to speak to Elon Musk? We need Starlink. I said, what's Starlink? It's a form of communication. So I called Elon, and I'll tell you what, he had, and it was very dangerous. People would die. They had no communication. All the wires were down. I called Elon Musk. I said, Elon, you have something called Starlink. Is that right? Yes, I do. What the hell is it? He said, it's a communication system that's very good. I said, Elon, they need it really, really badly in North Carolina. Can you get it? He had that there so fast, it was incredible. So.